Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. There is also a link in the description to my Patreon. It has Naruto fanfiction that cannot be posted on YouTube. There is some free content on there. So, you don't have to be a paying member to enjoy listening to excellent fanfiction.
Chapter 42, Akatsuki Pursuit. This is your mission, Itachi said to Kimimaro as his team of Suigetsu, Karen and Yugo. Takigaku's Jinchuriki has been taken by 2 members of the Akatsuki, which I believe you are familiar at least a little bit with due to your past history with Orochimaru. Kimimaro nodded. You are to go to Takigaku and find the trail that my crows have left. They are even as we speak following the pair. Stop them from extracting the Nanabai from the Jinchuriki with any means possible. You are to leave at once. Understood, Kimimaro said as he and his team shunshined out of the office. They're on the move now. Itachi mused about the Akatsuki. Soon, Naruto, Hinata, Minato, and Jiraiya will have to return. Hinata woke up inside of the Yashoryu clan infirmary to see about 30 others being treated for injuries and several body bags. Felix was busy giving treatment to about 10 of his kin, using shadow clones to divide his attention better, while listening to a report with another clone. Of our 94 knights, we have taken 41 casualties, including Kyle-sama, and most of the survivors are currently in here, the clan member was saying to Felix's clone. We currently have 17 ready to fight again, not including you or your family, should the enemy return to try to finish us off. I hate to say it, but we took a severe beating. Kyle-sama is dead? Hinata thought as she noticed that it was Matthew who was busy healing her. Naruto was nowhere in sight. We have them stored in the lower levels. It's not freezing down there, but it should be chilled enough to keep the bodies in a reasonable enough shape until we can have one of the Shikokyo clan members examine them for any weaknesses they may have, in case we need to fight them again. Good. They were tough to deal with from what I've heard. Knowing any of their weaknesses will be invaluable. The compound itself is in decent shape other than the part of the wall that got hit by Drachmas and several other places that took hits on the compound. But that is to be expected. I estimate repairs will take no more than a month. All right then, you are dismissed. The clan member bowed and left the infirmary. Hinata, you're okay, Naruto said as he came into the room and rushed to embrace her. Ouch, Naruto-kun, that hurts, she said as her injuries flared up when Naruto hugged her, and he quickly released her when he realized she was not fully healed yet. Sorry, he said a little sheepishly. Matthew gave a small laugh. We had to kick him out until you woke up from your wounds and chakra exhaustion. He was making a nuisance of himself during the healing, he said, and Naruto looked a little embarrassed. And Naruto-kun, Hinata asked a little tentatively, is what they said about Kyle-sama. She could not go any further. Naruto's expression saddened immediately, and he nodded. Tears welled up in Hinata's eyes, and she lowered her head. It's our fault. We were the ones they were after, and Kyle and several other clan members died to defend us. Hinata. Matthew said, yeah, it is my fault, Naruto sighed. That was when the original Felix came up, grabbed Naruto's and Hinata's heads, and cracked them together. Ow, what the hell was that for? Naruto demanded as he and Hinata massaged the lumps on their heads. You are both idiots, Felix replied. No one in my family blames you for what happened to Kyle. If anything, Erika blames herself for not being able to heal him, but blame is counterproductive. What's done is done. Every single one of my kinsmen knew what they were protecting and why. And don't forget, it was not just you two that we were defending. Your entire dimension is counting on Naruto to prevent the Juubi from returning this time and falling into the hands of Madara, or whoever from this dimension is manipulating the Akatsuki from shadows. So a lot more than your safety is at stake. It was that Kyle died to protect. And before you start Naruto, it is understandable that you are as of yet unable to use the Rinnegan to revive people. The first path only came to you in a moment of desperation, and that's what awoke the Rinnegan in the first place. The rest you'll have to work for. Naruto sighed. He had tried to resurrect Kyle after he had heard what had happened, but nothing he thought of had been able to summon the King of Hell. It was clear he would have to strive to awaken the other paths if he wanted to use them. How did you awaken the Rinnegan, Naruto-kun? Hinata asked. You did not have it last time, so how can you have it now? Well, I don't really know, Naruto said as his eyes activated, showing Matthew and Felix the dojutsu. I do have a theory at least, Felix said. Naruto, do you remember that first fight you had with Drachmas? The one where I got my ass kicked until you showed up? That's a harsh way of putting it. You did put up a decent fight if the injuries Drachmas had on him were any indication. But the end result was a large quantity of her blood being lost. And the only way to get you back to a decent condition was a transfusion, which Sasuke was able to give thanks to a seal I had that let him donate B-type blood, though his blood type, as AB. That gave you Uchiha DNA, and you already had Senju DNA from the fact that you were an Uzumaki, which is distantly related to the Senju, as you know. Those two clans were the ones that the Rikudo Sennin separated the component parts of his Kekii Genkai into the descendants of his own two sons. So it stands to reason that the DNA combined into the Kekii Genkai. But it's been 2 years since Sasuke gave me his blood. Why did I not get the Rinnegan sooner? It had to awaken first, but there also remained the fact that you did not have a dojutsu to begin with, so your body still had to adapt to the genetic commands that came from the DNA, hence the pain in your eyes over the past 2 years, and the fact that your chakra coils in that area have been growing as you felt that pain. I see, Naruto said. At any rate, I have to arrange for a Shikokyo to come to compound. So if you will excuse me, Felix said as he rose to leave. Are you going to have him revive Kyle? Hinata asked hopefully, and Felix stiffened. No, by the time a Shikokyo can come, it will be too late to do anything, and their powers are rarely used for that purpose anyway, because there is a risk to the Shikokyo in question. Plus, I can't ask for Kyle to be brought back since there are so many others in the clan who perished. It would not be fair for them or their families. The reason we need one to come is because we need to tell them about their rogue member Caius, as well as what he used as his tools. If anyone knows how to deal with them, it would be a Shikokyo. I'm sorry, Hinata whispered, knowing that Felix did not want to discuss Kyle at the moment. It's fine, Felix said as he left the infirmary with a sad sigh. Matthew soon followed. At any rate, the medics say you can be discharged tomorrow, Naruto told Hinata. Your injuries were not all that bad, considering what had happened to you. Good thing too, because if any lasting damage had been done, I would rip Caius a new one, he added under his breath. Naruto-kun, I'm sorry you had to save me from worse, Hinata said with her head down. I was too weak to fend for myself again. Hinata, you're stronger than you know, Naruto said to her. You just went up against an enemy that had a means of wearing you down rather than fight you himself. I'm sure you will beat him yourself if you ever do come across him again. And besides, he chuckled, even if you had no strength for battle at all, I would still gladly come to your aid. You are not a burden to me. You never could be. It's because I have people like you to protect that I am strong enough to do so. Thank you, Naruto-kun, she said, still tearing up, but with a smile on her face. Don't mention it, Naruto said as his face came up to hers so they could kiss. And then they heard the click of a camera. Seriously, Isaac, can't you let us have some privacy? Naruto demanded as he cursed the fact that the moment was ruined. I mean, I know there's some other people in the infirmary too, but they have better things to do than bug people when they're having a freaking moment. There is no privacy. Isaac cackled as he pocketed the camera. The walls have eyes and ears. And what's worse is that there is no logical place to put these to keep them from spying. With that, he took a bunch of eye patches and earplugs from his pockets, causing Naruto and Hinata to sweat drop. No logical place. Naruto said, since when were you even the slightest bit logical? Good point, Isaac said, resulting in both of his victims face palming. Do we really have to fly to this village, Sasuke-sensei? Daisuke asked as his face turned green and he vomited into the sand after he had just gotten off his hawk, which hastily returned to where Sasuke had summoned it from. In my defense, Sasuke said as he submitted their travel papers to the gate guards. I did not know that you got sky sick on account of the fact that was your first time in the air. But we could have come by foot, Kiyoshi said. It is still 6 days before the exams begin, so we are rather early. True, but I want to make sure we can get a decent hotel for the trip, and it will give you 3 a chance to get used to the heat of the desert before you actually have to fight in the survival part of the exam. That should give you a slight edge against non-local Chunin hopefuls. Well, what are we waiting for? Akari said once the papers were finished being processed and they were allowed into the village. Let's go find the nearest ramen bar while we're here. There were sweat drops from her entire team as she disappeared into the village in a blur. At this rate, she will drop half dead from dehydration, Daisuke said in a deadpan. Nah, she'll find a ramen bar first, and she will eat as much as she can before the dehydration registers, Sasuke replied. Though, she might slam into a few dash. Awachuksh, why don't you watch where you're going, Missy? A loud voice shouted, causing the remainder of the team to sweat drop again. Locals in her enthusiasm to get there, Sasuke finished, pinching the bridge of his nose. We better go after her to keep her out of any more trouble. So hot, Kin complained as Suna came within sight a few hours later. We've been moving non-stop to get there for the past day and a half, and the heat is killing me. Where the hell is an oasis when you want one? You're the one who wanted to come to these exams in the first place, Jinyammar muttered, causing Haku to chuckle. Quit complaining, we are almost there, Zabuza told his team. And once you 3 make Chunin, I have absolutely no doubt that you will find the trip to have been worth it. Yeah, well, we should have made the rank a year and a half ago when the exams were in IWA, Kin pouted. But no, you had to continue to find excuses to procrastinate then and after that. I'm telling you, I am already Chunin level, and don't even get me started on your old apprentice in Jinyammar. If it weren't for those stupid leaf technicalities, they would both already be Jonin. Then again, I suppose it does have its perks, she continued with a slight smile. The wait may well be worth it when we totally one-side the competition this year. Oh, the looks that will be on their faces. It's bound to be amusing, Haku replied. But it is not wise to underestimate the competition, even if we have been training for longer than most of them. For one, I bet Sasuke's team won't be pushovers. I heard they were also taking the exams this year. Yes, they're bound to be strong, Jinyamaru agreed. From what I heard, Sasuke is a very good teacher, and he has had one of them as a personal apprentice before he took on the other two to make the four-man cell. Still, we got more experience, the Kunoichi of the group said. I'm not saying we should let our guards down, that would be stupid, but I still have confidence that we are the strongest overall team of Jin and Seen in a while. Welcome back, Haiden and Kakuzu, Toby said when they made it back to the cave that was their hideout. Toby missed you both so much, the childlike man declared as he tried to embrace them, only to get kicked to the side by Kaku, who had a tick mark. Toby, why are you here? Kakuzu demanded. Well, Toby was told to make a delivery to Haiden by the leader, so Toby will deliver the item, because Toby's a good boy. With that, the masked man reached into the pocket of his robes, and pulled out a ring and tossed it to Haiden. What the? Whose partner was killed? Because I feel sorry for the poor fool who is stuck with this loud mouth, if he's promoted to a full member, Kaluza chuckled. Yours. What? Kakuzu demanded as he tried to strangle the poor reserve Akatsuki member. Gah, please don't kill the messenger. Toby doesn't want to die. Toby was just being a good boy by following orders. Toby managed to gasp out as Haiden tried to pull Kakuzu's hands off of Toby's neck. Geez, calm down, Kakuzu. I don't think it's his fault that Jess went and got herself killed, Haiden said as Kakuzu finally released his death grip. Though it is kind of ironic, she finally has a mission away from the guy who has tried to kill her about once every 2 weeks, and that's when she actually dies. Shut up, or I will kill you, Kakuzu said. Please, I wish someone would finish me off already, but it just can't be done now, can it? Very good, everyone is present, Pain said as his and 7 other holographic figures materialized on the Geto Mazo's fingers. You have the Jinchuriki? Yes, Kakuzu grunted as he tossed the unconscious Fu to the center of the cave, before he and Haiden took up their places on the statue's fingers. Then let us begin, Pain said. With the 10 of us, the process should take just over 2 days. Have you found anything yet, Kimimaro-sensei? Karen asked as Kimimaro searched around the area that Haiden and Kakuzu had wrecked during their hunt for the Nanabai in Takigakure. Yes, the elite Jonin replied as he held up a crow's feather. If we follow this trail, we should be able to catch up with the Akatsuki. We're only a day behind them, so we should be on time to interrupt whatever process they use to extract the bijou from its host. Oh yeah, can't wait to carve up a few enemies, Suigetsu cackled. Maybe Kisame will be there. I can take Samahata from him. Now's not the time to be thinking about your side goals, Suigetsu, Yugo said. The priority is Taki's Jinchuriki here. Yeah, I get it. I'm just hoping that an opportunity presents itself, is all, Suigetsu replied. We've wasted enough time, Kimimaro said. Let's move out. Yes, sir. His here subordinates said in unison before following their leader along the trail of crow feathers. Wow, there sure is a lot of information on the Rinnegan's powers here, Naruto said as he and Felix perused a few scrolls of the Archivist's domain. What did you expect? The Rinnegan originated in the Elder Dimension, though that ended when the Rikudu Sennin became a member of your dimension, Felix replied as he put a few scrolls in his arms. At any rate, we need to get back to the compound if you want to get to work on using the other paths anytime today. Good idea, Naruto replied as he gave the person in charge of the building the scrolls they would be borrowing to be checked out. About half a day into the extraction process, a physical clone of Zetsu came into the cave. I have news, he said to the sealing group. There's a team of 4 Konoha shinobi heading our way, the Black Half stated. If they continue their course at the rate they are headed here, they would be here in under 12 hours. Do we have any reserve members that can intercept them? Pain asked. If they get here at the time you stated, we would not even be quite halfway done with the sealing. Oh well, Toby declared as he danced around. Toby will go. Toby will go. Toby will buy you the time you need to finish the sealing. Do we have anyone more reliable? Kakuzu deadpanned, causing Toby to slump and wipe away anime tears that came from the eye hole in his mask. Kakuzu is a mean man. Why does he have so little faith in Toby? Toby's a good boy. We have no one else who can get there in time to slow them down. Pain sighed. Toby, you will go and stall the enemy as long as you can. In the meantime, we need to redouble our efforts to pull the bijou out faster. Yay. Toby will stop the enemy for you. You can count on Toby because Toby Dash is a good boy. You get it? Just get going. Haiden, his face covered in tick marks, shouted down at the man, who dashed out of the cave so fast he almost left his shadow behind, whimpering in mock fear. Team Kimimaro was still leaping from tree to tree to follow the trail Itachi's crows had left them, before Karen's eyes suddenly narrowed. Hold on, guys. Someone's chakra signature has just popped up, almost as if it came out of nowhere, she said. Where is it? Kimimaro asked, not slowing. Right dash. Hello. Hello. How are you all doing today? Toby asked. In front of us, Karen finished. Black robes with red clouds. So you're a member of the Akatsuki, Kimimaro said, never losing his composure. Not quite. Toby is not a full member yet, but he will be soon. Toby does all of his jobs because Toby's a good boy. Who the heck is Toby? Suigetsu asked. I'm Toby. The masked man shouted in mock hurt. You are slow, aren't you? Well, how was I supposed to know you were speaking in third person? Suigetsu demanded with a glare. How about you just get out of our way before you get hurt? Sorry, no can do. Toby was told to stop you from going any further, so stop you Toby will. Who the heck is this kook? Karen asked with a sweat drop. Chapter 43 Akatsuki Encounter. Digital shrapnel, Kimimaro shouted as he shot the bones from his fingertips at Toby, who screamed like a little girl and cowered. The bones hit, and then they phased right through the childlike man, surprising Kimimaro and his team. What the hell? Suigetsu demanded as he drew the short sword that used to belong to Drachmus. Did you miss, or something, sensei? Strange, Kimimaro thought intently. I could have sworn my attack hit him, but it did nothing. It was as if he was not even there. Karen, what do you sense? The Kagaya asked. It does not appear to be a clone or an illusion, as far as I can tell, Karen replied. So he is there, but I don't get it. Is he intangible or something? Well, the ugly chick seems to be a sensory type. Toby is interested. Toby started before he sensed the killer intent coming from Karen. What did you say? Karen shouted as she charged in a blind rage, despite Kimimaro's attempts to tell her to stop. She drew her fist back and swung right at Toby, who pretended to cower again before Karen passed right through him. Suigetsu had taken advantage of the momentary diversion and had jumped to a tree branch right above Toby and jumped down at him, tried to impale him with a downward thrust of his sword, but Toby sidestepped and kicked the sword's enthusiast in the groin, only for him to get splashed in water as Suigetsu took advantage of his clan's abilities. Oh no, now Toby's all wet. The man pouted before he saw Yugo casting hand signs. Lightning-style electric pulse, he shouted, and a burst of lightning chakra shot from Yugo's hands at Toby, who was wet enough to increase the risk of electrocution. However, Toby went intangible again, and the water fell through him, as well as the lightning passing through. Suigetsu developed a tick mark when Toby pretended to yawn to show he was bored. Seriously, it's 4-on-1, and you can't even touch Toby. Toby is disappointed. He expected a decent fight out of the lot of you. I'll give you a fight, Karen shouted as she cast signs. Water-style water dragon bomb, jutsu. A large dragon of water bore down on Toby, who ran away from it in a panic before he was caught in it and thrown at a tree, which he phased through again. Yugo pulled a battle axe out of a scroll he had sealed it in and rushed Toby as the man rose, but Toby ducked under it and it hit the tree. You missed, Toby. Ha ha ha. Toby taunted before a shadow appeared over his head, and he looked up to see that the tree had been cut all the way through by the axe, which Yugo had conducted lightning chakra through and was now about to fall on him. That is a matter of perspective, Yugo said as Toby shrieked and covered his head as the tree crashed down. Did you get him? Suigetsu asked as he and Karen landed next to Yugo and looked at the fallen lumber that was burying the man. I can still sense his chakra there, Karen started, before a look of shock crossed her face, and she pointed in another direction. And now it's over there. Before they could react, a kunai with an exploding tag landed in their midst and went off, covering them with confetti. Toby was laughing his ass off at the angry expressions on Karen and Suigetsu's faces and the annoyed look on Yugo's. Kimimaro, meanwhile, stood where he had been the entire battle, trying to figure out any weaknesses Toby might have. This guy's totally messing with us, Suigetsu snarled as his grip on the sword tightened. Looks like the ugly chick is a little slow in warning her friends where Toby is. Toby giggled, causing Karen's face to get very red, rivaling the shade of her hair. I'm ugly? Karen demanded. Well, I bet you're no male model yourself. Otherwise, why would you hide your face beneath a mask? Oh, so you're curious to see what Toby has under his mask? Toby asked. Very well then, he said as to their surprise, he took his mask off, only for a clown mask to be revealed under it. Karen and Suigetsu's face faltered as Toby gave a laugh that would be expected to come from a clown before replacing his mask. Oh, you are so dead, Suigetsu shouted as he tried to charge Toby and stab him, but he phased through again. Meanwhile, Karen rushed behind Suigetsu and tried to kick Toby in the crotch, but he sidestepped and pulled a pair of scissors from Cammy Nowhere, grabbed a lock of her hair, and cut it off. Karen shrieked as she felt the part of her head with the lost hair, and turned around to rush Toby again. Holding the hair like he was swishing a blanket, Toby sidestepped again like a matador and cried, "Oh!" That comment was not exactly contradicted when smoke came from Karen's nostrils in a rage as she and Suigetsu rushed again from different sides, only for Toby to jump into the air to avoid them, and they crashed into each other. The funny part was that their lips were the first thing that made contact as that happened. After the involuntary kiss, Suigetsu and Karen blushed furiously. Goody, goody, Toby laughed as he read a scene from a book that looked suspiciously similar to what Jiraiya writes. That is just like the scene on this page here, and on this next page, Toby continued as he turned another page, completely ignoring Yugo, who swung the axe to decapitate Toby, but was only rewarded with more frustration as it passed through again. Toby then proceeded to read aloud a scene that would get this story either rated M or kicked off of the site altogether if it went into detail, causing a shade of red on Karen and Suigetsu's faces to go from critical to nuclear. Yay, will Toby get to see Shark Boy and Ugly Chick do that next? When I figure out how to hit you, Suigetsu began, a manifestation of a demon appearing behind him in his rage. I'm going to rip off your mask, tear out that eye, cut out your intestines, and force feed them to you while forcing you to watch with the eye I tore out. He finished with a bellow as he charged again, but passed through. Yugo swung the axe, but Toby sidestepped and moved around dodging both of his male foes until he jumped to the branch near the top of one of the taller trees in the forest, followed by Yugo and Suigetsu, who rushed again, only for Toby to get behind them and shout out Hidden Art double killer wedgies. True to the ridiculous name, he actually gave both Yugo and Suigetsu a good deal of humiliation as he yanked on their underpants. He then proceeded to tie them together before knocking Suigetsu off of the branch, causing him to pull Yugo down with him. Toby made a drawn-out, whistling noise before leaning his head over the part of the ground they would land on and cupped his ear with one hand to exaggerate his listening ability before he shouted, "Splash!" At the exact same moment he said that there was an actual splash due to Suigetsu landing first and Yugo on top of him. "Now I'm angry," Yugo growled as he got up. If it weren't for a special seal put on him a while ago by Celia, keeping his body from absorbing natural energy unless he consciously chose to do so, he would have already gone berserk. "I'll say, he's making absolute fools out of us," Suigetsu shouted in exasperation. Karen, meanwhile, threw some explosive tags at the branch Toby was standing on, causing the guy to panic before they went off, causing him to fall to the ground himself. Suigetsu and Yugo immediately attempted to eviscerate him, but they passed through him yet again. Karen rushed forward with a kunai in hand, only for Toby to sidestep, grab her arm with his right hand, twist it around painfully behind her, forcing her to drop the weapon, which he caught in his left hand. "Time for Toby to stop playing around," he said as he pulled his arm back to thrust the kunai into the back of Karen's head. Toby is sorry he has to make a mess, he continued as his arm came down to take her life. "Karen!" Suigetsu shouted as the tip of the kunai touched her hair. It didn't get any further than that. There was a whistling noise, and one of Kimamaro's sharper bones impaled Toby's left wrist and pinned his arm to the trunk of a tree he had been next to. Karen immediately took the opportunity to get free as Toby cried out in pain. Kimamaro leapt from his vantage point to his team. "Sensei, how did you nail him?" Karen asked as she saw Toby phase his arm to the bone and clutch his bleeding wrist, cursing. "All of our attacks, he either dodged or they slipped right through him." "It was fairly simple," Kimamaro stated. "I was watching the three of you try to land a hit on him when I realized that he likely needed to become solid again whenever he intended to strike. Otherwise, he would not have needed bother dodging before he cut off some of your hair or that stunt he pulled with your two teammates. That means he is vulnerable the moment he strikes. I'm sorry I used you three as bait, but that was how I figured this man out." "Gah, very clever," Toby growled, his tone seeming much more serious now. "Against a foe like that, I am not sure I can get away without taking any more injury if I continue to fight. So it looks like I should retreat for the time being." Toby thought in frustration before he vanished into thin air. "What the hell?" Karen shouted. "He's gone." "Great," Suigetsu moaned. "First he totally makes us look like Jinin fresh out of the academy when Karen and I are chunin, and Yugo is a low jonin, and then he runs like a coward." "It's better that way," Kimamaro said. "Now we can get to the Akatsuki base with no more interruptions. We need to move fast to make up for lost time. Ark, why won't you move already, you stupid apple?" Naruto shouted as he extended his palm at the piece of fruit on the podium in front of him, his Rinnegan currently active. "Shinra Tensei," he shouted, concentrating hard, but only getting a slight wiggle out of the apple. Naruto growled as 5 seconds passed and tried again. "Shinra Tensei." The wiggle was slightly stronger this time, but still pathetic. "Man, if only I could use shadow clones for this, but whenever one of them or I use the path, all the rest have to wait for the interval to end, so it's useless." "Shinra Tensei," Naruto cried again. The apple tipped onto its side. "How the hell am I supposed to concentrate on improving my cooking when you are shouting up a ah?" Erika shouted as she came out of the kitchen, just as Naruto made a successful attempt, unfortunately sending the apple right into her face, causing the apple to burst on impact. Naruto paled as he saw that she was currently holding her dreaded frying pan that Felix was so mortally terrified of. Of all the times for my skill to suddenly improve, Naruto muttered darkly as a very angry Erika gripped the handle of the frying pan with both hands and raised it over her head. The blonde's screams for mercy were heard by Felix, who was busy meditating at the moment. Sorry, Naruto, he muttered as he checked the situation with Sage Mode. Against anyone else I would come to your aid, but Erika is the one person I would not stand a chance against. He finished with a shudder. After Naruto was finished receiving his lesson about watching where he was sending flying objects, he left the dining room, massaging his steaming lumps, making a mental note to tell Sakura about the fact that a frying pan was more painful than a rolling pin, because he refused to be the only person in his dimension who had to worry about a significant other who knew that, even if he was not likely to get such a treatment from Hinata. In Suna, a certain raven-haired Konoha Jonin had the sudden urge to strangle the next unfortunate blonde to walk by, and had a suspicion that one blonde in particular was plotting something evil against him. Are you all right, Naruto-kun? Hinata asked as she ran into Naruto on the way to his guest quarters, taking in the bruises on his face. I made the mistake of using the Rinnegan's Deva path to accidentally send an apple into Erika's face as she came out of the kitchen, and she retaliated with that instrument of death. Naruto shuddered. How is your training going, by the way? Well, my accuracy with the bow has improved. I am now almost as good of a shot as Matthew-sensei, but my hurricane fist still needs a little more work. What are you talking about? That style is downright devastating. Well, yes, but I still don't have much control over the amount of chakra I put into the attacks, and I wear down a lot faster than I want to. When you put it like that, it does make sense, Naruto said with his arms crossed. It is hard to use two elements simultaneously, especially when you don't have full control over one of the elements, and I hate to say it, but your wind manipulation could still use some work. Perhaps you should refine control of that element before you focus on Hurricane Fist, otherwise it's like trying to build something with a few missing parts. It might still be workable, but not as stable. But I already used Master the Waterfall cutting exercise. How do I improve from there? Just devote some time to cutting the waterfall more often to further condition yourself to using wind chakra for now. Your control should improve the more you do it, especially if you use a few clones to speed things up a bit. Just don't expect it to work overnight. It took me ages to get the earth and fire elements down to the level you have wind at currently, and I can make a lot more clones than you. Thank you, Naruto. That is good advice. I have my moments, Naruto said with a blush. Oh, and since I just helped you with your taijutsu style, I suppose I should also give you a little help with your archery lessons as well. How do you mean to do that? You don't know how to use a bow, no offense intended. Hee, maybe not, but I still have something for you. Come into my room for a second. Confused, Hinata walked into the room after Naruto. He opened the closet, and he pulled out an empty quiver with a few seals on the interior. So I was thinking, he began, that if you had more of those arrows I put exploding seals on for you handy, then you might have been able to use them to shred up Caius's undead troops instead of tiring yourself out by spamming the Harikan Katen on them, and been able to at least beat his Chimera afterwards. That may be so, but I can only carry so many at a time in the quivers, and I also have to keep a few chakra conductive arrows handy when those are needed. Hinata, you forget the wonders of Fuinjutsu. Naruto grinned as he held the quiver out to Hinata, who took it. Now place your hand towards it as if you were reaching for an arrow, he instructed. She complied, and an exploding one popped out of the seal. I designed those seals to recognize your chakra signature when it approaches, Naruto said with a grin. If you want an exploding arrow, just move as though you were reaching for an arrow. If you want a chakra conducting arrow for either wind or water chakra, or for a Rasengan arrow, just conduct some chakra to your fingers, and then do the same thing, and one of those arrows should unseal themselves. I stocked the seals with about 200 exploding arrows and 300 chakra conductive arrows already, so you should be able to give most enemies hell for a good long time before you run out. And it won't slow you down at all, either, since the arrows are all sealed. Naruto-kun, this is a wonderful gift, Hinata said as she stared at the quiver in awe. I don't know what to say. How about thank you? Naruto teased before Hinata embraced him without warning. Thank you, Naruto, for always being there to help me get stronger when I need it the most, Hinata said. That's what friends are for, especially when said friends are engaged to each other, Naruto replied as Hinata drew back. Then their faces approached, and they got lost in a kiss that lasted about half a minute. After they broke apart, Hinata suddenly had a thought. I'm kind of surprised Isaac did not come to ruin that for us, Hinata said as she looked around to see if said idiot was anywhere around. I'm not, Naruto grinned, causing Hinata to look at him in confusion. I've already made sure to take care of him for the moment I gave you my little present, since I thought it likely we would have a moment. The grin on his face almost made Hinata pity Isaac for whatever Naruto had done. Almost. He peeled me. Several people in town looked up to see the well-known Crazy Isaac running in mortal terror from an army of 100 human-sized squirrels. Thank you, Cook 563, for giving me the human-sized idea. A few of the townspeople watched the spectacle in confusion, wondering what the hell was going on, before most of them simply shrugged, deciding that they were probably better off not knowing, and returned to whatever they were doing, leaving the transformed Naruto clones to continue their torment of the poor Triclops. The sealing of the nanobai was about halfway done when Zetsu appeared and the black half started. Toby has failed to slow the enemy down a significant amount. The enemy will be here in about an hour, and we have no other means of slowing them. The white half continued. What do you want to do, Leader Sama? We continue sealing as much of the Bijuu's chakra as we can until the enemy arrives, Pain replied. After that, Haiden and Kakazu, you are to ambush them, though that will slow the remainder of the process. Hopefully, you will kill the approaching team, since it is unlikely the fight will last an entire day. So be sure to finish them off, or we will likely fail to finish sealing the Bijuu. Sweet, for more sacrifices for Jashin Sama. Haiden giggled sadistically. True to what Zetsu said, Team Kimimaro was rapidly approaching their objective after about an hour. They're right up ahead, Karen informed them. There are 11 chakra signatures ahead of us, one of them massive but slowly weakening, as if chakra is being drained. So, I'm guessing that is the Jinchuriki we are to rescue. 8 of them seem to be a little fuzzy, but the other 2. It's a little hard to describe. It's like one of them has a chakra signature that wouldn't go out, and one of them seems to have 5 different chakras in one body. And those 2 are heading right for us now. Sure enough, a 3-bladed red scythe attached to a thick cable shot from the trees, only to be blocked by Kimimaro, followed by a few blasts of lightning and fire chakra, causing the team to separate to dodge. Karen and Suigetsu going to the left, and Kimimaro and Yugo to the right. The latter 2 were followed by whatever was sending the fire and lightning at them. Suigetsu ducked under another attempt to form the scythe, and Karen threw a few kunai and shuriken into the bushes, and was rewarded by a cry of, ouch. Man, that hurts. Haiden stepped from the bushes, shocking Karen and Suigetsu when they saw that one of the kunai was embedded between his eyes, deep enough that it should have killed, another was in his throat, and a few shuriken were in various other spots, a few of them vital. So who do you think you guys are anyway? Haiden asked as he casually removed the offending projectiles, spilling his blood all over the ground. He stepped on one of the puddles and started to shift his foot to draw a design on the ground. What the hell? Karen said as Haiden finished with that, the design looking like a circle with a triangle in the interior of it. You should have died from those. Yeah, well, obviously I didn't. So shut your yaps and let me sacrifice you to Jashin Sama. Haiden shouted as he rushed Karen, who backed up in time to avoid a swing from Haiden's scythe, but would have been impaled by his follow-up attack from his retractable spear if Suigetsu had not jumped between him and her and impaled Haiden through the heart at the same time. Haiden impaled him through the gut. Of course, neither was particularly bothered by this, because of Haiden's immortality and Suigetsu's ability to turn into water. Oh, so you're a member of the Hozuki clan then? Haiden asked interestedly. Shame for you, he continued as he licked the water off of his spear. That the water you turn into still contains DNA I can use, he finished, and Suigetsu and Karen stared in shock as his skin changed to a black color with bone-white skeleton designs on it, giving him a Grim Reaper appearance. And I know from past experience that your Kikei Genkai fails to protect you from my abilities, Haiden stated as he walked backwards. How are you still alive? Suigetsu demanded as he stared at the wound he had given Haiden. I know I got you through the heart there. Haiden ignored Suigetsu as he stepped into the circle. The preparations are complete, he said before he laughed sadistically. Now, shall we partake in the ultimate suffering together? Chapter 44, The Immortal Duo. No thanks, buddy, Suigetsu replied to Haiden's insane proposal, and Karen immediately threw a kunai at Haiden, which caught him in the left shoulder. And then blood spurted from Suigetsu's left shoulder. God, what the hell? He shouted as he backed up clutching the wound. Haiden cackled as Karen shouted, Suigetsu! She immediately ran up to her comrade, who tried to turn his shoulder to water, but when it reformed, his wound was still there. How did he dash? Simple, boy, Haiden stated. Your abilities don't heal your wounds, they can only prevent them. But just like any other defense, he said as he raised his retractable spear and impaled his own foot with it. At that, Suigetsu's eyes widened, and he clutched his foot as the exact same wound appeared on it. There's always a thing or two that can bypass it. You see, kid, our bodies have been linked as a part of my curse, and anything that happens to my body happens to yours as well, regardless of any differences. And the best part is, I can't die, but you can. But I will torture you a little first. Haiden stabbed his own right hand through after setting his scythe down, causing another scream from Suigetsu. But even if you can't die, Karen stated, Aren't you torturing yourself too? Hayden began laughing at this. Here's a little something for you to think about. For me, when the agony of someone's pain I share through this curse seeps into my body, the pain is transcended and turns into absolute ecstasy. This guy, he is totally sick-minded, Karen thought desperately. I had to find a way to stop his jutsu before he cripples Suigetsu, or worse, kills him, but how? Think, Karen, think. There has to be a weak point to the jutsu, but what? She was threatening to panic as she saw Hayden pierce his thigh, but she forced herself to stay calm and pay close attention to her surroundings for something, anything to go on, before her eyes fell on the circle Hayden was standing in. Wait, that circle he is standing on, is that a part of the curse? She thought, adjusting her glasses in her thoughts as Hayden put a gash in his left bicep. He did say something about preparations, and he did go straight for the circle once his body took on that nightmarish appearance after he took that DNA. He also mentioned from Suigetsu. So does he need to be standing in it to make his jutsu work? Only one way to find out. Time to finish it? Ready to be put out of your misery, kid? Hayden asked as he raised his weapon to impale his heart. No, please no. Karen shouted in her mind as she finished casting signs, praying to any deity that would listen, even Jashin if he would help her, that she would not be too late. Water-style water pressure blast. A high-pressure blast of water came from her mouth and struck against Hayden with enough force to topple a rhinoceros as she tried to blast Hayden out of the circle. But once the stream ended, to Karen's horror, Hayden was still standing and laughing at her. Stupid girl. Do you really think you're the first to have Katona onto my secrets? He taunted. I have had several desperate foes try to force me out of this circle before, so I simply stick my feet to the ground with my chakra to make certain that you can't force me out of it. So now your boyfriend dies, he declared as he plunged the weapon into his heart. No, Karen shrieked, and Suigetsu clutched at his chest. Meanwhile, Kimimaro and Yugo emerged from the forest with two black monsters wearing masks behind them. It was then that a hand grabbed Kimimaro's ankle and slammed him into the ground. You four have been a thorn in our side, the hand's owner, Kakazu, said as the tendrils that kept the limb attached to him pulled it back to his side. So it is time to make sure you never bother us again. Besides, I recognize you from the bingo books, Kimimaro Kagaya. You have a bounty of 33 million Ryo, which I intend to collect from you. Two more of the creatures that had pursued Kimimaro and Yugo stepped behind their master to offer support, while the ones that had pursued them were still behind them, one mask preparing to launch another fireball and the other charging lightning up. Yugo, move, Kimimaro ordered, and they both dived in opposite directions to avoid the attacks. The two other masks immediately converged on a target, the Earth Beast going for Kimimaro and the Wind for Yugo. The Earth Beast fired a cloud of mud at the Kagaya, while Yugo was trying to avoid several shots of wind. Interesting, Kimimaro thought. Each of these beasts seems to use a single element, so there may be a water using one somewhere. Were they anyway? Are they some kind of personal summons? If so, then there is little point in attacking them. I should fight the main foe first. Kimimaro dived around one of the masked beasts and pointed his fingers at Kakuzu. Digital shrapnel, he shouted as the bones were fired from his fingertips. Kakuzu did not even bother to dodge the attack as he cast a few signs, activating his jutsu that hardened his skin. The bone fragments shredded his robes where they hit, but failed to do any damage to Kakuzu himself. Kimimaro frowned before he took a hit from the fire-style mask in the back. The blast would have been fatal if it weren't for the shell of bone he put on his back, though the back of his shirt got burned off. He immediately formed a sharp bone and severed few tendrils that Kakuzu sent his way, but more came at him. Yugo leapt to his friend's side and severed a few more tendrils before they could wrap around Kimimaro, and the Kagaya tried to rush Kaku, who sent even more tendrils as he jumped back. Kimimaro deftly dodged the tendrils, but was intercepted by the wind-style mask, which hit him with one of its arms and knocked him back. He landed next to Yugo with his eyes narrowed and one hand on the ground. Yugo, between those masks and the tendrils he is using, we can't even get close enough to attack him, he told his berserker comrade. I need you to help me get to him by a boost I need you to give me. Trying to formulate a strategy against me won't save you, Kakuzu told his foes. I have been around for too long to fall for any trick you may have to defeat me. In fact, I faced the same man who created the same headbands you both wear around your necks, the Shodame Hokage. Kimimaro's eyes widened. Just how old are you? In a nutshell, I have found a method of extending my natural lifespan. So, I have so much more combat experience than you upstarts could ever hope to achieve. Then I suppose the trap I set behind you is not going to work, is it? Kimimaro asked smugly, to which Kakuzu snorted. Do you really think I'm going to fall for that tired old blue dash boom? Unbeknownst to Kakuzu, while they had been talking, Kimimaro had his hands on the ground and slid one of his bones under it with an exploding tag on it. He was then able to further extend the bone to the ground beneath the old Taki Nin's feet before it came out of the ground behind Kakuzu with the time tag just about to go off. Naturally, the blast was not enough to harm Kakuzu, but it did disorient him enough to give Kimimaro a chance to run forward at the Akatsuki member, forming the flower of his clematis dance. Even with the diversion, however, Kakuzu was still able to send tendrils at Kimimaro, forcing him to dodge them, and he was not fast enough to get at Kakuzu before two of the masked beasts could come between him and his target. Keyword was Yugo formed several seals and shouted, lightning-style thunderblast. Yugo fired a burst of lightning even stronger and faster than the one he had used against Tobi during the brief battle earlier, which surprisingly hit Kimimaro in his back, which was protected by the shell of bone he formed. The impact threw Kimimaro forward between the two masks at Kakuzu, and the Kagaya was able to impale the former Taki Nin through the chest. So much for you, Kimimaro said as Kakuzu died instantly. Thinking that his and Yugo's battle was over, Kimimaro turned to head for Karen and Sujetsu's, only to be slammed aside by the lightning-style mask as it returned to the side of its master. How come you haven't disappeared if your summoner is dead? Kimimaro demanded before he saw the tendrils the creature was made of flow through the hole in Kakuzu's chest, the mask shattering. And to the Kagaya's shock, Kakuzu rose from the dead. Haiden was laughing maniacally at the slumped form of Suigetsu. Now it's your turn, girlie, Haiden said to the sobbing Karen as he reached for his scythe. But then Suigetsu suddenly got up, picked up his sword, rushed at Haiden, and threw a shuriken at him, which caught him in the throat, shocking him and causing him to stagger backwards and feebly raise his right hand to block the blade. And Suigetsu cut it off. Suigetsu, you're all right, Karen shouted in relief as Suigetsu jumped back to avoid a thrust from Haiden's spear. What in the name of Jashin just happened? Haiden demanded as he stared at the stump of his arm. Isn't it obvious? I just cut off your hand, Suigetsu joked, causing Haiden to snarl. Of course it's obvious, you bastard. What I meant was, why are you not dead from my curse? And for that matter, why is your own hand still attached? Easy, Karen's intention to get you out of that circle was not successful, but it did do the job in a different way, Suigetsu said as he shouldered his blade and pointed at the ground. Haiden looked in the direction Suigetsu pointed, and his eyes widened as he saw that his circle was not much more than a bloody smear on the ground now. When Karen blasted you with the water jutsu, it failed to knock you from the circle, Suigetsu said. But the ground here was loose enough for the water to ruin your little circle, making it useless for your little voodoo doll jutsu. That's why your jab through your own heart did not affect me the way it was intended to, and I played along with the curse once I realized I was not harmed by it. Good job, by the way, Karen, he said to her. I just wish I could say I planned that, she replied, though she was smiling. Oh, whatever, Haiden growled. All I have to do is make another circle. Then I can re-establish the curved dash. Haiden started to draw the design again with his foot and the blood that was flowing from his wrist, but Suigetsu rushed forward, pumping some water into his legs to add enough strength to move faster than Haiden could have anticipated with the foot and thigh wounds to account for, and cut off Haiden's head. Sorry, pal, I wasn't going to let you do that, the Hozuki said as Haiden's body went down like a ton of bricks. Damn you, do you have any idea how much this hurts? Haiden's head shouted from the ground, causing Suigetsu to give a small jump of surprise before his eyes narrowed, and he kneeled over the severed head. Okay, just what does it take to kill you if that didn't work? Karen looked a little sick at the thought of a person living through decapitation as the head laughed. Sorry, killing me is just not doable, Haiden sneered. Fine then, but it's clear that you are currently useless in your state, Karen said. Shut up, you little hag. I can still chew you to D-Gurg. The last part came out as Karen stomped on the head, a tick mark developing. Never use the H word towards me again, she advised. I'm sick of listening to this guy's foul mouth myself, Suigetsu said as he picked up the cussing head by the hair. Ever play a game of soccer, Mr. Immortal? What the hell does that have to do with SHIT? Haiden shouted as Suigetsu tossed the head up, pumped some water into his right leg to add some muscle mass, and kicked the head with all his might. The screaming head of Haiden sailed quite far indeed. Well, let's make sure that anyone who wants to piece this guy back together has quite a time doing so, Suigetsu said as he headed towards Haiden's body before his adrenaline wore off and the pain of his wounds caught up with him. He fell to his knees, wincing, and Karen shouted, Suigetsu! She ran to his side as he tried to rise, and she pulled up the sleeve of her cloak and put her wrist in front of Suigetsu's face. Her arm used to be covered with bite marks, but fortunately, Tsunade had found a way to remove the once permanent marks. I'm fine, the Hozuki protested, only to get smacked through the head by Karen. Like hell you are. Just bite me, so I don't have to carry you. Suigetsu reformed his head and sighed as he complied. After he was healed, they got to the grim task of chopping up Haiden's body to make sure it would not be easy to reassemble him. They threw a lot of the pieces in many different directions, Suigetsu adding some distance with his ability to pump his arms up. The rest they buried in various locations, making use of Suigetsu's water clones to take them far to be buried. That will have to do, Suigetsu said as he tossed the last piece away. He won't die, which is a pain, but I bet he wishes he was dead right about now. We better go help Kimimaro and Yugo. He paused as his eyes fell upon the scythe Haiden had dropped. He picked it up and gave an experimental swing. This is an interesting weapon. Might as well take it as a trophy. I may have a use for it if I ever need to extend my reach a bit. Kimimaro and Yugo were frantically avoiding Kakuzu's attacks as the immortal made attempts to claim the latter's heart, after Kimimaro had destroyed the first, putting Kakuzu in need of a replacement for his lightning-style mass heart. Kakuzu had already explained how he had extended his lifespan by stealing the hearts of others for the past century, so Kimimaro already knew that he was going to have to kill Kakuzu 4 more times, unless he broke the mask before they revived him. The wind-style mask approached and gathered chakra for a wind blast at Kimimaro. That was when the Kagaya started to counterattack, the curse mark on his chest glowing orange and spreading over his body in the line design. I had almost forgotten that you were one of Orochimaru's more talented subordinates, Kakuzu said casually. Kimimaro's eyes narrowed before he said flatly, "Never say that name in my presence again." Over the past 2 years of his life in Konoha, he had been able to make true friends, comrades he had come care for. As a result, he was able to see exactly what the difference between true happiness in his life with Orochimaru was, and he realized just how hollow his life had still been after being taken in by the Snake Sannin. So his former worship for Orochimaru had turned into complete disgust. The wind mask fired at Kimimaro, and he ran through 4 hand seals. Fire-style, blazing clematis flower. The flames, shaped exactly how they were described, shot out of Kimimaro's mouth, powered slightly by his curse seal, and collided with the wind fired by the mask. It seemed that Kimimaro's jutsu was going to win out at first, due to his elemental advantage and the fact that his jutsu was a little stronger to begin with. But before the flames could destroy the mask, the fire-style mask joined the wind one, and they combined their jutsus, ultimately overpowering Kimimaro's jutsu. Kimimaro was hit by the fanned wall of flames, and would have been cooked alive if it had not been for the shell of bones he managed to make to shield him from the worst of the flames. As it was, he still got several second and first-degree burns on his torso, and was blasted back. The earth mask fired several shots of mud at him, which impacted hard enough to keep him off balance, and Yugo immediately tried to rush to the aid of his friend, but was halted by Kakuzu, who was using several more of his tendrils in an attempt to subdue the berserker. Yugo was able to sever a few with his axe, but he got caught by several others, which held his arms and legs away from his body, and more began to burrow their way into his chest to take his heart. Yugo closed his eyes before he realized he had no choice but to go berserk, and he mentally stopped the seal from keeping the natural energy out of his body. His flesh changed to its bestial form, and Kakuzu's eyes widened as he was suddenly faced with several chakra cannons. "Ha, die already," Yugo shouted as he gleefully fired point blank at his enemy, who leapt back in a panic and was just barely able to raise a protective shield of his tendrils before he was blasted full force. He was thrown hard against a tree and lay prone against the ground. Yes, he's dead. Ha. Yugo was cackling before he got engulfed in flames from the wind and fire-style masks, which had joined bodies. Kakuzu rose a little gingerly as he saw a smoking and heavily burned Yugo rush out of the inferno. Kimimaro was still fighting the earth mask, which was keeping its distance from his spines and firing an increasing number of mud balls. Kimimaro formed several spines from his bones and flung them at the mask, but the mask avoided them all. Cursing as he saw Yugo's predicament, Kimimaro activated his curse seal again, entering second state. He dived under several more clods of stone and mud and slid between the legs of the masked beast, and ran straight for Yugo, who was currently taking more wind-enhanced fireballs to his body, not even being given a chance to recover and retaliate, before his berserk state finally receded and he collapsed. "Now, your heart is mine," Kakuzu said as once again his tendrils were sent to burrow their way into Yugo's chest. Before he could finish, he sensed danger and was forced to jump back to avoid Kimimaro's bone sword thrust. "Don't you ever know when to quit?" Kakuzu demanded as Kimimaro threw the bone sword, catching Kakuzu in the shoulder. "Dance of the Clematis," Kimimaro said as he ripped out his spine and formed the bone lance with his other hand. "The vine," he shouted, swinging the spinal column at Kakuzu, who got his arms pinned to his sides before the Kagaya slammed him to the ground. "Now the flower," Kimimaro shouted, dashing at Kakuzu. Before he could reach his target, the fire and wind-masked body leapt between Kimimaro and Kakuzu and prepared to blast him. Kimimaro hastily reabsorbed the lance and let go of his spine and cast seals. Fire-style, blazing clematis flower. Once again, he fired his jutsu to battle against the collaborative mass jutsu. Only this time, Kimimaro was in his second state, so his fire jutsu was a lot stronger this time. So once the two attacks met, it seemed to be a stalemate at first, before Kimimaro's jutsu began to gain ground. Before he could defeat the two masks, however, He was hit in the side by yet another clod of earth, knocking him away. Before he could recover, Kakuzu's tendrils wrapped around his waist, and he was lifted into the air as Kukuzu jumped up, and then the immortal threw Kimimaro hard into the ground, making a large crater. Though Kimimaro was mostly unharmed by this, Kakuzu's mass had a remedy for that. All three of them leapt into the air above Kimimaro, and the earth mask fired off several earth balls, which were followed up by the fire and wind masks launching their collaborative attack, igniting the earth clods before they slammed into the stunned elite Jonin. Kimimaro! Yugo shouted as he watched the inferno consume the area his friend was in. Though the bones Kimimaro could create offered a great deal of defense against external injury, they would do little to prevent the heat from burning Kimimaro to death. Kakuzu chortled as he walked up to the weakened berserker. Shame, he was actually quite a challenge. Oh well, hopefully his corpse will still be recognizable enough to collect the bounty. And now this time, we should have no interruptions. Kakuzu finished as his tendrils once more crept towards Yugo, who tried to back away, but he was caught quickly. Good, I will soon have my full repertoire again. Bracken dance. A voice from beneath their feet shouted, surprising Kakuzu, before a multitude of bone spikes erupted from the ground, all of them missing Yugo, but one impaled Kakuzu through his current heart, and he never got the chance to get a replacement, for his masked beasts were also in the area of effect, each one getting impaled multiple times before the hearts within took a hit that forever stopped their beating. How? Kakuzu demanded weakly as Kimimaro emerged from the ground. How did you survive the fire? I never was hit by it. Kimimaro replied before pointing at the crater Kakuzu's masks had fired at. Inside, there was a seeming replica of Kimimaro, though severely charred, and cracked in several areas, and hollow. When you caught me in your tendrils, I realized that every time I tried to attack you or one of your masks, I would always get interrupted by another. So in addition to taking steps to avoid your attack, I quickly formulated a plan. I created a thin shell of bone that looked almost exactly like me in the front, but missing the back part. When I was slammed into the ground, I tunneled beneath it, leaving the shell behind to fool you into thinking I was still there, and the shell was what took your attack. And then I used my ultimate jutsu, the Bracken dance, which you can see all around you. The idea was to attack you and all of your remaining masks at once, so they would not be able to cover each other or you. I can't believe it. 4 of my hearts. In one attack, I can't die here. I have lived too long for my life to have been ended by the likes of you. You have lived long enough by taking away the lives of others, Kimimaro said, his expression hardening. People like you remind me of the monster I was once blind enough to serve, even to the extent of giving up my own life just to prolong his worthless one. It is only thanks to a few shinobi of the Hidden Leaf and Yugo that I was able to open my eyes and see what was really worth protecting and fighting for. Curse you, Kakuzu said, before his body went completely limp. Kimimaro sighed as his cursed seal receded. Chapter 45 Change of Plans. Just as Kimimaro reached the edge of the forest, Karen and Suigetsu exited the trees, Suigetsu toting the scythe that had been used to attack them earlier, though Kimimaro had never seen the attacker. You guys all right? Suigetsu asked. Yes, we are fine. Our opponent was killed by me, though as you can see, Yugo is a little weak, Kimimaro replied before he explained about Kakuzu's abilities and the fight he and Yugo had with him, while Karen healed Yugo with her special ability. It ended when I destroyed his 4 remaining hearts with my Bracken dance, Kimimaro finished. Naruto sneezed as he tried to use Deva Path again. Strange. Why did the words, eat your heart out, just go through my mind? He ultimately shrugged before he extended his hand at the training dummy again. Shinra Tensei. The dummy wobbled before it fell on its side. Gah, how am I supposed to repel attacks with this path, if I can't even knock a human-sized object back a few feet? Maybe I should practice the other paths a bit before I work on the strongest one. Yeah, well, we fought a retard who wouldn't freaking die, Suigetsu said after Kimimaro finished his explanation and Yugo was back on his feet. Tried a lot of things. I stabbed him through the heart and ended the fight by decapitating him, which kept his body from moving, but he still lived through it. We had to dismember his body and scatter the pieces as much as we could, so he won't be a problem anymore, at least for a while. What was really annoying about him was that all he needed was an enemy's DNA, which he clearly usually gets from blood, and then he can put some kind of curse on them where his body was like a voodoo doll. Any injuries that were done to him would be done to whoever he cursed, and it even bypassed my ability to turn into water. Kimimaro's eyebrows rose. If that is the case, and you dismembered him, then how? I broke the curse, Karen said a little proudly. He also needed to be standing in a diagram he draws on the ground with his own blood, and he was even clever enough to stick his feet to the ground with chakra, so any attempts to knock him out of it were useless. But I was smart enough to, ouch. Don't you try to boast, Suigetsu, who had just bonked her on the head, told her. You initially tried to just blast him out of it with that water-style jutsu I taught you. You had no strategy beyond that whatsoever. It was sheer luck that the water washed away enough of the diagram to break the curse. You didn't plan that. Well, it saved your ungrateful ass, didn't it? The least you could do is let me impress Sensei a little. Please, you already owed me for stopping the guy from impaling you with the spear of his. All you did was return the favor. Yeah, well, I did heal you. It was because I stopped his attack that he got my DNA, and I got injured in the first place. So once again, we're Ev Dash. He did not get any further, as Kimimaro grabbed both of their heads and smacked them together, causing Karen to splutter as her hair got wet as a result. Are you two quite done with your lover's spat? The Kagaya demanded, causing both of them to turn an undocumented shade of red. So, where's the head of your foe? I kicked her away about 10 miles, why? Suigetsu replied, causing Kimimaro to facepalm. You really didn't think to take that part along with you? We could have interrogated him that way, and there would have been less chance of him being pieced back together, and yet you blew it? Kimimaro demanded, showing a rare flash of irritation, and Suigetsu paled. Stupid, 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 the Hozuki muttered, banging his head against a tree with each word. Kimimaro sighed. What's done is done, I suppose. What we need to do now is get to the Jinchuriki before the extraction process Hokage-sama mentioned is complete. Karen. That way, she said, pointing. Pain's eyes narrowed as the team of 4 entered the cave where the Geto Mizo was still sucking the Nanabi's chakra out of Fu, who was suspended in midair. So, I take it you were the Akatsuki, Kimimaro said as he looked disdainfully at the 8 figures on the statue's fingers. We are taking the girl, and since none of you are actually here, I don't see how you can stop us. Pain mentally cursed. They had only managed to extract about 2/3 of the Nanabi's chakra, and they also had yet to gain the consciousness of the Bijou from Fu. But maybe he could still prevent the loss. I would not recommend it, Pain said. If you interrupt the process, you'll cause all that we have removed so far to go off and destroy everything within a 6-mile radius. Kimimaro frowned, but Karen interjected. He's bluffing, even though he is not really there. I can still sense when he is lying, so my guess is he's trying to scare us into not stopping them. Pain cursed again. So it seems that you have a decent sensory type with you. Well played. Very well then, take the container. Who knows, she might even live. With that, the statue disappeared and the figures with it. But not before one who appeared to be heavily armored looked at Kimimaro, showing the Kagaya a set of Sharingan, 3 Tomo in each eye. Kimimaro's eyes widened in shock once the figure was gone. Fu fell to the ground limply. Was that a member of the Uchiha clan? Kimimaro asked, as Karen dashed forward and checked the girl's vital signs before she put her wrist in Fu's mouth and forced the jaws to close on it. After a few minutes, Fu's eyes opened, and she looked weakly at her saviors. Who are you? She asked them. Shinobi of Konoha, Kimimaro replied, as Karen made Fu bite her again. We are here to take you back to Takigakure. Thank you, Fu said as she finished having her energy restored. She got her feet. I told you I was lucky 7, Chome declared within the mid-hair. Oh, shut up, Nanabi, Fu mentally snapped, following Team Kimimaro out of the cave. I'm Fu, by the way. Who are you guys? I'm Karen Uzumaki. Yugo of the Scales. Suigetsu Hozuki. And I'm the leader of this sorry lot with the exception of Yugo, Hey, Kimimaro Kagaya. We should get going before any more members of the Akatsuki can be sent against us. Come on, I used my heel bite 3 times today. Can I rest a little first? Karen whined as she plopped down. Fine, you may rest, Kimimaro replied, and Karen sighed with relief. Suigetsu, carry her, we are leaving now. What? Both Karen and Suigetsu protested. It is imperative that we get Fu back to Taki as soon as possible. We cannot allow ourselves to give our enemies a chance to assault us. Suigetsu and Karen both sighed in defeat, and Suigetsu slung one of Karen's arms around his neck and shoulder. Before they could get going, however, a crow flew up to Kimimaro and gave him scroll. His eyes narrowed as he read the contents and turned to the team, his expression only betraying a hint of what he suddenly felt rage. Change of plans. We're to take Fu straight back to Konoha. What? Why? Am I to be a prisoner or something? Fu demanded. No, nothing like that. Takigakure's leaders have made the decision that their village no longer will harbor a demon with the threat of the Akatsuki bearing down on them for it, and they have sent a request to Hokage-sama to have Fu killed on sight by us. Naturally, he refused, and thus our orders are to bring her to Konoha instead of Taki. Those bastards. Fu trembled as she read the scroll herself. I tried so hard to be someone they could like, someone they could acknowledge, but all I was to them my whole life was a weapon, one who has become too inconvenient to keep around. Why me? I didn't ask for this. Kimimaro looked at Fu with pity in his gaze. He remembered being locked in a cage his whole childhood by the members of his clan without knowing why, having done nothing to deserve such a fate, before the clan was butchered by Kiri, and he was set adrift into the world, lost without a purpose. He was then seemingly saved by Orochimaru, but he knew full well now that he himself was nothing more than a tool to the snake, one that had been shunted to the side the moment he became too ill to be of use. "You bear a heavy burden," Kimimaro finally said, "but your life will be better once we get to Dash. Just be quiet, please." Fu almost shouted, tearing up. "You don't know a thing. I never once had a chance at happiness. Why should your village be any different? So don't act like you understand me. I will go with you, but only because I have nowhere else to go to." With that, she leapt to the top of a tree branch and headed towards the hidden leaf. "Geez, what's her problem?" Suigetsu asked, before Kimimaro held a bone blade to the Hozuki's neck. "Don't start," the white-haired man warned. "She has gone through more than you realize, so if you belittle her suffering, you will feel my wrath." Suigetsu gulped. Though he could turn into water to avoid injury, Kimimaro was just plain scary wine-angered, even when he seemed calm. "And OSD, well, fancy meeting you here, Haiden. Weren't you just near Takigakure to prevent the Nanabi's recovery? But I guess I would know that you and Kakuzu failed. After all, Kisame and I just left the container with the team sent to retrieve it." Kabuto chuckled, somewhere outside the land of Earth, where Kabuto and Kisame had been sent to wait for an opportunity to take either of Iwa's Jinchuriki. "Oh, just shut up and get me down already, you asshole." Haiden snarled, his head hanging by the hair on a tree branch it had become ensnared in. "And while you're at it, why don't you summon some of those zombies of yours that are sensory types to find the rest of my pieces for me?" "TSK, that is no way to ask a favor. But if you insist," Kabuto said as he summoned one of his Edo Tensei, a heavy-set man wearing shades and a Kiri headband. "Go find the rest of this guy's body for me," he ordered, and the man left. "Just one?" Haiden protested. "That's going to take forever. That's what you get for being rude. Perhaps if you said please, I would summon some more on it." "Screw you." Sigh. So predictable. Wow, who knew that Suna sold weapons like this? Where do they get the materials? Gara-sensei is the reason for that. Matsuri, a Suna genin who had been given the D rank of showing Sasuke and his team around the village. In addition to his duties as one of the village's greatest jonin, his father, the Kazekage, has also given the task of using his sand to find all of the best metals and other valuable things such as gold and the diamond you see on that blade. It has really helped our village's economy, so Gara-sensei actually has some admiration in the village now. "I'm quite happy for him," Matsuri said. It was quite clear that she had feelings for her teacher. "You should just give up on that weapon, Daisuke. I bet you can't afford it," Akari said, and Daisuke sighed and replaced the tool. "I would kill for such an awesome weapon, though," he whined. "It's not as cool as what Gara wields now. Trust me," Matsuri said. "Oh, and what would that be?" Sasuke asked with interest. "I actually know Gara quite well, and I never knew he wielded a weapon." "That's secret, sorry," Matsuri said with a smile. "But a single swing of it has demolished a good portion of one of our training grounds once. I might buy one or two of these," Kiyoshi mused as he looked at a few small crossbow bolts tipped in diamond. Kiyoshi's main weapon was a one-handed crossbow that could hold 2 quarrels at once, and he could also poison the tips. "I actually saved my mission pay after all, and these are not nearly as expensive as that katana, so I think I can afford to invest in serious life or death situations." Sasuke, meanwhile, was still wondering about the weapon Matsuri mentioned Gara used. Part of the reason Sasuke had brought the team to Suna so early was to answer a request from the Ichibi's Jinchuriki to help test out a new ultimate offense and defense. Sasuke was curious to find out why Gara wanted to use him as a guinea pig for that. At any rate, it's thanks to Gara the village is back on track with some decent finances, and the Kazekage has opened a few new academies with some of the money raised as a result of Gara's efforts, Matsuri said proudly. "It's funny though," she continued. "It seems as though the training is more intense and number of shinobi candidates has increased a rather high number. It's almost as if the Kazekage is preparing the village for some kind of war." Not exactly hard to figure that one out, since the Kazekage has been made aware of just how much of a threat the Akatsuki are, Sasuke thought. "Get a guard up," Vanessa told the trainee in front of her as she swung again, and the young Yashoryu was just barely able to block. "Better. Vanessa," Naruto shouted as he ran into the private training room. "Do you know where Felix is?" he asked somewhat frantically. "You should be sparring with Matthew in the AOS room." "Why?" Vanessa asked, noticing how flustered Naruto seemed to be. "One of my shadow clones was just studying something about the Rikudu, Sanin, while I was practicing the Deva Path, and it came across something that it dispelled immediately to let me know about," Naruto said. "I need to tell Felix that I found Raisin's name." Chapter 46 Politics. The gravity manipulators? Felix asked as he looked intently at the scroll Naruto had been reading and was now showing him, Erika and Hinata. I know that there were rumors that there was a survivor today, though they were supposed to have been destroyed in ancient times, and that we were also investigating the rumors of a man named Raisin leading the faction from the Elder Dimension that had been working with the Akatsuki, but I never suspected that they were connected. Naruto nodded, and they read the scroll from the beginning. Zion Rikudu, the man who would later become known as the legendary Rikudu Sannin, was the sole survivor of the Six Paths clan. For as a child, the only clan with members as powerful, the Jinchuriki Tsuri, wiped out the Rikudus in a bid to establish a tyranny over the Elder Dimension. Zion had been spared, barely escaping with his life. The boy later awakened the Rinnegan, and despite his hatred for the Jinchuriki Tsuri, did not immediately seek revenge. Instead strove to help those who fell under the oppression the clan had set. Upon realizing that there was a survivor of the Rikudus, the gravity manipulators sent assassin after Zion to end what they arrogantly perceived as the sole threat to their rule. Zion escaped time and time again, causing the Jinchuriki Tsuris to focus more and more effort on capturing and killing Zion. This turned out to be a mistake. The remaining fighters in the Elder Dimension began forming a resistance movement, with some aid from Zion, and this faction was mostly ignored by the Jinchuriki Tsuris, who were still striving to capture the future Rikudu Sannin. This arrogant act cost them dearly, for if they had stomped the resistance out while it was still in the developmental stages, then the Elder Dimension today would likely still be under their rule. As it was, by the time the Jinchuriki Tsuri clan took the resistance faction seriously, they were already outnumbered by over 1,000 to 1. When the resistance assaulted the gravity manipulators, Zion himself also added his strength to the conflict, and the corrupt clan fought back, almost every single member refusing to believe they could lose the battle, believing themselves invincible no matter what they were up against. As a result, despite destroying nearly a third of the enemy troops, all but one of the clan had been slain, the sole survivor being Raisin Jinchuriki Tsuri. Naruto looked up from the scroll and said, "This is where my clone dispelled, in order to let me know right away that he had found the name we had been looking for. But wait, didn't you see that yourself, having had the Rinnegan active to practice Deva Path?" Hinata asked, referring to the shared field of vision the Rinnegan gave its wielder. "I did," Naruto replied. "But my clone didn't. He kept it shut off to read the scroll so I could focus on that training. He clearly did not think to just activate the dojutsu to show me what he was seeing. Idiot. But he is your clone," Erika said with a bit of amusement. "So his intelligence should roughly be the same as yours. So if he was too stupid to think of using the Rinnegan to show you, then that dash." In our defense, Naruto hastily replied, "I only just recently got this ability, so it makes sense that I would not have thought of it right away. At any rate, moving on." With that, Hinata, Erika, Felix, and Naruto once again viewed the scroll. The next few paragraphs mainly detailed rebuilding peace in the Elder Dimension after what had happened with the Jinchuriki Tsuri clan, before the subject returned to Raisin, the sole survivor of his clan, a story which mirrored the newly named Rikudu Sannins. Raisin had survived during this period of trying to rebuild what was lost. He vowed vengeance for the loss of his clan, but he was wiser than his arrogant clan members. Rather than attack the remainder of the Elder Dimension forces along with the Rikudu, Raisin knew he could not win that fight, so instead sought to increase his odds. To achieve the destruction of those who had taken his clan, he eventually stumbled upon an ancient secret. Thus, he ventured into the core of the world, where the ancients had sealed a demon that had once destroyed most of the Elder Dimension, the Juubi. After many years of endless work, Raisin eventually managed to loosen the seal enough to release the ancient horror once more on the world. Thus, the Juubi emerged in a storm of magma from the crust of the Elder Dimension, ready to destroy all in its path. The hole that the Juubi made when it escaped the core of this world is actually still there, Felix said as they read that part. These days, it has the interesting title of the Doomsday Pit. Though it no longer goes all the way down to the world's core, the lava that formed the mantle filled it in a lot, though the scar is still a deep one. Naturally, the reemergence of this 10-tailed demon sparked an immediate response with the Elder Dimension's forces, and they began to do all that they could to fight back the beast, but all of their efforts and preparations to harm the Juubi were assaulted by Raisin. Raisin's strategy was to prevent the Elder Dimension's forces from getting organized enough to form a defense against the Juubi, keeping the ranks as disorganized and chaotic as possible. It was then that the Rikudu Sannin attacked Raisin, in a desperate effort to buy the army enough time to launch the needed counterattack. The battle between these two solitary survivors of their respective clans was one that demolished much of their surroundings, though neither one was able to wound the other, until at last, the last gravity manipulator ran out of chakra and was cut down by Zion. Thus, the Jinchuriki Tsuri clan died out utterly. The rest of the story was the same common knowledge of the Rikudu Sannin, how he and the army had driven the Juubi into a rift from the Elder Dimension to Naruto's dimension, and how he chose to be exiled to protect the inhabitants of the more primitive world. But wait, Hinata said a little fearfully. How could this be the same Raisin? I mean, he did die fighting the sage, didn't he? And even if he survived, then he would be far too old to be alive today. Could the Raisin we are facing be doing the same thing as Obito? I'm not so sure that is the case, Felix said thoughtfully. Don't forget, we are also up against another foe from not too long after the events we have just read about, Kai Shikokyo, the corrupt phoenix. Hinata shivered, and Naruto scowled at that name. She had told Naruto that Caius was interested in making her into one of his Edo Tensei to use against him, which sickened the whiskered blonde to his very core. It is likely that he found Raisin's remains, and it's not too much of a stretch that he has been helping Raisin cheat death for all these centuries, Felix continued. That said, we could very well be facing the very same enemy that the Rikudo Sun Nin himself needed to give his all against if history is accurate. All three other people present shivered at the scary thought. So what are we going to do about this information? Naruto asked. I'm going to inform the ruling council, and hopefully they will see enough sense to take decisive action. I wouldn't hold my breath, though. Even if our chancellor, the highest ranking member, were believe that Raisin is still alive, despite a lack of concrete proof, there are way too many other idiots on the council who would be too scared to take the rumors seriously, which could drown out the opinions of those who actually have and use their brains, even if the chancellor is one of the latter group. Damn politics. It's times like these I wish we ran on a dictatorship rather than a democracy. In the meantime, I would suggest you continue your work on mastering the Rinnegan Naruto. Raisin did lose to one with those same eyes after all, so they could be one of your greatest weapons against him. If one could see what was going on in Itachi's office 2 days later, they would wonder why he was not addicted to headache medication. He had just been receiving a mission report from one of the Jonin instructors, none other than Sakura Haruno, who had gotten past the rank of Chunin in this timeline and was now leading her own Genin team when he had been rather rudely interrupted by Hamura and Koharu, who had burst in on him, demanding to know the reason he was risking a political scandal right now. Apparently, they had gotten wind of the fact that Itachi had decided to harbor Fu, Takigakyu's Jinchuriki, when said nation had seen fit to order the girl's execution. They were not happy with the fact that Takigakure was sending shinobi envoys to try to make demands with Itachi, a few of them even going so far as to threaten war, to which the Uchiha had responded coolly that they would never win if it came to that. He had been willing to offer compensations, however, though Taki downright refused them, still preferring to make threats of retaliation unless their demands were met, stating that the Nanabai was their property and they were going to ensure it was destroyed. So now Itachi and Sakura were being treated to a tirade from the aged counselors, after Itachi had given Sakura permission to stay and hear what was being discussed. The things stated in this tirade included, but were not limited to, the two counselors practically ordering Itachi to comply with Taki's demands, why Itachi would want to increase the risk of Konoha being targeted by the Akatsuki, and how Konoha must look to other nations right about now. Finally, Itachi had had enough. I'll have you know, Itachi said, that the nations of Suna, Kyumo, and even IWA have gotten wind of my decision already, and they have agreed that it is not fair to allow Taki to kill off one of their shinobi for circumstances beyond her control. The former two are because of the fact that the Jinchuriki of the villages are related to the Kages of said villages, so they can understand what is right or wrong when it comes to the treatment of these individuals. It's not about what's right or wrong. It's about what's best for the village. Hamura almost shouted. If Danzo were Hokage, he would ignore such foolish sentimentalism and focus on the greater good. Itachi was well and truly pissed at this point. He himself remembered what he had to do for the greater good in the previous timeline, and he was not at all pleased about that being brought up, even if it was unintentional and unknown by the counselors. Slapping his hands down on his desk and rising with an expression that would have sent anyone with experience dealing with Tsunade running, he said, "But Danzo is not Hokage right now. I am, and as such, I give you orders, not the other way around, so you can spout all of your petty demands at me you desire. You will not change my mind." Sputtering, Koharu immediately replied, "You can't just ignore Dash. And I will also have you know," Itachi continued, cutting off the aged woman, "that what you call the greater good, I prefer the lesser evil. And to me, lesser evil is still just that, evil. And the foolish sentimentality you mentioned? Let me tell you, that is exactly what built this village in the first place. It was our Shodame Hokage's desire to unite feuding clans to prevent further bloodshed between them. Even though he had had Madara at his mercy at one point, he chose to put his life on the line rather than simply do what someone like Danzo would have. Had he not done that, the Uchiha and the Senju would never have been able to build this village. While I admire Danzo's willingness to protect the village, it would shame the previous Hokage who built and protected the village based on what they thought was right. Think about that, and get out of my office while you are at it. You think you could just dash, Koharu snarled. You have no authority to dash, Hamura growled at the same time, but then Sakura cut them both off. I think he just reminded you of the fact that he is the Hokage, and by extension, your boss, so why are you trying to give him orders? So why don't you just shut up and do as he says? In fact, I'll make it easy for you and give you not one, but two ways out of the room. You can either voluntarily exit yourself through the door, or I can forcefully help you out through the window. Your choice, she said the last part with a sweet smile that screamed to anyone with any common sense. Danger, run. Apparently, even the two aged counselors had enough sense to see the danger and realize that Itachi could and would let her carry out her threat, and fled the room faster than you would expect people their age. Sighing, Itachi sat back in a chair and said, unwittingly echoing a certain wielder of all five elements, damn, I hate politics. Yeah, Hokage-sama, Sakura said. If I may ask, what exactly was that all about anyway? What exactly is a Jinchuriki? Itachi gave the pink-haired Kunoichi a brief explanation about what a bijou and a Jinchuriki was, and about the fact that an organization called the Akatsuki was after them. In short, he was finishing. When the Akatsuki took the host of the Nanabai, they did some serious damage and killed off many of their best shinobi before they claimed her. They were going to extract the Nanabai from her, but I had sent Team Kimimaro to stop them, and they were only able to extract a large portion of the Nanabai's chakra. Unfortunately, Taki is now calling for the death of Fu, because they have decided arbitrarily that they had only kept her demon around because of the value as a weapon, but since the Akatsuki are willing to do a lot of damage to the village, they think that the threat overshadows the value. But that's not the slightest bit fair. Sakura almost shouted. If she had the bijou sealed within her at birth, then she was practically marked for death from the get-go. I agree. That's why I ordered Kimimaro to bring her back here. I'm also putting him in charge of her safety for the time being. Wait, why are you telling me this? As a Jonin, you are privy to this information anyway, and it actually pertains to you more than you know, though it's not my place to tell you why on that part, Itachi replied. At any rate, shouldn't you get going if you want your team to take the Chunin exams in Suna? Oh yeah, that's right. So where's Sasuke-kun? I was thinking our teams and us could go together. Itachi paled before he reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a box labeled when giving bad news to a Kunoichi. Use these. He pulled out a set of earplugs and inserted them before saying, kinda left the village already, saying he had to meet an old friend there before the exams. Silence. Then, the outskirts of Konoha heard a deafening cry of, you mean T.O. tell me that he left without waiting for me, T.O. Come back from that C-rank we got from you? Oh, he is gonna get it when I get to Suna. Ja! Sasuke suddenly shivered as he faced Gaara in one of the more private training grounds in the Hidden Sand Village. Why do I suddenly feel mortal terror? Relax, I don't intend to use any of these techniques against you. Just one of your shadow clones, Gaara replied, misinterpreting Sasuke's apprehension. It's not that, it's... Never mind, just show me what you can do. First your new defense. It's really just an upgraded version of my old sand shield, Gaara replied, as the cork of his gourd popped out, and sand that had several glittering particles in it poured out. I had gotten used to carrying heavier and heavier sand in my gourd to increase the overall strength of my absolute defense. The glittering you see is dust, ground from diamonds my sand radar techniques have helped me find, mixed into my sand. This adds strength to my defense, as you likely guessed. And because I am using heavier sand, I had to train almost non-stop to keep the speed of it up to par with what I could do. But the result is an increased speed with regular sand as well, and my stamina has also shot up, so I'm already far stronger than I've been when I fought Madara in the previous timeline, though if I face someone like him again, I decided I would need more than an ultimate defense. But before I show you how hard my new offense hits, try to fire a Susanoo arrow at my sand shield, and see if it can stop it. Gaara then formed the sand shield and stepped out of it. Sasuke nodded, and his Susanoo formed around him, and shot an arrow at the empty shell. The shield held briefly before the arrow shattered into purple fragments. There was a small hole that could be used to peer into the interior of the shell, but if Gaara had actually been inside of the shield, he would have been completely unharmed. The shield reformed, and Gaara then requested a raisin lance, which Sasuke complied with. The lightning spear already had more penetration power than the arrows did, and also had an elemental advantage over Gaara's sand. As a result, the raisin lance was barely slowed as it passed through the shield. Well, I've yet to find anything that can actually withstand that, so don't feel too bad, Sasuke said apologetically as a seal he had activated to throw the jutsu receded. Naruto's version 2 cloak stalled it, and the lance would not have penetrated if I allowed him to get carried back by the impact, but my raisin tide held him in place. Very well then, though I can see that I'm going to want to add even more diamond dust to the shield. Now, I believe it is time to show you my new offense and test it. If you'd have a shadow clone, use Susanoo. Sasuke nodded and made a shadow clone to do just that, and Gaara pulled a scroll from his pouch and unsealed. A giant 22-foot-long sword made entirely out of diamond. Sasuke's eyes widened as he took that in, and saw that the edge was keener than a razor. How the hell can you wield that? It's 4 times longer than you are tall, Sasuke said. Gaara smirked before he said like this. Sand deity. As he shouted the last part, his sand shield formed around him before much of the sand from the desert formed around it. And the end result was a warrior of sand that was about 30 feet tall, with a sand shield that had Gaara within it. Let me guess, Sasuke said with a wry smirk as the sand deity picked up the diamond claymore. He had his shadow clone fully form, the final Susanoo he had used to destroy several white Zetsus in the previous timeline. You were inspired by the Susanoo to create that. You got me, Gaara said from within the sand deity. Connecting his optic nerve to the third eye of sand, he made to see outside of the new jutsu. The warrior gripped the sword with both hands and brought it down on the Susanoo with a lot more speed than expected, and it hit the aura with enough force to completely shatter it and dispel Sasuke's clone. Well, I'm certainly impressed, Sasuke said. Not many attacks could utterly destroy a Susanoo like that, though Sasuke could have dodged it if he wanted to. Gaara let the sand deity dissolve, and his sand shield returned to his gourd. Unfortunately, one of the drawbacks is the lack of air inside of that thing, Gaara replied. So unless I leave a hole for air to get in and out, I can only use this jutsu for a few minutes at a time. Not only that, but using it to swing a sword that heavy can drain my chakra pretty fast, though like I said, my stamina has gotten better, though not as good as Naruto's. Whose is? Sasuke deadpanned. Felix was fuming as he left the council rooms. Despite having convinced a fair number of counselors, and even Chancellor Samuel, that at least precautionary measures should be taken in case of Raisin's now seemingly likely continued survival. The vast majority of the corrupt old fools refused to think past their wrinkles and outvoted those who wanted to take decisive action, at least until concrete proof was obtained. In short, they were too scared to address this problem, preferring to hope and pray that if they ignored it, it would not exist. Sometimes, Felix wondered why he was a council member himself, if his words were always drowned out by lackers of common sense. Once again, he wished Samuel was a dictator rather than a chancellor. Then the head of his least favorite clan, the Kahanshus, walked up to him. Surprisingly, Nathan Shahanshu had been one of Felix's allies on this urgent matter. Usually, the Ashorius and the Kahanshus went out of their way to oppose each other, unless they strongly felt the same way on one particular thing they both debated about. It was a running joke among the more intelligent council members that when members of both clans agreed on something, they were always right, and it was always about something bad for everyone. Kind of like Tsunade winning bets on anything except Naruto. So far was 7 for 7 in the past century. Seems there are too many fools on the council today, Nathan said as he slowly extended his hand to Felix, who reluctantly took it to shake. Like all Kihanshus, Nathan had perpetually open, though not bleeding, cuts on each of his fingertips and his palms. He also had the hereditary storm gray eyes of the clan, and his hair was a very dark brown, almost black. If there is even a chance that Raisin is still around, we should take more action than what is already being done. Well, the Elder Dimension won't do anything major about it, Felix seethed. But I will help you out a bit, Nathan replied. I will send my nephew Alex along to the Namikaze's Boys Dimension with you when you go back. He's a good fighter, and who knows, he may even get over his foolish phobia after a few brushes with death. Phobia? Due to a certain incident that damaged him in the past, he has developed a fear of the inferior sex. Felix's eyes narrowed as Nathan said this. At any rate, I will send him over to your compound to get acquainted tomorrow. See you around. As Nathan left, Felix shook his head. Ally in this or not, Felix well and truly hated the sexist bastards of a clan. He then wondered what could make this Alex so afraid of the group of people his own clan had put down for so long. He supposed he would find out tomorrow. Chapter 47, The Exams Begin. This is what Kimimaro said as he, his team, and Fu stood outside the gates of Konoha. Hopefully your life will be better here than it was in Taki. That sentiment would be more believable if it was not your job to say it. Fu replied hotly as they went to report to the Hokage. As Kimimaro went on ahead with Suigetsu and Karen, Fu felt a hand on her shoulder, and she was forcefully turned around to come face to face with Yugo. What's the big idea? Fu demanded as she saw the hard expression on Yugo's face. You need to stop being so cynical with Kimimaro, Yugo said. He truly wishes for you to adjust to what happened. He actually understands you better than you think. And just what makes you think so? Fu growled. Normally, she was a happy-go-lucky sort of person, but the straw that broke the camel's back had just been put on her. Because he has told me of his past. He spent almost his entire childhood locked in a cage by his clan, for reasons he never knew, let alone could help. He was only let out when they wanted him to fight for them. Huh, but why would they treat one of their own like that? Fu asked. Who knows? All he ever knew was what they did, not why. But the point is, he was treated similarly to the way Jinchuriki have been in the past. He knows at least to an extent what you went through. That's why he feels obligated to help you. Yugo walked after Kimimaro and the rest of the team after that. leading a slightly remorseful Fu behind him. Naruto, are you alright? Hinata asked as the panting blonde collapsed. I finally did it, Naruto said with satisfaction as he looked at the debris of the boulder he had flung the training dummy into with Shinra Tensei. Thanks to Kurama giving him so much chakra, he could almost endlessly train and master the path in a short time frame, despite the fact that he could not rely on shadow clones for it. He was also having a few clones work on the other paths, but he could not have that many on at a time due to the disorientating effects of having so many fields of vision when he used the Rinnegan that he was still getting used to. So he had more clones studying the dojutsu and training methods with the Rinnegan shut off. I can finally use Deva Path effectively in combat, Naruto said as he got up. You shouldn't dash, Hinata began, but Naruto held up a hand, took out a can of whipped cream, and made 100 shadow clones, each with clone cream. You know what to do, he told all of them as they ran off in different directions, as if looking for someone or something. Noticing the confused expression on Hinata's face, he said, What? Do you really want Isaac around right now? Hinata took the moment to giggle as she realized what Naruto was doing before the concern returned. You shouldn't push yourself so hard, you know, she said as Naruto used Deva Path to bring the training dummy back to himself. I don't want to see you work yourself into the ground. I know, but if that raisin we are up against really is the same as the one we read about, then I'm going to have to be as strong as I can possibly get before the time comes if I want to face him. I mean, he went up against the guy who defeated the Juubi and created the ninja world, and he would have had to be stronger than Nagato was to accomplish that, and I had gone up against Nagato and would have lost without Itachi to bail me and be out that time. If I am to defeat a guy who could go toe-to-toe with someone with an even greater mastery of the Rinnegan and full use of his body, I will have to be as strong with the Rinnegan myself as possible before I confront the guy. And on top of that, we still have to deal with the Akatsuki and Madara. That is a lot to deal with, and if they succeed in bringing the Juubi back again, even an incomplete form of it, we're going to have our work cut out for us. You're doing it again, Hinata said, confusing Naruto. Doing what? Trying to take on responsibility for everything by yourself. Naruto paused as the words sank in. Flashback. If you allow yourself to become arrogant and egotistical because you now have power, you will wind up the same as Madara, Itachi said to Naruto shortly after sealing Nagato. A few more words had followed before Itachi told Naruto, never forget your friends. In flashback, in this timeline, Itachi had told Hinata to make sure Naruto did not ever try to do too much alone, and she had had to remind him a few times. You don't have to stand on your own, Naruto, she said to him. Haven't we gotten this far this time by doing things together? There is no reason for us to stop walking down the same path, along with everyone else that has been on the road to a better future with us. We can't walk down that road if we don't help to pave it. Yeah, sorry, I just can't seem to stop doing that, Naruto said a little sheepishly. And don't forget, you did have me on your side from the beginning this time, Kurama said. Yeah, thanks Kurama, Naruto said before he smiled at Hinata. Still, I gotta at least make sure I pull my weight in this endeavor, but don't worry, I will leave plenty for the rest of you to do, and trust you to succeed wherever I can't. Thank you, Naruto. That's all I ask, Hinata said before they embraced. No sooner had they broken apart than Felix came out to the training grounds. Hey guys, that Alex character has arrived, and he wants to know why 100 giant squirrels that looked like they had rabies were chasing someone. Alex looked confused at the rather entertaining spectacle of a man wearing a battle kimono that was gray and a red headband ran in mortal terror running laps around the compound as though his life depended on it. And if the mouth-foaming squirrels that were the size of humans were anything to judge by, it probably did depend on it. Like his uncle Nathan, Alex had open cuts on the tips of his fingers and palms, though no blood leaked from them. His eyes were also gray, and his dark brown hair was cut down to his shoulders. He wore a short-sleeved red vest and had black cargo pants. He also had blue fingerless gloves on. Strapped to his hip was a cutlass. He was about 16 years old. Guess Naruto and Hinata wanted to have some time alone, Matthew said from behind Alex, giving the Chihanshu a start. Matthew ignored that and just ate popcorn that he somehow pulled from Cammy's nose whereas he watched the chase going on. What does that have to do with this? Spectacle? Alex asked in confusion. The guy Isaac that is being chased right now by those squirrels has developed the bad habit of always doing something that ruins the mood between the two over the past couple of years. So lately Naruto has taken to taking advantage of the guy's fear of squirrels. Don't ask. He makes shadow clones to transform into squirrels to chase Isaac around, so he is too preoccupied to disturb the two lovebirds. Recently he decided to make them all human size to add some terror. The whipped cream to imitate rabies is a nice new touch. You must be Alex, Naruto said as he stepped out of the compound to find Alex and Matthew both waiting right outside the doors, still watching Isaac running rather comically. I am Naruto. You can make that many clones? For such an interesting task, Isaac asked, impressed with how casually Naruto could use the jutsu. Yep, Shouldn't you let the man stop running now, Naruto? Matthew asked. As much as I am enjoying the show, if you and Hinata are done having your moment, then you could let him off the hook. Sure, fine, Naruto said as he dispelled his clones. Hinata stepped out and gave a glance at the man who had passed out from exhaustion after his fear-induced adrenaline wore off. She almost pitied him, but whenever she remembered the moments he had ruined, and those Naruto had to resort to such drastic measures she could enjoy, she lost that pity. Are you Alex Chihanshu? Hinata asked as she approached the young man. Stay away, Alex said as he backpedaled away from her, discomfort clear on his features. Hinata froze, looking slightly hurt. Yeah, Chihanshu Clen all right. Matthew shook his head, glaring at Alex. Same disdain for females of the human race you all have. I apologize, Alex said. My actions were not out of disdain, but let's just say I'm put on edge by women. What? You're not scared of an inferior being, are you? Vanessa said as she aloes came out of the building and rapidly approached Alex. But then Felix came out of nowhere to come between her and the young Chihanshu. As a matter of fact, he is scared of you and Hinata because of your gender, but not quite directly, Felix said. I heard his story from him, and he has asked me to keep it between us, but I can say that he does not have the same problem as the rest of his clan. What do you mean he is not directly scared of them? Naruto asked, giving Alex a hard look. He has been traumatized at a young age by a certain event which I will not elaborate on that is connected to this mindset of his. He is still capable of interacting with you too, but he needs to have some distance. Hinata nodded as Felix continued to explain that Alex would be staying to train with them until the time came for the group to return to Naruto's world. Vanessa still looked at Alex with a bit of contempt in her eyes. She hated his whole damn clan. Of course, if she openly made his life miserable, Felix would let her have it. But if she was subtle enough, her father couldn't complain. Why don't you come inside and rest for a bit? She asked with a bit of false sweetness. I'll ask my mother to make you a nice large meal for you, Dash. She was cut off as her subtle attempt to make Alex suffer a little was easily seen through by Felix, who gave her a bonk on the head to teach her a lesson. Nice try, Vanessa, but I know that your mother's cooking is something only you would ever wish on your worst enemy. Naruto sniggered at the girl, though he could understand why Vanessa tried. Even he would not try to force-feed Madara those barely edible horrors that came from Erika's kitchen if he had the chance to. Honestly, the woman should just give that hobby up. 3 days later in Suna, a large crowd of shinobi wearing different headbands were in the receiving room of one of Suna's academies. Akari and her team were among them, and she quickly spotted Jinmaru, Haku, and Kin. Watch out for those three, she told Daisuke and Kiyoshi seriously. Duckbutt Sensei told me they were going to be serious competitors who should have made Chunin years ago, but their sensei just found it inconvenient to take them to the exams until now. I wonder which of them is the greatest threat, Kiyoshi mused as he took in the other three Konoha genin. Well, on looks alone, I am inclined to think the big guy with the metal knuckles that he's wearing, and it looks like they're chakra conducting, but that is probably only true at close range, Daisuke whispered. My guess is that he engages foes up close and personal, while they have another ace in the hole do some damage from hidden positions a good distance away. I'm not so sure about the two females in the group, though. I think Duckbutt Sensei said one of them was a guy, Akari said, causing Daisuke to snigger. If that's the case, I pity the poor fools who end up mistakenly asking whoever it is out. For some reason, a man wearing a Suna headband and war paint that was approaching the crowd sneezed violently at the exact same moment in Konoha, where an Inuzuka did so as well. Hey Akari, how you been? Konohamaru asked as he pushed his way through the crowd, Udon and Moegi close behind. Konohamaru, what are you doing here? Akari asked, surprised. What do you think? We're taking the exams, Konohamaru said. In this timeline, he was actually stronger than he had been at this point last time, owing partly to the fact that he got more practical tutoring from Naruto this time earlier on and also trained a bit with Akari. Udon and Moegi were also better than they were previously because they were trying to keep up with the young Sarutobi. Sakura-sensei has decided we were good enough to at least take a shot, and she thinks it will be good experience for us, even if we don't make the rank. Yep, this time Sakura is Konohamaru's Jonin instructor instead of Ebisu. In this timeline, Itachi had set up some optional advanced classes at the academy to improve the top genin that came out of the graduation process, and decided to take full advantage of Ebisu's talent as an instructor and put him in charge of those courses. Daisuke, Kiyoshi, and Konohamaru had all taken those extra credit classes. Oh, so Duckbutt Sensei's girlfriend is here too? Akari asked. Konohamaru sniggered. Yeah, and you better watch out. Sensei is scary when she's mad, and when your sensei left without waiting for her to get back from our mission outside the village. Well, I'm just glad I am not on the receiving end of her wrath like the time I first met her and thought she was a guy because of that. Flat chest of hers. Konohamaru shivered as he recalled that horrible incident. He still had nightmares. Akari chortled. She had been around for that, and still had the pictures of Kinomaru being taught a lesson. She took one last glance around to see if there were any other people of interest competing, but only spotted Matsuri and her team among the crowd. All right, listen up, all of you. The war paint-wearing man shouted to all of them, and they quickly stood rigid. A few other sand shinobi stood behind the man, but it was clear that they were just assistants in proctoring this exam. Starting now, you are all officially in the deep shit known as trying to improve your shinobi rank, and all of your actions from here on out will be evaluated. I am the proctor for the first part of the exam. You can all call me Kankuro. The exam as a whole will consist of 3 parts. Today we will do the first part, which involves intelligence gathering. Those of you who get the code phrase we have set up and bring it back to tell us by sundown will pass the first exam and move on to the survival portion of the test, where you become Temari's problem. The ground rules are as follows. In order to get the code phrase, you are to find the people we have scattered throughout the village who know it. The villagers who have volunteered to participate will be able to give you a few leads here and there, but finding out who knows the phrase we're looking for and getting them to talk is on you. The ones in the village who are participating in this exam will be wearing one of these. He held out a bright purple wristband with 3 red streaks on it. You are allowed to use torture and interrogation tactics on anyone, shinobi or civilian. Wearing one of these you suspect knows the code, but you are not to cause any permanent physical and or mental damage, or you will be disqualified. You are not to do anything to anyone without one of these on. If you attack or try to force any other person taking the exams to tell you what they know, that is also grounds for disqualification. They are free to simply ask nicely and or tell anyone else what you know should you wish to exchange information. Also, if you come back and give us even one wrong code, you are disqualified immediately, so you better be sure the source is an honest one. Most of the Jinin gulped, but Akari, Daisuke, and Kiyoshi were already making plans to get what they needed. The Sharingan would have come in handy if Daisuke had awakened it, but he and his team had other ways. Are there any questions? Kankuro asked. Yes. He asked one of the Jinin who had raised her hand. Are we allowed to use anything we have brought on us? The girl asked. As long as you obey the rules I have earlier mentioned, anything goes. You are also allowed to resupply in the midst of the exam if you have a Rio, since in infiltration missions, you would often have the chance to visit shops if for no other reason than to acquire information, but remember that this is not always the case. Yes. Does everyone who has one of those bands on know the code? Or do they just have information that could lead us to one that does? Asked another Jinin. Everyone wearing a band has intel that could point you in the right direction, but also possibly the wrong one. Only some know the code, and like I said, it's up to you to determine what intel is good intel and what intel is bad intel. Any more questions? No? Then the first exam begins. Akari and her team immediately left the building to find anyone wearing one of the bands, already formulating plans. What they did not know was that they were being watched by a group of IWA Jinin. I am sure of it. That girl is in Namikaze. She is the spitting image of the Yondame's wife, the leader of the team said. Then he started laughing. Perhaps we can avenge the crimes against us the Yellow Flash committed in the third war, come the second exams. Finally decided to unload the team, huh? Yeah, I got no problems with them all getting their vests now, the mummified man said. Do you think your team stand a chance against mine? Well, while I am sure Daisuke and Kiyoshi could put up a decent fight against at least Kin, I know that Jinyamaru and Haku should be testing for Jonin right now, rather than Chunin. So Akari would kick their asses. Zabuza, who had unwrapped enough of his face to take a swig of beer, sprayed the beverage in shock. Are you really saying a 9-year-old girl could beat either one of my own stronger students? He demanded. Yep, and age has nothing to do with strength in the shinobi world these days, unless you're just a swaddling infant. But I will bet you 20,000 Rio that if Akari faces either Jinyamaru, Haku, or both during the third exam, she will come out on top. You're on, Zabuza said, and they shook on it. They bantered for another minute or two when Sasuke heard the blood-chilling words, "Oh, Sasuke-kun." Sajuek paled, and then said, "Please, Zabuza, tell me that the girl behind me who just said that does not have pink hair." She does not, Zabuza replied. Really? Sasuke asked, not daring to be relieved yet. No, not really. You just asked me to tell you she did not have pink hair. So I did, though it was a lie. Don't say I never do anything for you. I hate you, Sasuke said to Zabuza as he turned around to face Sakura. Why, Sasuke? I would think you weren't happy to see me, Sakura said, her tone and smile dripping with sweetness, the last way anyone who valued their internal organs and outer layers of skin would want her to address them. Why don't we catch up a bit? We didn't get a chance to when I got back from my mission, since you left before then. Yep, Sasuke was screwed. Royally, painfully, fatally screwed. I'll make top 3 Narahina moments Isaac ruined. 3. Are you sure it was a good idea to let Isaac cook for us during our alone time tonight, Naruto? Hinata asked a little nervously. Well, with Felix, Vanessa, Matthew, and Kyle gone on that little training trip, the alternative is to have Erica do it, and I'd rather risk Isaac's antics than that, Naruto said, and he and Hinata both shuddered as they remembered the one time they had sampled Erica's cooking. All that could be said of the results of that horror was that Naruto would rather swallow Saiken's acid than go there again. Besides, this way, we know where he is and can keep an eye on him, rather than him doing something totally unexpected to us. And here is your dinner, ladies, gentlemen, Naruto, Isaac said as he came into the room with a lidded dinner tray and ignoring the glare he had earned from the blonde after that last word. Odd. I didn't smell anything when you cooked, Naruto said a little suspiciously, ignoring another flash of pain in his eyes. So your meal is a little raw. That's better than what Erica makes, right? Isaac said. Good point, Naruto said, and Hinata giggled. Naruto lifted the lid, and he and Hinata promptly fled the room, screaming. Apparently Isaac had downplayed the raw part to the extent where the meat was actually still breathing. And when Naruto said he wanted Isaac to make them some steaks, Isaac had somehow thought Naruto had said snakes. Needless to say, neither of the two ever let either Erica or Isaac prepare a meal for them again. Either one would have them run screaming from their entree. Chapter 48, Shika's Troublesome Day. Alright, the first thing we gotta do is find as many of the people wearing those wristbands we can, Daisuke said, and Akari nodded as she bit her thumb. She cast a few hand signs and shouted, summoning jutsu. With a poof of smoke, about 10 small monkeys were revealed. During her single apprenticeship with Sasuke, Akari had seen him use the summoning jutsu and tried it herself before the raven-haired boy could stop her. End result, Akari ended up in the forest of apes due to the fact that she had not signed a contract, and apparently monkeys were the species Akari had the highest affinity for. Sasuke had a brush with death when Kushina had found out her daughter was missing, and beat the poor boy worse than she beat Jiraiya when she had found out about him using Minatos in her honeymoon. Then she ordered Sasuke to go find Akari, which was downright unreasonable due to the fact that the poor raven-haired teen could barely move after the pounding. Luckily, Akari had gotten on well with Enma, the aging monkey king, and he had given her the monkey summoning contract, and had one of his fastest messenger monkeys get to Konoha, which was fairly close to the forest the apes inhabited, and it reverse summoned her. She did not go home right away, because one condition of her signing the contract was that she had to bring it to Konohamaru, since Enma wanted Sarutobi's grandson to have it, but never had the opportunity to go to Konoha just to give the boy the contract. After that little scare was over, Akari and Konohamaru were both recognized as monkey summoners, though last Akari checked, messenger chimps were all Konohamaru could summon, while Akari could bring large gorillas into a fray. She gave each of the small monkeys some seeds and said, alright guys, here's what I know. Don't eat those. She chided one before continuing, I want you all to find people wearing one of these and put a seed on them. I got that Yamato fellow Sasuke got acquainted with to teach me how to have those seeds send a signal back to me. The monkeys took the seeds and scattered. Shikamaru and Temari were walking down the streets of Suna, discussing the second part of the exam that Shikamaru had been in a foreign village to help set up the exams. How many teams do you think will get to the part I'm in charge of? Temari asked, and Shikamaru shrugged. I would probably have a better idea of that if I had stayed awake during the explanation of how the exams would work. Honestly, this diplomatic mission is troublesome. You're impossible to motivate, aren't you? Temari said. Oh well, at least you're easier to deal with than my two siblings. After all, one is a sexually confused guy who spends a lot of time applying makeup that he calls war paint, and the other is a former insomniac and used to get jolly out of shedding blood, and now just spends all of his time training these days. Good thing he got his seal fixed, else he would likely have driven himself nuts by now, instead of just me. Well, at least you have experience with difficult family members. I honestly feel sorry for the poor tykes when you have children, Shikamaru said. And then he was blasted through the wall when Temari struck him with her fan. Odd. She could have a bit of a temper, but she is usually not that quick to hit me. Unless. Oh, troublesome. It must be that time of the month. Shikamaru was thinking as Temari approached him, holding her fan like a baseball bat in both hands. Oh, and just what is wrong with my potential maternal ability? Temari demanded as she stopped right in front of Shikamaru, who paled as he tried to scoot back. In order to keep you from killing me, I'm going to just refrain from answering that, Shikamaru tried. Swing and a miss. Come back here so I can kill you, Temari shouted as she chased the shadow user, who was running so fast that he almost left his greatest tool behind, which would have been quite a feat for someone who barely finds the energy to get up in the morning. Dying is a little troublesome for me today, Shikamaru muttered as he managed to lose her, though he knew she'd still be after him. Girls were so troublesome, particularly when they were PMSing. Frantically, he looked around for a hiding spot before he finally hid in an alley. Where are you, you lazy ass? Temari shouted alarmingly close by. Shika paled as he realized that it would not be long before she came upon his position. Getting desperate, he grabbed one civilian with the shadows and yanked him into the alley. And after a quick effort to get the guy tied up, Shikamaru left wearing the guy's hooded sweatshirt, shadowing his face. Sorry, he said to the guy after tossing him some Rio to compensate for his assault. But I kind of panicked there, and I'm not good enough at transformation jutsu to fool my PMSing girlfriend who has tried to turn me inside out. With that, Shikamaru left the alley completely and managed to pass Temari without drawing her attention. Little did he know that his day was about to get much more troublesome, because there was a purple wristband attached to the sleeve of the sweatshirt. Blood coated the ground. There were several bodies of the thugs, and many more who were left still alive fled the one who killed the others. He let them go, not interested in petty revenge. Instead, he moved slowly towards the corpse of his one ally in this battle, tears staining his face. Alex woke with a start and shot into a sitting position, sweat covering his face. That same dream, he muttered, his forehead in his hand. Will I never escape the nightmare that is my past? He got up and left his guest room, going down for breakfast, when he saw smoke coming from the kitchen. An ashen-faced Erica came out, coughing, and she said to Alex, breakfast should be ready soon. You might want to wait a bit. Matthew came out of another room, and he saw Alex make the decision to skip breakfast and move immediately towards the training grounds. Not going to wait for the most important meal of the day? Matthew asked, and Alex looked at him. From the look of things, breakfast was ready about an hour ago. Alex deadpanned, and Matthew burst out laughing. I know what you mean. The sad thing is, she's actually getting better at cooking. Here. He tossed Alex an apple. Thanks. When you grow up with her to cook for you, you learn to have other sources of food handy. A few minutes later, Alex and Vanessa stood facing each other in the training field with their blades drawn. It turned out that while Alex had trouble dealing with females when it came to casual contact, he actually had no problems fighting them in spars, or life or death situations, due to adrenaline helping him ignore his phobia. Naruto once unknowingly come close to angering the young Chahanshu when he teasingly asked if his fear of women had come from getting dumped at one point. Alex had shortly replied it was nothing like that before he left, leaving Naruto to realize he had mistakenly touched a nerve. Vanessa glared at Alex before she charged him, and he deftly sidestepped, and she quickly followed up with heavy but skillful strokes. His kenjutsu style was based on the concept of completely avoiding a foe's attacks or deflecting them with as little effort as possible rather than blocking dead-on blows and wait for an opening to get an attack of your own in. He held his body so that the side that had the hand, he kept his cutlass and was facing his foe, just like a fencer, so as to present a more narrow target. And what infuriated Vanessa was that he was exceedingly good at it. She was considered an expert with swords herself, but she could not even touch Alex every time they sparred. Needless to say, this made her as frustrated as hell when he yet again disarmed her and held his blade to her neck. Wow, he's very good, Naruto said as he saw Vanessa storm off the field. He himself had trouble sparring with Vanessa when they only used kenjutsu. Of course, it could just be that Vanessa's style is a bad matchup with his, but that alone would not be nearly enough to beat her. And his Kekkei Genkai is not something that you should ignore either, Hinata said. She herself had sparred once with Alex, and he was able to keep her at a good distance throughout using his clan techniques, which allowed him to endlessly produce his own blood, which left his body via the cuts on his hands, with his chakra, and use it in a manner similar to Gaara's sand. The one time Hinata had gotten close enough to attack Alex, he had also shown the ability to pump a good deal of blood into his arm and increase his brute strength to an extent where he easily forced Hinata backwards. Had she had her bow, it would have been more even of a matchup. He also showed off his summons once, a creature called Hydra. It was a creature similar to a dragon, except it had no elemental breath, and its body consisted of a single inflexible tail, 2 legs, a torso, and 3 heads with very long snake-like necks. Alex had said that if one head was removed, 2 more would grow in its place, unless the wound was immediately closed somehow. Another thing that could make fighting one of them a pain was the fact that their blood was highly acidic and toxic, to a point where it could dissolve most metals easily. Naruto, mentally, he sized up their new comrade. It was already evident that he was at least high Jonin level, if not low Kage. So far, he had only seen Felix beat him, and he was eager to try his hand against Alex himself at some point. That was not too difficult, Kin said as she put away a vial she had. Over the past couple of years, she had learned more about certain toxins that she could use for various purposes. She had already coated most of her senbon in venoms that caused the victims to hallucinate, making her jinjutsus more effective. She also had some decent truth serum, which helped get honest answers out of people, extremely effective when she added the before-mentioned toxins and jinjutsu combo. As a result, once they had found a few people with the purple bands, one of them Asuna Genin, not taking the exams, they had no problems getting answers from them, and they did not do any serious harm to anyone who volunteered for this. In fact, they were probably one of the more lenient teams. Team Zabuza had few doubts that some other genin might get a little carried away and at least come close to getting disqualified to get the code word. Hopefully we have the right code phrase, Haku said. Please, you're talking to an expert at this sort of thing, Kin boasted. Even before I had added poison to my repertoire, I learned a thing or two from my time as an Odonin. If I was being lied to, I would know. If the phrase we got gets us disqualified, I will repeat those exact same words to you, Jinyamaru said. Shikamaru sighed with relief. It seemed that he would be escaping Temari's wrath for today. He had actually just had a reminder of just how troublesome a temperamental girlfriend could be when he saw Sakura standing next to a set of legs sticking out of the ground and kicking. It did not take a genius of his level to figure out that the legs belonged to Sasuke, and he had done something to make Sakura mad enough to drive him with that chakra enhanced strength of hers. Shikamaru shivered as he pictured Temari doing the same thing to him. His thoughts were interrupted when he stepped on some ninja wire set up as a tripwire. With no warning, a bucket of banana sauce was dumped on him. Now what? He asked as he whipped around to see Konohamaru and his core standing behind him, the former having a few little monkeys on his shoulders. Now that we have your attention, you could just tell us what you know about the code phrase that will get us into the second exam, Konohamaru said. What makes you think I know anything about the first exam? Shikamaru asked, though he paled as his genius mind was already connecting some dots. He knew that the first exam was to get some kind of intel from some villagers who were assisting with the exam for a good amount of Rio, but he had fallen asleep before he had heard anything else about the explanation. But he had noticed that there were several people wearing the same wristband he had in his rather desperate disguise, and that one of them seemed to be pestered by a team from Kyumo, though Shikamaru did not think anything of those at the moment. He had simply thought that the wristbands were some sort of fashion statement, but now he had the nagging suspicion that they were the markers on who was fair game for the genin teams. The suspicions were confirmed when Kamamaru told him, "Don't play dumb. You wouldn't be wearing that stupid thing if you weren't part of the exam." "Look, kid, this is all a big mix-up. I'm not part of the dash." "Sick him," Konohamaru shouted as a bunch more monkeys jumped out of hiding spots in the ambush area, and Shikamaru paled, already realizing why banana sauce was what was in the bucket. And with that, about 20 monkeys began to maul him. The oasis lies in the center of the desert, one of the villagers told a genin team from Kusa. The grass genin had put a jinjutsu on him that made his ears ring endlessly until they chose to break it, basically annoying an answer out of him. They thanked the guy as they left. They did not realize that one of Akari's monkeys had tagged them with one of the seeds, this one working like a bug. About half an hour later, Akari hooped. The bug seed had sent all sounds around the Kusa team directly into Akari's ear for the past half hour, and she had found out what the code was and that it was the right one when the Kusa team was announced to have passed. "I did not expect them to have the right code," Daisuke said, showing mild surprise. After all, they did not seem to go to much trouble to confirm it. "True, but it looks like both of our teams are lucky despite that," Kiyoshi said, before they were interrupted by a certain lazy genius skidding to a halt in their midst, covered in several cuts and bite marks. He was also rather wet, and one of his shoulders had been covered in some kind of foul-smelling goop. His hood had been torn off by this point. "Shika, is that you?" Akari asked, a little confused about why the Nara was in such a state. Shikamaru immediately grabbed her shoulders and shook her, a frenzied look of desperation in his eyes. "Please tell me you have the code phrase, Akari. I've been hunted all day by that partner in crime of yours, and I need to get him off of my back." "I didn't know you were part of the first exam," Daisuke said as he looked at the band. "I'm not. I was trying to escape Temari, and I put on the wrong disguise. Please help me. I have been caught in more traps than I care to count." "Ramen for a week after the exams," Akari said with an evil gleam in her eyes. "Deal." After that, Akari gave him the code, and they headed towards the building they were supposed to bring it to. Not a moment too soon, too, because once they were gone, Konohamaru and his two teammates skidded around the corner, all of them holding water balloons filled with Tabasco sauce. "You ready to talk yet?" Konohamaru said with an evil grin. "Yes," Shikamaru said. "The oasis lies in the center of the desert." "I don't know. I think you may be giving us a wrong one," Moegi said as the team poised their arms to throw, aiming right at Shika's face. "It's the truth, I swear. It would be too troublesome to lie." "Fine then, but if we're disqualified, we're coming back for you," Konohamaru warned, and they dropped the dangerous tools and left. "Wait, was that guy familiar to you?" he asked the core, and they shrugged. Probably nothing." Shikamaru sighed with relief. Usually he could have gotten out a lot of things easier than that, but that kid was nearly as unpredictable as Naruto. It still beat the Nara how he could set so many traps so fast, and where he got all those materials on short notice. Did he know how to make a couple shadow clones already? Or did he just have some help from his monkey summons? Yeah, at least he could finally relax. "There you are," a falsely sweet voice said as its owner stuck her blonde-haired head over the line of sight the laid-back Nara had. Shikamaru began sweating profusely as he remembered that he lost the hood of his sweatshirt to the little buggers that were Konohamaru and his team. His doom chuckled sadistically as she prepared to beat him to within an inch of his life. I've been looking for you all day, you know. Soon as villagers immediately fled from the rather scary shouts of pain that late afternoon once they were heard. Chapter 49, The Labyrinth. 42 teams exactly. Kankuro mused as looked over the teams in the building once the sun set. Guess we gave too many people the code phrase, but we wanted to be sure that there would be enough who knew it for teams to pass based on ability rather than just bad luck on not encountering someone. Oh well, you are all Temari's problem now, so it will be her job to weed out the weaklings in these exams. Alright, listen up, Temari shouted, drawing attention from the anime tear weeping plaster casted body she was dragging along with her. We will be doing a survival portion of the exam tomorrow morning. I expect you to be at Training Ground 13 at 6 a.m. sharp tomorrow. Yeah, can't wait to bust some heads tomorrow, Akari said loudly enough to earn her some attention from the other genin in the room, and causing Daisuke to clap a hand over her mouth. You want to make an enemy of every other genin in the room? The young Uchiha deadpanned before they headed back to the hotel room, where Sasuke was waiting for them. Man, they have us wait until around 9 to go home, and then they expect us to get up before 6 to go to the training grounds? Kin was muttering to herself when they got back to their own hotel. How are we supposed to get enough sleep after all that? Oh, shut up, Zabuza said, putting down the magazine he had been reading. It is not that rare for shinobi to have to do a lot of their work on only a little sleep. Deal with it. So Zabuza-sensei, what have you been up to today? Jinyamaru asked as Haku sat down to examine his sunbon in preparation for the next day. Oh, I actually ran into the teachers of 2 of the other teams from Konoha, Zabuza smirked, and got some blackmail material on one of them. He said as he took out several pictures he had taken, all of them of Sakura giving Sasuke a lot of pain, one of the same scenes Shikamaru witnessed with Sasuke being buried headfirst into the ground, and another one of Sakura holding Sasuke by one leg and using him as a weapon to settle some score with a nearby building. I didn't realize blackmail was your style, Zabuza-sensei, Haku chuckled. No, it isn't, but I bet Naruto will pay some good Ryo for the pictures so he could use them. Naruto suddenly felt giddy as he was infusing some chakra into the scales Alex's Hydra had shed. I suddenly feel that if I save my Ryo, 5 of my birthdays are going to come at once, he said as he continued his task. Apparently, the animal path actually required the Rinnegan user to use Yin-Yang style chakra on something organic to basically cultivate a creature for the Rinnegan user to use. As the newly made organism grew, chakra receiver rods would be implanted to speed the process up, as well as control the bodies made. It was also possible to give the grown organism actual life rather than have it be brain dead and follow orders, but it was very risky to actually create souls with that jutsu. In fact, it was that final action that had killed the Rikudu Sennin rather than old age, though he was certainly told by that as well. When he had given 9 personalities to the Bijou he had made after splitting the Juubi's chakra into 9 parts and creating the moon to seal the Juubi's body. Reviving the dead was easier because all you were doing was healing damage to a body, restarting it, and calling an already existing soul to it. Still daunting, but far more realistic than creating a soul from will and chakra alone. At any rate, once the organism was done growing, only the Rinnegan user that had created it could summon it. And one other cool thing was that these summons did not go anywhere when they were dismissed. They simply popped out of existence until called upon again, and it did not matter what dimension you were in, you could still call upon them. Naruto focused for a moment before a dark orange metal rod materialized in his hand. The creation of all things ability actually came somewhat easy for him, since it involved creating things with your will, and very few had a willpower that could match Naruto's. A few of his limitations were the fact that he had to be careful about creating thinking beings, because again, that would not only drain his reserve close to dry, but his life force would also be tapped as well, and he had to have at least a basic understanding of how something worked. Because he had dealt with Nagato's chakra receiver rods before, and read a little on the same general things in this dimension. He even figured out how to make them come out any color he wanted, instead of black. Felix had shaken his head and muttered, "Figures," when he first saw Naruto make an orange rod. When you were actually creating a creature, you still had to understand a bit about how its body works, though that is much easier if you simply channel the chakra into genetic material, since DNA held the blueprint of the body, hence the fact Naruto was currently cultivating Hydra scales into an organism. He had also added some of Alex's blood to the creature he was growing, in order to add his Kekiai Genkai to it. One of the things that could be done with Animal Path. If this worked the way Naruto wanted it to, he would have a many-headed giant serpent with acidic blood that it could control in the same way as a Chihansha could, and would regenerate 2 heads every time one was removed. He was in fact already halfway done with another of his summons, a dragon he was cultivating for Vargan scales, and some blood given by Felix, the end result hopefully being a dragon that could use any elemental breath, not just a single one it was born with. Naruto stuck a rod in the piece of flesh that looked similar to an embryo, before turning to the half-grown dragon. 2 more days before you're done, he said to the form. I wonder what else I could make to make old Nagato eat his heart out. Hey Duckbutt-sensei, we're back. Akari shouted as her team entered the hotel room in a different building than Zabuza's team was. When they heard a simple HNN in response, Daisuke said, we'd better stock some provisions. There's no telling what amount of time the survival portion of the test is going to be set in. Way ahead of you, Akari said as she pulled out a scroll and unsealed a cooler large enough for 2 people to fit in. Since I can't eat ramen all the time, I made sure that I had a few of my clones go shopping for us before the stores closed down for the night. And I brought this baby from Konoha and put a bunch of water in the freezer, so we could have plenty of ice to keep some provisions cool for a while, so we don't have to eat nasty ration bars either. I hear you. Those things belong in the T&I department. If they fed those to prisoners, we'd have all the intel we could ever need, Daisuke shuddered. I swear, the day I find a civilian who designed those for Shinobi, I'll get 100 bars and force feed them to him. And if it's a woman? Kiyoshi asked. I'm very equality-minded, so yes, her as well. Hey, where the hell is all of my ice? Akari asked in irritation as she found the freezer empty. I kind of used it. Sasuke groaned from the room. I am currently covering all the parts of my body that hurt right now. I made enough to cover your entire body. Akari shouted as she went into the room. Sure enough, there was Sasuke, buried under a lot of ice. Exactly, Sasuke muttered as he got into a sitting position, looking like a walking bruise. I dash. Hold that thought, Akari said as she left the room. Daisuke and Kiyoshi instantly took out Ryo bills, having heard that Sasuke had gotten himself beat up. Akari also took some of hers out too. He got carried away training, Daisuke bet. He got into a fight with another jonin, or some equivalent number of lower ranks, Kiyoshi wagered. You're both wrong. He likely pissed off Sakura somehow, Akari gambled. They all shook on the bets, and they went into Sasuke's room. So what were you saying, sensei? Akari asked. Sasuke sighed as he said, Sakura was not very happy that I left for the exams without her, and she made that quite clear. Sasuke then sweat dropped as he saw Daisuke and Kiyoshi hand Akari their money. Guess I had better put more water in the freezer, Akari said with a satisfied giggle. In the meantime, you two seal away anything that will keep on its own in these. She handed them a bunch of scrolls. Got it, Daisuke replied. He held them in his arms and asked, got enough for a month-long trip or something? Then one of the scrolls fell out of his arms and caused Akari to trip. Instantly, Daisuke dropped the ones he was holding and managed to catch her by wrapping an arm around her before she could crash to the ground. You all right? He asked. Yeah, I'm fine, she said as she fully settled back on her feet. Their eyes met for a second before they blushed a bit and quickly returned to their tasks. Good job, Gaara was telling Matsuri as she started sealing provisions for her team for the next part of the exam. On what, Gaara-sensei? Matsuri asked. Getting past the first part of the exam, Gaara replied. I hope you make Chunin, so I no longer have to fill the shoes of your sensei. Matsuri looked hurt for a moment before she asked, Are you trying to get rid of me? Not at all. In fact, the reason I have not gotten closer to you is because it is considered unprofessional for a sensei and student to have feelings for one another, even if they are close to the same age. I want to be able to show my feelings for you without raising a few eyebrows. I see. But since when did you care about what the main populace thought? Since I had a bijou sealed within me and had to fight so hard to gain the respect I now have. I do not wish to give the villagers reason to mistrust me again. It would also harm your reputation if we were to start going out while we were supposed to have a student-teacher relationship and nothing more. Yeah, you're probably right. So I had better make the rank then, haven't I? Do not worry, I know you have it in you. Oh yeah, I cannot wait to be a Chunin, Konohamaru exclaimed happily, irritating his pink-haired sensei. I'm going to take one giant step towards my goal of being Hokage, and I will impress Akari. Why is that important to you? Udan asked, and Konohamaru went a little pink. Well, she's one of my rivals and my pranking partner, so I honestly want her to admire me, he replied a little bashfully. I think someone's got a crush, Moegi said, causing Sakura to snigger and Konohamaru to face fault. No, I don't have a crush on her. What, are you stupid? She's the younger sister of the guy who taught me most of what I know. That's just gross, Konohamaru frantically said in denial. It was pretty obvious he was just trying to save face, and that he really did have feelings for her. But that was suddenly not the immediate issue, as the hapless Aratobi felt Sakura's killing intent. What was that, brat? She asked, cracking her knuckles as she approached the scared, shitless boy. Are you saying that I did not teach you all that much? Say guy who taught me the most. Nothing about girls. Konohamaru managed to say. Swing and a miss. The boy began screaming as Sakura pummeled him, and Udon and Moegi were suddenly nowhere to be found. Smart kids. Is everyone here? Temari asked the teams next morning outside of Training Grounds 13 at 555. Good, since we have all 42 teams. Let me go over the rules for this exam. First, you see behind me Training Grounds 13, also called the Labyrinth. The teams looked at the solid wall that enclosed the training grounds. Shikamaru then said, "Yep, what is in there is a rather dash. Say troublesome, and I'll make sure you suffer. So bad you will think what I did to you yesterday was a relaxing massage," Temari threatened, causing all of the genin to sweat drop, and Konohamaru to wince in sympathy for the Nara. Alright, Fina. As you all likely guessed, is in there is a rather bothersome maze about twice the size of another particular training grounds, the Forest of Death, which is rather famous in Konoha. Temari twitched at the bothersome statement, but decided to let it slide. There are 50 entrances to the labyrinth, and each team will be going into a different one. Your mission to get to the building in the center of the maze, built next to an oasis. Here's the catch, though. You need to have these. She pulled out 3 scrolls, one with the kanji for rain, another having the kanji for sun, and the final one being of sand. Originally, we were going to do just 2 different scrolls, the same as is usually done, but when this many teams pass, we add a 3rd scroll. So how we get the scrolls then? One of the genin asked. Easy. There are 42 teams here, so that, divided by 3, is 14. So that means we will be randomly giving 14 teams a sand scroll, 14 a sun scroll, and the remaining 14 a rain scroll. That means that you will have to take scrolls from each other in there before you make it to the center. So at most, 14 teams will pass. She proceeded to explain the rest of the rules to the teams, which were similar to the ones in the same exam in Konoha. She also warned them that the top of the maze was shielded by a barrier jutsu, so that any attempt to travel the maze from atop the 20-foot walls would be ill-advised. Also, we will be giving you 7 sets of these, Temari continued as she showed them 6 stacks of paper. Each piece of paper is 1/6 of the map, so that means there will be 7 maps in all for you. These are not needed to pass the exam like the scrolls are, but they're also important if you want to navigate the maze effectively. Any questions? She finished. When none were forthcoming, the materials were handed out, the forms were signed, and each team was moved to a different entrance. Odd, Shikamaru muttered as he looked at the assorted teams. There seemed to be about 11 IWA teams in this part of the exams, even more than soon as 10. Did they collaborate on something to get through the first exam? This could be troublesome. Looks like we got a southern portion of the map while we were going in through a northern entrance. Akari mused as she and her teammates looked intently at the map. For what they could tell, there were several narrow corridors that only one person at a time could go through, and a few others that were much wider. So we will have to have other ways to navigate, at least for now. Yo, Shikamaru said as he appeared in Shunshin. Hey, what are you doing here, you lazy bum? Akari asked. Just thought I would let you guys know. There seem to be quite a few IWA Nin in these exams, and I don't think I need to tell you guys why that would worry me, the Nara said, and Akari, Daisuke, and Kiyoshi nodded. We'll be careful, Daisuke promised as a large bell went off and the gate to the labyrinth opened, allowing the 3 genin to dash into the setting for the second exam. I'll make top 3 Narahina moments Isaac ruined too. And here we are, Naruto said one night as he and Hinata were enjoying a starlit stroll on the wall of the Yoshiryu's clan compound. One of the most clear nights you will ever find. Hopefully Isaac is asleep by now, Hinata said, and Naruto shuddered. I know, he just seems to love to mess with us. And he seems to have some kind of 9th sense on when we are alone together. We're 7 and 8. You don't want to know? Naruto deadpanned and Hinata giggled. That was before a glop of bird poop landed on her shoulder. Just great, Naruto moaned. The one time we were safe from Isaac, the bird bothered us, he muttered as he took a rag from his pocket and wiped the excretion off of her as she shuddered in disgust. And then more bird poop rained down on them. Eek! Hinata shrieked as Naruto hastily took off his jacket and used sort of cover to shield him and Hinata. What the hell? Naruto demanded as he looked up to see a lot of birds blotting out the sky, all of them aiming to poop on them. Kami, I love animation seals, Isaac said, and the two turned to see him sitting on the edge of the wall, taking photos of their predicament. Naruto seethed as he realized what Isaac was talking about. An animation seal was something you used on anything that resembled a living creature, and it turned that item into actual flesh and blood, though they were just like robots that just did whatever you programmed into the seal instead of an actual living creature with a soul. It was obvious what Isaac had done. You know, next date, you two should go out for dinner. Might I recommend the duck LO splat? Or maybe some chicken bombs? He laughed at his own wit. Oh, that's a great idea, Naruto snarled. And for the entertainment, we can have a Raisingan shoved up the ass of a stupid Triclops. Where are you going to get? Wea why not on my Inuiti? Isaac trailed off as he saw Naruto form a Raisingan before the barely sane man ran for it. Chapter 50 IWA, Jin and Conspiracy. Alright, we go to the center right away. Haku shouted as his team dashed through the gateway of the entrance they had been picked for. His teammates both nodded in agreement. Even if they did not yet have all 3 scrolls, there was no doubt that other teams were already on their own way to the oasis in the labyrinth. Let me test something, Jinyamaru said as he pulled out a scroll and unsealed a large spike ball and chain made of chakra, conducting metal. The spike ball was twice the size of his head, and the chain was about 20 feet long. He channeled his wind chakra into the tool, coating the spike ball in the largest amount of chakra, and he spun the ball over his head at a speed that made it into a blur before launching at a wall. It smashed into said wall and caused the environment around them to shake a little violently. When the dust cleared, Jinyamaru gave a whoop of joy. His weapon had blasted right through the wall, despite the fact that there was about 2 feet of solid rock first of all, before it was centered with about 1.5 feet of steel, before another 2 feet of rock. Remind me never to get hit with that thing, Haku said, as he assessed the damage and the strength of the wall. He had seen what that weapon could do once, and only once before, and that was on the 1B rank mission they had been able to get Zabuza to secure for them, despite their rank as Genin. They had ended up fighting a few shinobi-level foes, one of them being arguably Chunin level, and the team had easily beaten the enemies. Jinyamaru had single-handedly defeated the Chunin-level leader and 5 of his subordinates with that oversized weapon of destructive overkill, as Kin called it, and there was not much left of the 6 enemies after 1 hit for each of them. And Jinyamaru was very good at hitting things with it and could swing it fast enough to give even high-level Chunin trouble dodging it. The weapon took full advantage of Jinyamuru's enhanced strength and his skills at close to mid-range combat. Anything other than long-range combat against him was an exceedingly bad idea. With this, we can blast our way through to the center of the maze, Jinyamaru said jubilantly, and set off every trap that Temari Lady warned us about along the way, Kin deadpanned. And the fact that you could let half the competition know we are here with the racket you just made. Oh, and let's not forget the fact that the sun is still beating down on us, even if there's a barrier that keeps us from going to the top of the walls, so you could get a stroke if you keep doing that. Point taken, but if we do attract some foes to us, we can take them, even if they try a surprise attack, Jinyamaru replied. Plus, we'll be a good distance away from any trap I set off blasting through walls with this, and I can use my wind affinity chakra to cool the air around me to prevent the stroke, so as long as I don't overexert, I'll be fine. And it's true that we can handle pretty much any team in here, with a possible exception of Sasuke-sans, Haku said. And even if they try an ambush, I have enough experience with those after being on the run with Zabuza-sensei to spot most they could try, and even if they use Jinjutsu, that is your area of expertise, right, Kin? Not if we let them take that path. Only to ambush them, Jinyamaru mused, and Haku nodded. The prospect of an easy trail blazed by another team would be appealing for most inexperienced Chunin hopefuls, and that alone would serve to help bring opponents to an ambush area. 5 days in the maze should be more than enough to get the scrolls they needed and get to the goal. Alright, just don't bust through every time we encounter a dead end, Kin said. We don't want to exhaust our strongest team member when it comes to straight-up combat before we even face a team. Even someone with endurance and strength like yours has their limits. Did you hear something? Konohamaru asked his 2 Minio, teammates as they took a left turn and hastily backed up to avoid a net shot out of the wall. Anyone without good reflexes would have had to either cut their way out or wait for someone to get them out of that thing. Sounded like something hit something else with a lot of force, Moegi said. Or maybe a big explosion. Maybe someone is trying to blast their way through the maze, Udon said. Konohamaru rubbed his chin thoughtfully before he took out an exploding tag and set it against a wall. They quickly ran around the corner and covered their ears as it went off. Then they looked back around the corner, and the group's leader cursed as he saw the wall was only gouged about 1/2 foot of the way in by the explosion. After a few more tags were used, they reached the steel center. If anyone succeeded in getting through that in 1 shot, Konohamaru mused, then we had better avoid them, at least in a direct confrontation, or unless they wore themselves out. Since we don't have enough tags to blast our way through ourselves, we're just going to have to take all the turns the old-fashioned way. Lucky we got the map fragment that showed us where we were right away. What about the jutsu that Akari helped you learn before she got her team? Moegi asked, but Konohamaru shook his head. That would probably take at least 2 shots to get through a wall, maybe 1 to get through the rest of the way on this one, depending on how thick the steel part is, and I can only put out about 2 a day, 3 if I conserve my chakra just for that purpose without using too many of my other jutsu, and besides, I'm only supposed to use it when I'm backed into a corner. So what do we do? Udon asked, and Konohamaru grinned. Isn't it obvious? We just find a spot other teams are more likely to pass through, preferably as close to the oasis in the center of the maze as possible, and then we use our specialty in making traps to get our scrolls. Sounds like a good idea, Moegi said. Shadow, clone jutsu. Akari shouted, and 4 clones came into being as the young Namikaze's team came to a spot with 4 turns. Akari nodded to her clones, and each one shot down a different turn. That jutsu is really good for scouting, isn't it? Daisuke said. Remind me to ask you to teach it to me. It may come in hand for decoys, kind of like what you did with our scrolls. In order to keep other teams from getting their hands on their own sun scroll, they had made several fakes of not only that scroll, but of the other 2 needed scrolls as well. Daisuke carried the real sun scroll. Why didn't you just make with clones? Kiyoshi asked. They're more durable, and cost less chakra to make, right? That makes them more practical for combat, yes, Akari replied. But I kind of want a memory feedback of the shadow clones to let us know what's up ahead. For now, we could just kick back here until they send me information on the 4 T's I am looking for. It's not like we are in a hurry yet. We do have 5 days after all. For T's? Daisuke asked, confused. Twists, turns, traps, and teams, Akari replied, and Daisuke snorted. In the meantime, as I said, we can relax here until the intel comes back. But first, she said as she made 5 with clones and had them get to work setting traps at the locations foes could come through, as well as keep lookout. Her team would still have their guards up naturally, but this would give them some room to rest without as much of a risk. The young Namikaze then unsealed her cooler and took out some cold drinks. Soda, anyone? About 3 hours after the exam started, a team from Kiri walked cautiously through the hole that some other team had blasted through the wall. Though they were wary of someone who could do that, they had reason that the effort would likely tire out the person who could accomplish such a task, and if his or her teammates and they were good at much else, they would already be tuning by now. Eventually, they came to a very sloppily made trap with ninja wires set up as a tripwire, obviously to slow down any pursuit of the team who made the trap. A quick look around showed no one around, and that the wire was set to an exploding tag. There was noise, and they turned hastily to see that some wind chimes that looked like they had been there for a while were the cause. The Kiri team deduced that it was some kind of old decoration designed to make noise and put those taking the exam on edge. Looks like these guys we were following are all brawn and no brain, the leader of the Kiri team said as he cut the tripwire, only for the release tension to release several other tripwires that were hidden by Jinjutsu and drop a net made of ninja wire down on all 3 of them. What the? One of them shouted as he channeled some chakra into his hands, forming chakra scalpels to try to cut his way free. He was obviously a medic ninja for the team, though the scalpels were pretty poorly made. He may still have been able to cut the team loose if he had been given about 10 seconds. He did not even get one. Lightning style, live wire, jutsu. A female's voice shouted, and lightning chakra ran from a wire that the voice's owner to the net it was connected to, giving the Kiri ninja a devastating shock. As they all slumped unconscious, Kin shimmered into view, and all other false images faded, including the wear on the wind chimes put there to keep them from seeming too out of place. She had a wire attached to those as well, which was how she had cast the sound-based ninjutsu that hid her and the other wires and created the fake exploding tag. Hook, line, and sinker. Nice one, Jinyamaru said as he came out of the hole he had made in the next wall, followed by Haku. They had hidden on the other side of the wall. They had made the path through. So if Kin's trap failed and she got into trouble, they would be able to help her. It had clearly not been necessary. Let's see what scroll they have, Haku said as he rummaged through the bag of the leader of the down team. Ah, a rain scroll. Now all we need is a sun scroll. The map fragment they have is actually the same as ours though, Kin said, and Jinyamaru chucked. Who cares? He asked. Since we can just blast our way through the walls if we need to, we don't need to navigate much. After tying the opposing team up and taking the extra map fragment, in case they needed to barter, they headed deeper into the maze. Haha, we got you. Konohamaru shouted in glee at the Kusa team they had caught in the net. The trap they had used was an obvious one that fired darts that the enemy was to assume were poison-tipped, though they actually weren't since they were just a red herring, and upon avoiding that trap, they ran into a pitfall one that was a little less obvious. But they were still also meant to know that was there too, since any ninja worth their salt could tell that the first trap was a diversion, but then they fouled up at the third trap, which was the one the cursing team was caught in right. There and then. Damn, we could tell that the first 2 were a trap within a trap, but we did not spot the last one of the genin said. That's a little obvious, Udon said a little smugly, earning a glare from one of the other genin. The leader sighed. Since it's clear you have us at our mercy, here is our scroll and map fragment, he said as he managed to dig them out of his pouch with a little bit of effort, considering the tight spot he was in. Nice, a sand scroll was one of the ones we needed, Konohamaru said, as the scroll was handed to him. But as Konohamaru's team left, the scroll exploded, blasting the poor genin and his team into the wall. The Kusa team managed to cut themselves down at that point. Honestly, you are better at setting traps than you are at seeing them, the leader said, before the 3 members of Konohamaru's team disappeared in a burst of smoke. Vanna, bet. An irritated Konohamaru and 2 shadow clones of him said from behind the 3 surprised enemy genin before they delivered swift blows to the back of their necks. The Kusa team fell, only the leader staying conscious, but unable to do anything as a shadow clone held a kunai to his neck. Cool trick, huh? I made sure that I had made a few clones ahead of time in case he tried anything funny or actually escaped our trap, and had 2 of them transform into my teammates. Last chance to hand a real scroll over, or things will get messy. The Kusa Jinin cursed again before he handed the real scroll over this time, and let Konohamaru and his teammates trust him and the other 2 Kusa Nin up. Was that really so hard? Konohamaru sarcastically asked the Jinin team, before he left with Udon and Moegi, slapping him high fives. Let's take the next team instead of just assisting with the trap making, okay? Moegi asked, and Konohamaru nodded in agreement. One more clone to go before we choose our path, Akari said. The first few clones had not given the redhead any interesting news, just one that had found nothing but dead ends, and a few non-lethal, but still inconvenient if you were caught in them traps. The second having found a few ways deeper into the center and locating a team from sand and poofing out before being spotted by said team. And the final one, which had found a team from Kyomo that looked a little exhausted but satisfied, which may have meant that they had run into another team and gotten one of the needed scrolls. So far, the latter way was obviously the most attractive option, since a needed scroll for their team was almost guaranteed. Maybe you should just dispel the last clone now, so we can go after that Kyomo team before they get too much distance on us, Daisuke suggested, and Kiyoshi nodded in agreement. Yeah, you're probably Akari said, before her eyes widened. The last clone had clearly dispelled itself. Guys, I think we have 4 teams from IWA headed our way. They seem to have at least one sensory type with them, because they seem to know where we are, and they also seem to have agreed to work together before the exam even began. That sensory type I mentioned was likely how they located each other, she finished. Well, then we need to get ready for them, Daisuke said, and Kiyoshi quickly set to work setting traps. Huh, interesting, it seems that you IWA teams are all in this together. I'm guessing you all made sure to give each other the code word from the first exam, Haku said, as the 2 IWA teams they ran into surrounded them in a rounded area of the maze they had come out on. Before the Yuki could continue any further, the IWA Jinin all assaulted Haku and his team from all sides with several earth jutsus and weapons from distance. That ambush actually worked quite well. One of them chortled at the smoke cloud before he felt a few sunbon at his neck with Kin behind him looking a little ticked. Not really, she said as the smoke cleared to show several ice fragments on the ground where the leaf Jinin had supposedly been. You only hit copies of us made of ice. Haku sent something amiss long ago. The other 5 IWA Jinin quickly got over their surprise, and they all rushed to attack Kin, but were stopped by Jinru, who had his chief weapon and swung it, not actually intending to hit, but instead to herd the 5 Jinin close together. Into a trap. Sure enough, they all backed away into where Haku had been gathering chakra. Hey, does it feel a little cold to you? One of the IWA Jinin asked, and the others shared his apprehension, considering that it should be baking under the sun. Before they could muse further, all 5 of the IWA Anin found themselves enclosed in a dome of ice mirrors, an image of Haku in each one. Looks like your teammates are out, Kin said, pricking the neck of her hostage with one of her truth serum, lace Simbon. So tell me, what are you guys after that compels you to work as a large group? We collaborated to take out the Namikaze girl and make the Yondaime pay for all of our soldiers he killed during the Third War, the Jinin found himself admitting. And we also decided to take out any other of you damn leaf Jinin we could as well. The exam is secondary to us. I see, Kin said, strongly tempted to slit the guy's throat to keep him from being any more trouble. Deciding that Haku would disapprove of unneeded bloodshed, she instead pricked him with a sunbon laced with a fast-acting ticket to dreamland. Sure enough, the Jinin was asleep in 10 seconds. She looked up to see the other 5 IWA Jinin crying out as they were assaulted on all sides by Haku's speed and sunbon. A few had tried to raise a barrier made of rock, which worked at first, until Jinimaro walked into the ice dome and tore the barrier down. Soon enough, the entire IWA team had been incapacitated. Rats, neither one had a sun scroll. Kin cursed as she checked both of their team's leaders. They were now stuck with 2 rain and 2 sand scrolls. What should we do with them? Jinimaro asked. They won't be in any shape to do anything by the time the exams are done, Haku said. So we can just leave them and let anyone else who comes across them do what they please. Just up ahead, one IWA Jinin told his 11 comrades. They seem to be waiting for us. So they have a few traps to spring then, one of the team leaders said. He and 2 other Jinin made a few mud clones each, and the clones charged into the clearing. Sure enough, they were quickly decimated by a sleuth of traps, including a few that shot wooden stakes, a pitfall with exploding tags at the bottom, and a few thorn nets with toxins on each thorn. The 12 IWA Jinin then went in themselves once they were sure they had tripped all of the traps. To their surprise, they found a few trees in areas they could not see from the corridor they had been in, and one booby trap had not yet been set off. Once a tripwire had been stepped on by one Jinin, it released a long whip-like branch that was also hidden at shin level, and struck 5 of the IWA Nin in the legs, snapping the shin bones of 2 of them, and just causing the other 3 to take a humiliating spill. The other 7 threw a few shuriken and kunai into the trees, only hitting a few random branches and the wall of the maze, before Daisuke shot out of hiding and threw a net made of ninja wire at the group. Only 2 got caught, but Daisuke did not complain. He just cast a few signs. Fire-style Dragon Flame Jutsu. He shouted as the wires he had attached to the net took the fire chakra and headed for the trapped Jinin. Before the panicked ninja could burn, Daisuke was forced to abandon his attempt as another Jinin rushed him with a kunai. Daisuke jumped back at a fast speed and whipped out both of his katanas and found himself on the defensive as 2 IWA Jinin assaulted him with their weapons and a few close combat earth jutsu. He did not stay on the defensive for long as he dove between them, faster than they could trace, and hamstrung both of them without even turning his head to look where he was cutting. He did not need to. Akari, meanwhile, attacked the 2 IWA Jinin caught in the net before they could get all the way free. One was knocked out when she made a wooden staff and slammed one end onto the back of her head. The other she incapacitated by stomping as hard as she could on his crotch. Kiyoshi, who was still hidden, winced in sympathy. That was one of Akari's favorite targets. Another IWA Jinin, this one with a lightning affinity, jumped down to attack Daisuke with a lightning chakra lace blade, but Daisuke was too fast to get caught like that. Sidestepping and causing the IWA Jinin to stab into the branch they were on, he swung his katanas at his foe and struck non-lethal blows to incapacitate. Instead, the Jinin burst into a jolt of electricity, showing to be a clone made of lightning chakra. Daisuke was blasted by the shock and fell to his knees, helpless as a lightning lace kunai flew towards the back of his neck. It was stopped, however, when a small crossbow bolt also laced with lightning chakra intercepted the kunai and deflected it. Before the IWA Jinin who threw it could react, another bolt caught him in the neck, severing his jugular vein and causing him to fall out of the branch as he bled to death. Thanks Kiyoshi, Daisuke panted as his teammate landed on the branch next to him, reloading his one-handed crossbow. This weapon of Kiyoshi's held 2 bolts at a time, one fired after the other, and the second bolt hidden within the bow itself. The idea was to fire one, and if that failed, the enemy might attack, thinking you would need to reload your weapon, only to fall right into the trap of the second bolt. The 3 Jinin who had been tripped by the earlier branch, but could still walk, all charged Akari, one of them making 5 mud clones, and were backed up by the other 2 Jinin who could still fight. It seemed like 10 on 1 at first, but 2 monkeys that were about 2.5 feet tall fell out of the branches fell on top of 2 IWA Jinin, one of them being the original of the mud clones. The monkeys wore wooden plates tied together for armor and wielded a dagger in each hand, as well as one with their tails. The IWA Jinin both screamed as the one without the clones was stabbed in the extremities, while the one with clones had his throat slit ruthlessly to dispel his clones. Akari then whirled in a blur as she struck at her remaining 3 opponents with her staff. One of the Jinin was able to block one end, but Akari channeled her with style chakra into the staff, and a spike shot out and impaled the Jinin through his shoulder, causing him to stumble back. The other 2 tried to attack her from behind, one of them using armor made of stone, but the latter was impaled through the back of his knee by one of Kiyoshi's lightning-laced bolts, and the other was hit in the back by some shuriken thrown by Daisuke. I could have gotten those, you know, Akari shouted up at her teammates as both of the last Jinin foes fell. Just trying to expedite things a little, Daisuke shouted back down. Further banter was cut off when the Jinin Kiyoshi had shot through the knee shouted from the ground, Earth-style stone shackles. The rock beneath Akari's feet rose up and encased her legs. She burst free by channeling chakra to her feet to blast the rock away and knock the Jinin out with a blow from her staff, but was then trapped in a full Nelson by the Jinin whose shoulder she had impaled, clearly not severely enough to limit the use of his arm. Meanwhile, one of the Jinin that Daisuke had hamstrung had managed to avoid going into shock and threw several kunai and shuriken at the momentarily trapped Akari. Daisuke knew that she would get free, but not on time to avoid the weapons. He pulled out his own kunai out his pouch desperately, not sure his accuracy would be as good as Kiyoshi's with thrown weapons. But to his surprise, the weapons thrown by the IWA Jinin seemed to slow, along with the world around them. Wasting no time, Daisuke hurled his own weapons and knocked all of the IWA Jinins out of the air. Kiyoshi looked in amazement at Daisuke for having pulled off such a hastily made maneuver, and was even more surprised when he saw that Daisuke's eyes had gone from solid onyx-colored to an active Sharingan, with 2 Tomo in each eye. Chapter 51 in a month. Thanks, Daisuke, Akari shouted as she flung the Jinin, holding her off, and kicked him in the gut. The remaining Jinin with injuries but still wanted to fight were quickly dispatched. In the end, only 2 of the 12 IWA were killed, The one who had his throat slit by one of Akari's monkeys, and the one who got shot in the neck by Kiyoshi. Akari looked a little sick, but was able to hold her revulsion in check. She and her team had killed a few bandits before, and even before then, while she was under Sasuke's private tutelage, he had used Tsukuyomi on her to run her through countless battle scenarios, and even forced her to kill within the illusion on more than one occasion. She could tell that he hated to be harsh like that, but she had needed to be disillusioned to ensure that the first time she took a life for real, she would not freeze up when there was a very real possibility that she would face other foes. In fact, she had it easy that she could almost experience the reality within one of the most realistic genjutsu the shinobi world had to offer, so she could be prepared. What are you guys doing, ganging up on us like that? Daisuke asked in annoyance, glaring at one of the lead genin with his Sharingan. We were after the Namikaze wench, the genin said, and got kicked hard in the crotch by a ticked-off Akari. Both Daisuke and Kiyoshi covered their own nether regions in fear. Who do you think you were calling a wench? Akari demanded in a rage. And what were you after me for? Were you trying to capture me, so you could bring my Kekkei Jinkai to IWA? Because your Tsuchikage has a treaty with us after what happened 2 years ago with Orochimaru's invasion. The wheezing genin only chuckled. You little brat, we don't care about your bloodline, nor do we care what Inoki thinks. He has lost his pride. If you ask me, he won't be Tsuchikage for much longer. Then what was your purpose in teaming up just to attack us? Akari once again demanded. Revenge, the IWA genin said. That bastard of father, you have killed so many of our country's best men and cost us the war. In fact, my own father killed himself several years after the death of his sister. Daisuke walked up to the genin and kicked him hard in the face, knocking loose a few teeth and breaking his nose. Get the hell over it, he said coolly. Nothing you do can change the past, you know. Trying to kill Akari over it won't make anyone less dead, and will only cause more people looking to take an eye for an eye. My own father was killed by Sound Ninja, and you don't see me dwelling on it. I was not dwelling on it, the Ido genin replied, snidely. I merely saw a chance for vengeance and tried to take it, same as most of my comrades. You say that you have no desire to go after the remaining Sound Ninja for what they did to your father, but do you really think if one crossed your path, you would let it go? Like I said, if I did kill that ninja out of spite, it would not do squat for the people they killed. But you can't deny that there would be, say, a flash of anger, a desire to kill, regardless of whether anyone would benefit from it or not. You can't deny that it would give you some satisfaction, passing judgment on the one who made you suffer because of the death of someone you cared for. But you are free to believe what you want. Daisuke spat in irritation. Just shut up and stay put, he said as his teammates finished tying up the remaining IWA genin. They looked at the scrolls the teams had. The 4 teams had 8 scrolls in all, so they had clearly ganged up on a few other teams. Adding those scrolls to their own, they had 3 of each in the end. They also had a map that was only missing 1 fragment. Let's get to the oasis before any more teams from IWA find us, Kiyoshi advised, and Akari nodded in response. Udon hit the deck. Konohamaru shouted frantically to his friend as an IWA genin threw several shuriken at him. Udon was able to duck out of the way of several weapons, but one of them tagged him on the shoulder, causing him to grunt in pain and fall backwards. The IWA nin he had been fighting immediately tried to follow up, but Udon recovered quickly enough to roll away from the genin's fresh assault and threw his kunai, catching his foe right in the temple, killing him instantly. While Udon's abilities with either ninjutsu or jinjutsu were nothing to rely on, his taijutsu was well above average, and he had a very good aim with thrown weapons, due to his ability to think rather fast and on his feet. Konohamaru dodged backwards as another clod of stone was thrown at him, and he ducked under a swing from a foe's kunai before using a sweeping kick to take the genin's legs from under her, and throwing a tag kunai at 2 others that were trying to take Moegi from behind as she held her own against 2 in front of her. Things had been going well for Konohamaru's team as they made their way to the center, but they had been ambushed by 3 teams of IWA genin as they made their way through the maze. If it had not been for the young Sarutobi shadow clone springing the trap the genin had set, the 3 Konoha ninja would already be dead. Konohamaru's tag kunai exploded, blasting one of the IWA ninja full on and flinging him back into the other genin who had tried to flank Moegi, covered in burns and unconscious. That's 1 dead, another out cold, and 7 still able to fight, and already Udon is injured and Moegi is having trouble. 3 are after her now, and I have to deal with 2, while 2 more are attacking Udon. Konohamaru thought frantically as one of the genin who had a water element was launching several small waves to try to catch Konohamaru off his feet, so his teammate could kill the young leaf ninja while he was down. Obviously, Konohamaru was not cooperating and was able to jump away from 1 water-style jutsu, though the drawback was that he fell right into a tangle with the other genin attacking him, though that put him inside the reach of the opponent's kunai. For a moment, they struggled on the ground, Konohamaru having a hold of the wrist of his opponent's kunai arm, before the water-style Genin threw several shuriken and kunai at Konohamaru, who saw them coming and put his foe in a better hold before rolling, so the Genin was between him and the projectiles, effectively acting as a meat shield. It worked like a charm if the Genin's screams of pain were anything to judge by. Meanwhile, Udon had grabbed the arm of one of his attackers before said attacker could stab him with a kunai and kick the Genin in the gut as hard as he could while still holding the arm. The result was a loud snap as the Genin's shoulder was forcefully dislocated, and the Genin was trying to scream in pain, but was unable to with the wind knocked out of him like that. Udon's other foe immediately tried to cast some signs for a Jinjutsu, but Udon had taken the kunai from his downed opponent in the same motion as his attack, and threw the weapon at the IWA ninja, impaling her through one of her hands and stopping her attempt. Before either Konohamaru or Udon could finish off their remaining foes, Moegi gave a small scream of pain as the foe Konohamaru had stalled before hit her in the back with 2 thrown shuriken. Though the weapons did not go deep, they did leave her open for further attack from her other opponents. Moegi, both of her male teammates, cried out as they tried to go to her aid. Konohamaru was faster, whipping through hand seals as he went. Fire style, fire, arrow jutsu, Konohamaru shouted as he exhaled violently, sending flames in the shape of an arrow at the foe closest to Moegi. The fire arrow impaled the IWA Genin through the side of his chest, causing him to scream in agony before going limp. The other Genin was taken in his calf by a kunai thrown by Udon, causing him to fall short of hitting Moegi with his short sword. Unfortunately, this gave Udon no chance to counter as he was caught in a Jinjutsu cast by the Genin he had stopped before. She had him tied down to the ground, unable to move in either the Jinjutsu or reality. Konohamaru fixed that with another exploding kunai at the Jinjutsu using Kunoichi, forcing her to break her attack to dodge. Stop, or she dies. The IWA Genin who had tagged Moegi with shuriken demanded as he held her in a chokehold, a kunai held at her neck. Get on your knees and roll your scrolls over to me now. He dug the kunai into Moegi's neck for emphasis, just enough to draw blood. Konohamaru cursed as he and Udon complied, both of them pulling out one of their scrolls, Konohamaru with their sun scroll, and Udon with the sand scroll. One of the remaining 3 IWA Genin still in good enough shape to fight effectively. The Jinjutsu user picked them up, and the water-style user tied Konohamaru and Udon up. Fine, you have our scrolls, so let us be now. Konohamaru growled as the Genin finished trussing them up. To his horror, the Genin holding Moegi hostage just grinned sadistically. Sorry, no can do. You see, you killed 2 of our comrades and wounded most of us. Not only that, but only one of our teams can now pass the exams thanks to you. I think we shall take your lives in addition to your scrolls as compensation. His grin widened as he moved to slit Moegi's throat, Konohamaru and Udon only able to watch as the kunai plunged at her throat. Gotta say, I was expecting more of a challenge from these guys, Kin said as they checked the vitals of the out-cold team of IWA Genin. They had encountered this team close to the center of the labyrinth, waiting to ambush teams, which had been clearly effective because they had a bunch of scrolls, though 3 were the Sun Scroll and the other 4 were Rain Scrolls, with no Sand Scrolls. They were good enough to take 6 scrolls with their ambush tactics, but clearly unlucky. Of course, they were likely waiting for Konoha teams to ambush anyway, so they likely weren't too upset about it. The IWA Genin were lucky. Despite Jinyamaru being a little aggressive, they would all live. It was a shame that they could not get a photo of the faces the IWA team had when he used a collaborative Earth-style jutsu that sent a boulder the size of a few small buildings at the team at a high speed, only for Jinyamaru to simply slap it aside before pummeling the Genin in all of 10 seconds. Priceless. Well, we got enough to pass now, and we removed a good portion of competition as well, Haku said. Since we have 6 Rain Scrolls, that is only 9 teams, including us, that have a chance to pass. With 3.5 days remaining, that will give some time for more of the Rain Scrolls to be taken out of the equation, so not many will have a shot at passing now. Good, but it may still serve us well to take out any more teams laying ambushes near the building to further thin out opposing ranks, Jinyamaru said. If we can find even one more Rain Scroll, that will drastically decrease the chances of further passing teams. 1 dash. The IWA Genin growled as his arm was forcefully yanked back by the Johio, a small dart attached to a long rope that had wrapped around his wrist before he could take Moegi's life. Just in time, a female voice said as its owner leapt at the IWA Nin, and her foot slammed into the side of his head, knocking him out. Before his 2 comrades could react, there was a shout of Earth-style rock bullets. The 2 Genin turned in time to watch the clods of rock thrown by a man with short brown hair and Asuna headband worn like a bandana smash into their faces, knocking them out cold. Moegi wasted no time in kicking the face of the IWA Genin, whose calf had been skewered by Udon before he could even think to try anything funny. Nice job, Matsuri Itetsu. A black-haired girl shouted at the saviors of Konohamaru's team as she knelt behind Konohamaru and Udon and channeled wind chakra into her fingers to form a blade of wind chakra and cut them free. Hey, I know you, Konohamaru said to Matsuri as he dropped the ropes. You were that nice lady Akari showed her around town. Yeah, that's right, and you are? Matsuri asked. Konohamaru, Udon, and Moegi, Konohamaru said, and Moegi grumbled something about being able to handle her own introduction, while Udon took it in good grace. I hope you aren't too heavily injured? Matsuri asked as Moegi got to work using basic medical ninjutsu the academy had started to teach about 2 years ago to heal Udon's wounded shoulder. Since Tsunade was not stuck as Hokage in this timeline, and Shizen was not spending so much time assisting her, they could both focus more on helping Konoha's shinobi learn the art, resulting in some of the more advanced classes teaching medical jutsu, and Moegi decided to be medic for Konohamaru's team. Nothing we can't handle, Moegi said. Why did you guys help us anyway? It was Matsuri's decision, the guy called it Tetsu replied. I just didn't want to see shinobi of our ally nation get killed so ruthlessly, Matsuri said. Plus, I suppose it is a good chance for us to get the scrolls we need to pass. Oh yeah, we're going to want to check those out, Konohamaru said, smacking his forehead. After a quick search, they came up with the Sun and Sand scroll Konohamaru's team had before, as well as 3 rain scrolls and another set of Sand and Sun scrolls. Matsuri's team had turned out to have started with a rain scroll. Well, since we have enough scrolls and a complete map now, why don't we both go to the center? Konohamaru asked Matsuri. We have enough scrolls between our 2 teams, and there is safety in numbers, right? How about it? Itetsu, you could... Matsuri asked her teammates. It sounds like a good idea to me, the black-haired girl who was apparently Yukata replied. The remaining 3.5 days came and went, and the Yondaime Kazakage's paperwork was interrupted when the monitor on the wall next to him turned on and Gaara's image was displayed. Kazekage-sama, Gaara said, not using the term father due to the formality of the situation. Ah, I take it the second exam has just finished? Gaara's father replied. Yes, it has. A total of 4 teams has passed the exam, 3 from Konoha and 1 of our own. So 12 genin in all. The Kazekage thought. Should we have the preliminaries for the 3rd round? No, there's no need. While 12 is a high number, it is far from unmanageable. Have the shinobi's matchups sorted out, and we will have the 3rd exam in a month. Very well then. The monitor shut off. The teams that had passed were Konohamaru's, Akari's, Haku's, and Matsuri's. Haku's team had spent the remainder of the time sweeping the area around the oasis before entering the building half a day before the exam ended. They were the last to arrive, though that was by choice. Konohamaru and his corps arrived about midway through, accompanied by Matsuri's team, luckily avoiding Haku's. Akari and her team ran right in the well-trained team, but Haku had decided not to stop them, mostly out of camaraderie for Naruto's sister, partly out of the possibility of losing or at least getting injured if they fought Akari, Daisuke, and Kiyoshi, and also partly out of fear of what Naruto would do to him if he found out Haku took his sister out of the exams. Gaara shunshined into the room they were all gathered in, and proceeded to congratulate all of them for making it all the way to the 3rd exam, and then proceeded to explain that from here on out, they would be tested individually, and all 12 of them could potentially be Chunin if they made the cut. He explained how judges would evaluate matches about a month from now, and that it would be set up like a tournament. He then proceeded to form a box with his sand and 12 spheres, each with a different number on them, 1 through 12. Then he started calling them forward to take a sphere form the box, explaining that this was how they would determine matchups. Akari gulped, slightly nervous as she took her number 5, which meant that her foe would be whoever got 6. She looked around nervously as others took their numbers, waiting to see who her first foe would be. Please, no one from Zabuza's team. Please, no one from Zabuza's team. Please, no one from Zabuza's team, she mentally chanted. Omake top 3 Narahina moments, Isaac ruined 1. Finally, some peace. Naruto and Hinata both said as the former laid down the picnic basket he had been carrying and the latter laid the blanket out. It was a nice, clear, sunny day at the meadow Naruto had picked out, and in order to keep that pest away from them, Naruto had only told Felix where they were going, or that they were even going to be gone. After they had set the picnic up, Naruto laid back with a sigh. One nice day, huh? It really is, Naruto-kun. No enclosed areas, no rain, and most importantly, no Isaac. Naruto sighed in absolute bliss. You're only right about the first one, a horrifyingly familiar voice said, and the couple paled as they whipped around to see that it was indeed Isaac behind them. How did you find out we were here? Naruto shouted, pointing a finger at the Triclops with a screw loose. And what do you mean, only the first one? Even if you were here, there is no or dash. He did not get any further as a shadow clone of Isaac with a seal called a hover seal on dumped 2 buckets of ice-cold water on Naruto and Hinata. You really can't trust weather forecasters, you know? Isaac said as he pretended to pout. They promised that not a drop of water would be falling from the sky today. And here we are with a sudden, albeit short, deluge. He then proceeded to stop using his set of lungs to efficiently supply him with oxygen as he started to laugh his ass off. Very funny, Naruto growled as he used a low-powered fire jutsu to get him and Hinata warm again. Why don't you get going before I make good on the threat I made when you pulled that stunt with the birds? The only reason I haven't already is because I can't seem to catch you when I want to do that. Funny how fast having a volatile jutsu aiming for your rear end can motivate you to run, Isaac said. But no can do on me leaving. Someone has to make sure you two don't do anything you might regret later. What? Hinata asked. What the hell are you talking about? Naruto demanded. As if you don't know. Two teenagers with raging hormones going through their bodies right now, and going off on their own, telling almost no one, it would make a guy worry about your virginities. Naruto and Hinata's faces both went undocumented shades of red as the former spluttered. What the hell? We weren't going to do anything like. Well, that. Sure, that's what they all say, and who knows, you may actually mean it now, but all it takes is one moment of wild passion, and next thing you know, you're using shadow clones to get really FRE dash. Shut up. I don't want to hear your stupid, perverted fantasies. Lala lala lala. Naruto said that last part with his hands over his ears. Hinata, meanwhile, went even redder as she imagined what Isaac was getting at with the shadow clones. Before she passed out from a sudden, massive nosebleed. Naruto looked mortified at her prone form, trying his best to ignore the roaring laughter of a certain fox within him. Looks like even that shy vixen of yours has a perverted side too. Ha ha ha, Kurama exclaimed, causing Naruto to go red himself, though this was mainly out of anger this time. Wordlessly, he formed the familiar cross seal, surrounding Isaac with 100 clones, before they performed the transformation jutsu. Later that same day, Naruto was forced to explain to Felix why Isaac needed treatment for a massive heart attack, and was muttering in delirious fear about an endless army of giant-sized versions of his horrors, and no way out. Chapter 52 Things to Come. After all of the numbers had been taken, they stood as thus. Itsuminen Haku Yuki. 2. Itetsu. 3. Udon. 4. Kiyoshi. 5. Akari Namikaze. 6. Jinyamaru. 7. Yukata. 8. Moegi. 9. Kintsuchi. 10. Matsuri. 11. Daisuke Uchiha. 12. Konohamaru Sarutobi. Nu. Akari mentally screamed as she saw her name next to Jinyamaru's. That was not going to be an easy fight at all. She also noted Konohamaru and Daisuke give each other small smiles as they acknowledged being each other's opponents. Gaara cleared his throat before then, telling the Jinin how the fights would work from then on. The brackets in the tournament were set up so that the winners of the first and second matches would fight each other before moving up a bracket, to face the winner of whoever won the fourth match. And the winner of the fifth match would face the winner of the sixth match before moving to face the winner of the eighth match. They all nodded in understanding as they mentally sized each other up. You are dismissed, Gaara then said. Good job, you three, Sasuke said as his team returned to the hotel. You now have a month to prepare for the next stage of the exams. That means I will be training you in earnest, but separately, because there is the possibility of you fighting each other in these exams, though that is a little unlikely. Kiyoshi would have to beat Haku, which is unlikely, sorry to say it, for a shot at facing Akari. And if she were to face Daisuke, she would have to beat both Jinyamaru and Haku, one after the other. Her one saving grace is that Haku would have to fight 2 matches, and Daisuke would have to beat Konohamaru and Kin, so that is also an unlikely scenario. Thanks for the vote of confidence, Daisuke muttered, while Kiyoshi just looked thoughtful. However, should you face each other in the exams, you will need to have some tricks to yourself. Before, you were training as a team to get things done, but from here on out, individual abilities are what are going to be tested. That means that you will be expected to go all out against each other, and if you already know the tricks that your teammates have, it will make for a poor match. So who will you train first? Akari asked. Mainly Daisuke, now that he has a Sharingan awakened. He will benefit the most from training with me, but I will also give you and Kiyoshi some attention. You're going to need it. Itachi looked at the letter in front of him with a frown. It had come from one of those rifts that resembled broken glass, and detailed that there was a change of plans. The original plan was to bring Naruto back to this dimension once the Akatsuki started moving, about 6 months earlier than he had returned from his trip with Jiraiya. However, a wrench was thrown in said plans when, and this was the part that had Itachi frowning, Naruto had developed the Rinnegan due to having Sasuke's blood donated to him. Because of this, Felix had decided that they would come back first for a day during the third exam so Naruto could watch his sister fight. Whether they stayed or left at that point depended on how active the Akatsuki were at that point. It was also another matter. So far, 3 of the current Kage were in the loop on the threat of the Akatsuki Itachi, Gaara's father, and Inoki. In order to bring A and Mei into the loop, Felix had sent Itachi instructions to have someone who knew the pulse imprint jutsu on any kind of diplomatic mission, as well as someone who was capable of holding a Kage down for even a second. It did not matter as much whether or not the leaders of this world were aware of what was going to happen anymore, because they were rapidly approaching the point where the clock had been turned back in the first place, and they had already changed so much that after Naruto returned, there would be little to no guarantee that things would happen in a similar manner as they did last time. From this point forward, they would be going in almost blind and could not afford to rely fully on knowledge on what happened in the past timeline. So it did not matter so much if the Reikage or Mizukage tried to change everything they felt they had to, and it would be an asset to have all 5 Kage aware of what was going on. After the seriousness of the letter, Itachi actually cracked a smile at the P.S. Please don't tell Sasuke about Naruto's eyes yet. He practically begged for the chance to be there to get a picture of the team's face for blackmail purposes when he found out. Itachi set the letter down and began looking over all intel he had on the Akatsuki from his previous time as a member and what he currently knew about this timeline. Felix was right. They had to act as if they did not know what the Akatsuki was going to do next. Time to try out the first of your Rinnegan summons, Felix said as he created his dragon ruler of all elements by casting 5-hand seals. Naruto stood before him on the training grounds before he concentrated, his eyes activating. Sure enough, there was a BOF as a red dragon about a third the size of Felix's popped into being. Its eyes were obviously the Rinnegan, and it had the dark orange chakra receiving piercings in various points of its body. The Rinnegan beast wasted no time in bathing the wind head of Felix's artificial dragon in fire, causing it to explode as the wind head fan set flames. The head simply reformed, and the dragon ruler of all elements retaliated with a blast of water from its mouth. It was then Naruto tested the ability he had tried to give his summons. The scales of the Rinnegan dragon turned from fiery red to a dull brown, as the dragon released rock from its mouth to catch the water and halt it. The dragon ruler then fired lightning to pierce the rock, which was responded to with Naruto's dragon turning green to fire a wind blast, stopping the lightning, and provoking a fireball next. The dragon turned blue to use a blast of water, extinguishing said fireball, before turning yellow and firing lightning to rend the stone clod into small pebbles. Looks like it works, Naruto sighed. Obviously, the dragon he made would not be able to cast any elemental jutsu like the Ashorius, but just having a variety of attacks that could be fired from its mouth would be a huge asset in battle, because it could gain any elemental advantage desired. That it does, Felix said as his dragon ruler dissipated. The Hydra should be ready for testing tomorrow, right? Yeah, it should be, Naruto replied as his own dragon disappeared. Hey Felix, when you used to summon that thing, didn't you use to stab your sword in the ground? Why did you cast hand seals then? Because like I said once, the jutsu that creates that thing was preset into the sword by my great-great-grandaunt after she invented the jutsu, leading to her gaining a lot of fame by being able to use a jutsu that required the use of all 5 elements at once. So far in recorded history, she is the only member of the clan who has been able to do so. Stabbing the sword in a downward motion was part of the way to activate the technique. But when you saw me cast hand signs this time, you can actually use the jutsu without having to activate the preset one, right? Naruto asked, looking impressed. Yep. That makes me the second in clan history to be able to do so, though I still need extra chakra from elemental infinity if I don't want to exhaust myself. But why did you want to do that, if you still need to use the sword to use the jutsu effectively? And the jutsu is preset into it, because I want to improve it with an idea I recently had and set the improved version into the sword. It also helps me learn to use the 5 elements at once to a degree, so it may be good practice to make that 5-element Rasengan. Hee hee. Well, you're going to have to eat your heart out, because now that I have the Rinnegan, I can master the last 2 elements and make it myself. Good luck. You have yet to master the first exercise with water manipulation, and you haven't even started with lightning yet. Even with the Rinnegan and shadow clones, you won't master elements you originally had no affinity for overnight. Just you wait. I'm going to have it down before you do, you'll see. Against his better judgment, considering Naruto's considerable luck with gambling, Felix said, you want to put your money where your mouth is? After they both made unnecessarily high bets on the subject, Felix then asked, so what other creatures were you planning to use with those eyes of yours, anyway? Not sure yet. I thought about making a toad, but I don't want to disrespect Old Boss Chief or any of the others. Probably smart. Tell you what, we can go do another dimension later. It used to be uninhabited, but one of our top-notch biologists actually turned a large chunk of it into a sort of resort for various species of a lot of different dimensions. I'm sure you won't have a lack of variety there. Naruto noticed Isaac walking by, whistling as he went, and the blonde gave a grin that would have scared the man if he saw it, before he turned to Felix and asked, do you think that dimension has giant squirrels? You are not wasting your Rinnegan powers on something so stupid, Felix said in an adamant tone to Naruto's disappointment. You already torture him enough with those transformed clones of yours anyway. No amount of torture is enough for that guy, Naruto muttered. Hinata still comes dangerously close to fainting every time she sees me use the shadow clone jutsu, thanks to him. Hey Akari, I see you passed too, Konohamaru said as he and Akari noticed each other out on the streets of Suna. Yep, was there ever any doubt? The young girl asked. So what are you doing out here anyway? I figured Sasuke will be training you hard. He gave the three of us the day off, actually, so he could figure out how to go about training the three of us. What about you? I actually can't find Sakura-sensei anywhere. After she congratulated the three of us for passing the second exam, I think she ditched us to try to find your sensei and date him for the day. Seriously, why couldn't I have been on your team? So Sasuke could have trained me too. Not that Sakura-sensei is too bad a teacher herself, but she has a lot of things that make her not nearly as awesome as your teacher. Konohamaru, Akari said as she looked over his shoulder at a spot behind him. I mean, first of all, the only combat skill she's really good at is punching things, and a fewer style jutsu. Konohamaru, Akari said in a warning tone, but he continued to dig his grave. There's also that cheap jinjutsu she uses. Konohamaru, and she also gushes too much about her boyfriend. I don't quite know what Sasuke sees in her. I mean, sure, that hair of hers is attractive, but she's just so tomboyish and has the body to match. Konohamaru, Akari shouted frantically. Konohamaru paused before he paled. She's standing right behind me, isn't she? Oh, don't stop on my account, Sakura said from behind the doomed boy. Please, do continue, she finished as she cracked her knuckles. I tried to warn him, Akari deadpanned as she watched her partner in crime make a beeline for it, only to get caught by his enraged sensei. Do you know where Akari went? Daisuke asked Kiyoshi as they stepped out of the hotel room. Why do you want to know? Kiyoshi asked with a bit of mischievous suspicion in his eyes. No particular reason, Daisuke said hastily. It's just that I don't think she should be out alone after what so many IWA Jinin try to pull. I don't think they will try anything again. They already tried to off us during the exams, and it was legal to kill then. Now that the second exam is over, I have no doubt that they will try to avoid the wrong side of the law with the Sand Shinobi keeping a close eye on them until they leave. And from what I heard, some of the Jinin were torn new ones when their teachers found out what they were trying to do. I don't think that Tsuchikage will let them off easy when they get back to Awagakure. To answer your previous question, by the way, I believe she went to catch up with Konohamaru. Oh, Daisuke said. He supposed that wanting to catch up with an old friend was understandable. And yet, why did the thought of it seem to irk him? So how about it? Akari asked the recovering Sarutobi once Sakura had finished pummeling him and gave him his training schedule. Konohamaru was muttering something about now she shows up as he rubbed the triple lump on his head. Suna is a little too quiet right about now. So after a few days of scoping it out, why don't we make things a little more lively when we're not training? I'm game. Let's just not do anything that would get us thrown out of the exams as a result, Konohamaru said. I waited too long to stop having to do D ranks to do anything too stupid to risk it. They both looked at each other before they burst out laughing. Yeah, right. Akari choked out between heaves of laughter. They would have to catch us in the act first, and that is never going to happen. So now all we have to worry about is training whenever our instructors are too busy with the others, Konohamaru said. I already have an idea on what we could work on, Akari said as she bit her thumb before casting a few signs. Summoning jutsu. In a burst of smoke, Enma appeared. And what did you summon me here for? The aged Monkey King asked. Sorry, Gigi Ape, Akari replied, earning a small tick mark at the nickname, but they were familiar enough with each other for Enma to let it slide. This time, I was just wondering if you had any good retainers that could teach a taijutsu style that humans could use. We actually have a lot of those, Enma replied. Since humans and apes are so similar, there is not too much of a difference in what we practice. I will ensure you get some decent training if that's what you are after. Just summon the trainers I pick for you whenever you are ready. Cool, thanks Gigi Ape, Konohamaru said enthusiastically, resulting in Enma grabbing both his and Akari's heads and bonking them together. Another thing, stop calling me that, both of you. With that, he vanished in a burst of smoke. Ow wow, why is my head such a target for people I annoy? Konohamaru muttered. Yeah, I prefer to target a certain lower spot myself, Akari said, causing Konohamaru to stop complaining about his headache at once. In a hidden Akatsuki base, 10 figures appeared on the fingertips of the Geto Mizo, and 4 others were on the floor of the cave in person. What did y'all call us here for, Leader Sama? Kisame asked. Please tell me you don't already have a new mission for me and my new partner. I'm still healing from having to be stitched back together with ninja wire, and I still haven't found a replacement scythe after that bastard Hozuki took mine, the spectral figure of Haydn said. And my right middle finger was never found either. I swear, if it weren't for the fact that I can only have a curse up for so long and need to get another DNA sample to get it back up, I would so still be torturing the little jerk right about now. Perhaps you should have been more careful then, Another spectral figure next to him, with visible, bloodshot black eyes, said. Then perhaps you would not have had to have Kabuto help you out. Shut up. Enough, Pain said. There have been more than a few complications to our plans over the past few years. We originally planned to have the Jinchuriki captured one at a time to have less attention paid to us. But the other nations with Jinchuriki have become more and more on edge, thanks to the meddling warnings from Konohagakure, and they are aware of our plans. So it seems that hitting and running is not going to cut it anymore then? Kisame asked. So what do we do now then? We take advantage of the element of surprise while we still have it, Pain replied. However, instead of waiting for opportunities to take our prizes, we are going to make a bold move while the nations are least expecting us to do so. That is why I intend to have simultaneous assaults on Suna, Iwa, and Kyumo to take 5 Jinchuriki in one go, a month from now, while the exams in Suna are going on. A leaf out of Orochimaru's book, Deidara said from the floor of the cave. I don't think that worked so well for him, though. Fool. That is only because he was betrayed by the 2 other nations he had allied himself with, Kabuto said from his perch on one of the statue's fingers. Deidara, though you and Toby are not yet full members of the Akatsuki, we will need to ensure the assault on Suna is successful, for we not only need the Ichibi Jinchuriki, but also a certain someone participating in the exams, someone who will help us get the Kyubi Jinchuriki. That one will be the hardest to capture by sheer force alone, if recent reports from Drachmus and Caius are accurate, so leverage will be ideal. So I will have you both participating as partners in that endeavor. Sasori and Drachmus will be in charge of that operation. Caius and his Edo Tenseis will be joining you on this mission. Kabuto, Kisame, you will attack Iwa at this time, and Haiden's 2-man cell will back you up. Raisin, Zetsu, as much as I want you two to help assault Kyumo, I believe you are better suited for the task of finding the locations of the Rokubi and the Sanbai and capturing them. Then who is going to assault Kyumo? Sasori asked. Conan and I will deal with that nation personally. Kyumo is the second strongest of the nations after all. Spend the next month preparing for your assignments. With that, his and Conan's figures faded. Raisin and Zetsu's also went. Before the remaining 6 Akatsuki members left, Toby looked at Deidara and said, So partners, eh? So I'm just curious, but what's it like? What's it like, Being able to give yourself blowjobs with those mouths on your hands. Most of the others there developed a sudden cough as Deidara developed a good set of tick marks. Toby, he said in clear anger. Toby gave small start and tried to flee the cave, leaving a smoke cloud behind him with the speed he was running. Unfortunately, he wasn't fast enough. Death by bombing. Deidara shouted as explosions went off, sending Toby flying through the air. A few days later in Suna, there was a lot of chaos going around. There was a scream of frustration from one of the stores that had once discriminated against Gaara, as Matsuri had told Akari. Apparently, the entire stocks of food supplies had been replaced by countless cups of instant ramen. The Suna Academy had increasingly desperate students trying to use the bathrooms, which were occupied by nothing more than several pairs of pants and shoes filled with toilet paper to make it look like someone was in the stalls. One of the more snobbish restaurants had a serious amount of customers complaining about being stuck to their seats. This was because someone had put special near-invisible storage seals on the seats of the seats that only activated to release fast-drying glue when a certain amount of pressure was applied to said seal. Someone had also snuck into Umbu headquarters at night and dyed all of the AMB uniforms and equipment pink, much to the Kazakage's amusement when they tried to hide it with cloaks. He decided to make the Umbu more mortified when he told them to do their duties in said dyed uniforms, telling them to regard it as a training exercise, because if someone could sneak into AMBU headquarters and pull such a stunt, then their own stealth skills needed to improve. And if they could sneak around in uniforms of that color, they could do so in anything. Needless to say, the AMBU took the not-be-seen part very seriously, because they were determined to avoid the embarrassment of being seen wearing pink. As a result, only 3 had been spotted that day, and those disappeared before the ones who spotted them could confirm that they had really just seen an AMBU pink ops. All in all, it did not take much effort for Sasuke, Sakura, and Shikamaru to figure out who was behind these outrageous jokes. Shikamaru just left Sasuke and Sakura to handle their own unruly students, saying it would be too troublesome to help them. That was before he lit one of his cigarettes, only to find out pretty quick that the smokes had been switched with stink bombs disguised as cigarettes, enveloping the 3-leaf shinobi in a noxious cloud. After that, he was a little more inclined to help. Chapter 53. Poor Suna. Whap, whap, ow, Konohamaru shouted as he was flung back by yet another blow from his sparring partner, Michiko, one of Enma's sons and an expert at hand-to-hand combat. Get up and try again, Michiko said sternly. You are not going to improve if you don't keep at it. All right, Konohamaru groaned, knowing that his only reward for complaining would be more pain. They traded a few more blows before Michiko took advantage of an overextended punch from the young Sarutobi to yank him forward, twist himself behind Kinomaru, and slam his palm into the back of Kinomaru's head. Yooch! Kinomaru flew face first into the ground, and Michiko shook his head. You are too aggressive, trying to take openings that are not even there, and making yourself open in the process. This style I am trying to teach involves using the momentum of the battle to overcome your opponent and turn their own strength against them. How? Did you not realize how I was able to get behind you so easily? When you punched at me, it was easy to grab your arm and pull you, using your own momentum to make the direction I was trying to make you go in easier than anywhere else. And you were still too busy staggering for being put off balance by that maneuver to do anything about my attack. Huh. Now again. Keep it up, Daisuke, Sasuke said as their blades clashed. Daisuke was panting, his Sharingan active. Sasuke entered his Kenjutsu stance, the blade with the hawk engraved on the handle in his right hand, while the snake engraved sword was in his left in a reverse grip, and partly behind his back. Daisuke exhaled and charged again, but his blows were rapidly repelled, and Sasuke wasn't even using a Sharingan. Even so, Daisuke was improving quite a bit already. With his own Sharingan, he was able to perceive and replicate several of Sasuke's Kenjutsu maneuvers, though their styles were clearly different. Of course, Sharingan or not, Daisuke's body still had a lot of work to do to get a decent stamina and speed built up. After a few more bouts, he felt he could not even stand up anymore. All right, take a break, Sasuke said, and Daisuke gladly obeyed that order. Your stamina is getting better. I have confidence that you will pass the exams. Wood-style deep forest creation, Akari shouted at one of the private training grounds. A large collection of trees burst from the ground, though not nearly as large of a collection of forestry as what Hashirama could create with the same jutsu. Akari fell on her backside, heaving with heavy breaths. Guess that wasn't such a good idea, she muttered. She knew that Jinyamaru was not a good foe to go up against in close quarters. So the idea she had was to try to keep him at bay by putting several trees between him and her, so she could keep hidden from him and use ambush tactics most of the fight. Trouble was, this jutsu required a crap load of chakra, an amount that drained even her reserves pretty bad. She was only 9 after all, even if she was an Uzumaki. Have you thought about popping a food pill immediately after using that jutsu? A shadow clone of Sasuke asked. She blinked. That would work. That would jump-start her recovery after using the jutsu, so she could make her defensive obstacles and still have the energy to run away from Jinyamaru. You could also work a bit more on chakra control to increase your reserve a little between now and the exams. Both good ideas, thanks Duckbutt Sensei, Akari said. Sasuke twitched. You know, I bet you can't go the whole month before the exams without calling me that, Sasuke said. Akari narrowed her eyes before replying. How about we put your money where your mouth is? Fair enough, Sasuke said as they both agreed on a value that was roughly equal to $50, but in Rio. This will either be the easiest money I ever won, or else money will spend to keep her from using that nickname for a month. Either way, I win, Sasuke thought with satisfaction. This here is practically a shrine to the Yondame's son, Kimimaro said to Fu as he showed her around the village, stopping outside Ichiraku's. Itachi had charged him with the task of keeping Fu safe and easing her transition to life within the Hidden Leaf village. Huh, Fu said. It looks like a simple ramen stand to me. Exactly. That Naruto Namikaze pretty much worships anything to do with the food of the gods. Not that I dislike ramen myself, but he takes his liking to an extreme, Kimimaro said. It's funny. The person who helped me such a great deal has a lot of strange quirks. That's rather interesting. How exactly would he have helped someone like you? Let's just say I was in darkness for the longest time, but did not even realize for most of it. And when there was a light for me to take, I was too blind to see it until he pointed me in the right direction, with some help from Yugo at any rate. Yeah, Yugo had a few words with me some time ago. I feel I owe you an apology. HM? Kimimaro asked as Tucci came up and kindly asked them what they would like. They both ordered beef miso ramen. I was a little harsh after you saved me from the Akatsuki back there. I kind of felt like you were just helping me because you were ordered to and viewed me the same way as everyone else did. To be fair, I have been ordered to help you, but I am happy to oblige those orders. And I do not view you as a demon the same way most others would. Why would I, when someone I have a great deal of respect for has the same issue as you? You know the Jinchuriki of this village? Fu asked, only for Kimimaro to put a hand over her mouth. Keep that down. It is not supposed to be discussed, and it is not my place to share the identity of someone with your condition. Right, sorry, Fu said as she rubbed the back of her head. They ate in silence for a bit before Fu asked, so you must be incredibly strong to have beaten that Kakuza guy. He was actually talked about in history from my village and went toe-to-toe with your village's show dame. The fool let his guard down after falling for one of the most basic tricks in the book. I would expect better from someone over a century old. But then again, having too much power could actually cause one to become overconfident and forget some basics. They finished their meal before Kimimaro paid. I will escort you back to the housing the Hokage provided. Why, thank you. You certainly know how to treat a girl. I try to give aid to anyone I can. Anyway, that was a good first date. Kimimaro went slightly pink before saying, date? That was not a date. Oh really? What do you call taking a girl around town and buying her dinner then? I call that doing my job as an escort and being generous. Yeah right. Admit it, you are attracted to me, Fu said with a wink. It was clear that the usually stoic Kimimaro was flustered by this. Where the hell are my puppets? Kankuro demanded as he tore apart his room to see if he had gotten the wrong scrolls, though he knew that was unlikely. He did not store much else besides his puppets and his scrolls, and he certainly did not have any of those girls' dolls that came out of the ones he was sure he stored his battle puppets in. What's with all the racket, Kankuro? Temari demanded as she entered the room, the makeup under her eyes the same color as Kankuro's usual war paint for some reason. Kankuro turned to face her, and she twitched for a second before saying, Air, I know that you were sexually confused, but is that the makeup I got for my date with Shikamaru tonight? What? Kankuro asked as he checked a mirror. Sure enough, his war paint was now a slightly glittery pink color. The rest of Kankuro's face went red, and he turned to Temari, who checked the mirror herself, before saying, Gah, it looks like someone switched our makeups. Mine is not makeup. How many times I gotta tell you? It's war paint, he shouted, before glaring at Temari, who had mouthed the last three words at the same time. He said them while rolling her eyes. And isn't this makeup a little girlier than you are normally comfortable with? He asked, causing Temari to blush a bit, and Kankuro grinned. I guess someone really likes that lazy bum. Eh? Temari sputtered, before replying, No, I do not. He's just footing the bill for dinner tonight. The least I can do is look nice. Never mind that, Kankuro muttered as he and his sister wiped their faces clean. Someone stole my puppets, and who knows what they're doing with them right now. How am I supposed to attend training with Lady Chiyo without my tools? He demanded. He had been training with the old prune for the past 2 years, thanks to some convincing from Gaara. He really owed his younger brother for that. Before Temari could say anything, Gaara shunshin into the room and said, I believe I know where your dolls are, Kankuro. There was a small crowd gathered in the plaza in the village, and they were laughing their asses off. There were 2 short people in cloaks, and they were putting on a rather comedic show with, you guessed it, Kankuro's puppets. Naturally, when the puppet master showed up and saw his tools being used in such a manner, he was well and truly pissed about it. Those are my puppets, you morons, he shouted, running right at the 2 figures, before they both disappeared in a burst of smoke, showing them to have been shadow clones. The puppets fell, tangled in the ninja wire used to control them. Kankuro immediately retrieved them, muttering as he tried to untangle them, before he heard a bunch of boos and got pelted by various food items from the audience to the show. Akari and Kinomaru made their exits at this point, having hidden within the crowd and used the transformation jutsu to stay anonymous, while their clones pulled the joke. They slapped a high five when they got out of sight, already planning their next joke. Man, that brother of mine is such a bozo, Temari said as she finished the meal Shikamaru had bought for her. He should have been more subtle about interrupting something a crowd had gathered to see, even if it was put on with his property. Did you ever find out who stole his puppets? Shikamaru asked with a small smile, though he felt he already had a very shrewd idea who was responsible. No, the pranksters got away without us seeing their faces, and they used shadow clones to pull the joke. It was a well-thought-out escape on their part. Sounds troublesome for Kankuro, Shikamaru said as he got out his wallet to pay for their meal, only to find out that it was missing. What the? My wallet's gone. Ah, Bei Funishika. You think I will be scared into thinking I will have to foot the bill? I've seen better jokes told by Gaara. No, I'm serious. Some jerk stole my wallet, Shikamaru said, frantically searching his pockets and pouch several times, sweating in fear as he did so. If he couldn't pay, Temari was going to kill him. Bet the lazy bum is panicking right about now. Akari heaved through her laughter as they snuck into Shikamaru's hotel room and put the wallet they had taken out of his pouch on the table at the door as Konohamaru was chortling himself. Let's see, the Sarutobi said as he checked the list of jokes they had yet to pull. Next on our agenda is to set loose a few of our monkey summons on unsuspecting villagers with a bunch of water balloons, slip that Aika book into Sasuke's belongings, and somehow make sure Sakura-sensei sees it. And let's not forget the statues in the council room. Suna is like our personal pranking grounds for the next few weeks. In a secluded forest, somewhere near Kiri, a young man with black hair, a few bangs covering his left eye, and wearing a blue kimono sat down on a rock as he meditated. He had been a wanderer for several years, and the isolation from society at large suited him quite well. His meditation was interrupted by what sounded vaguely like breaking glass, and he looked up to see the air develop patterns exactly like that, and a rift opened in the said space. A tall man covered almost completely in black plate mail armor, and wearing a cape that was black as well, but with red cloud designs on it, stepped out of the rift. The man immediately got into a battle stance, not knowing the intentions of his strange visitor. Though if the rumors he had heard about the designs on the figure's cape were to be believed, he had a shrewd idea. The only visible features of the armored figure were his long black hair that flowed from the back of his helmet, and his eyes. The wanderer inhaled sharply as he took in the eyes. While most of those who wore plate mail opted to have slits to see out of, giving minimal visibility but maximum protection, this man seemed to have eye size and shaped holes for maximum visibility instead. And both of his eyes were the Sharingan. Chapter 54, Bijou versus Gravity. So, how did they get your girlfriend to pummel you? Shikamaru asked Sasuke as they ran into each other on the streets of Suna, both looking like walking bruises. They slipped one of the books that Naruto's perverted godfather writes into my bag, and Sakura recognized a corner they left visible. Sasuke replied past a split lip, and she only realized it was a prank on their part after she did this to me. You stole my wallet and put it back in my hotel when I was supposed to buy dinner for me and Temari. They are both so dead, Sasuke said. When I get my hands on them, I will show them exactly what one of my training methods was originally used for. This is going to be troublesome. We're going to have to catch them in the act first, Shikamaru said. Otherwise, they would just deny the whole thing and be a bit more careful not to draw suspicion. Like I said, it is troublesome. In that case, we're going to have to be on guard for them to target us again, or anticipate one of their targets and catch them in the act there. Before they could speculate any further on their strategies, there was a pop and a splash, followed by a few screams. Sasuke and Shikamaru immediately went to investigate and saw a bunch of monkeys running away from several wet people, the remains of water-filled balloons nearby. It's too troublesome to go after those monkeys, Shikamaru said. They would just dismiss themselves upon being caught anyway. We just need to figure out where those two will strike next. Let me think. What is one target that would be absolutely irresistible to them and would be a challenge they would relish? Who's responsible for all of these stupid jokes? Kankuro asked no one in particular. Is it really that hard? Temari asked her brother. Think about it. The pranks start after the exams start. We have the sibling and the apprentice of one of the world's most notorious jokesters participating in said exams. While that only makes them the most likely suspects, we should also take into account the Namikaze family's obsession with ramen, hence the joke with all the instant ramen in the stores. And then there's the use of shadow clones, which said prankster is rather known for after his liberal use when he took the exams, and the fact that monkeys that are not native to this desert are being used, and that the grandfather of one of said suspects was a famous monkey summoner himself. The dots connected in Kankuro's mind before he shouted, "Oh, that's it. Why not get my hands on them? I'm going to kill them with the most painful poisons I have at my disposal. And then I will use my statues as exam proctor to throw them out of the exams." "No, you won't," Temari said. So far, they have not caused any property damage because the goods they switched the instant ramen out for were soon found. The glue washed off of those restaurant seats, and we were getting now uniforms for the ANBU anyway. And other than tricking me and Sakura into launching assaults on our boyfriends, there were no injuries either. The jokes are infuriating, but relatively harmless. And Naruto would kill us if we tossed his sister out of the exams. Fine, but I will still get revenge somehow, Kankuro vowed. No one messes with my war paint and puppets and gets away with it. Who are you? The wandering ninja said to the Sharingan bearer. Are you the Uchiha clan? And are you with the Akatsuki? Since I'm going to take you prisoner, it does not matter if I tell you. So I will, the armored man said as a Sharingan bored into the wanderer. My name is Raisin Jinchukui Itsuri. I am not of the Uchiha clan. These eyes are prizes of mine. And yes, I am with the Akatsuki, and am here for the Rokobi you have sealed within you. Come quietly, and save yourself some trouble. I can tell you that it would be absolutely pointless to resist. I have no intention of surrendering to you. I'm not by any means a weakling, Utakata replied. Raisin did not respond. He only gazed intently at his target before flaring his killing intent. Utakata froze as an extremely oppressive feeling overtook him. It was a lot like being submerged at the bottom of the ocean with the pressure crushing you, and being surrounded by thousands of hungry great white sharks. The missing Kirin was paralyzed as he witnessed several visions of himself dying in the most gruesome ways he could imagine. This is just killing intent? Utakata managed to think. What the hell is this guy? Don't tell me it's already over, Raisin said as he strode to the wandering Jinchuriki. All I did was flare some killer intent, and you freeze up on me? And here I was, hoping for a chance to get some exercise. Move, damn it, Saikin shouted within his host, and leaking his will into him to help him resist the killing intent. Utakata gave a start and jumped back, pulling out his bubble blower as he did so. You need to run. Now. This guy, he's way too strong for you to hope to win against. Trying to escape is also a bad idea, Rokobi, Utakata replied as he blew several of his bubbles at Raisin, hoping to make a distraction when they detonated. He would just chase me down easily. Our best chance is to try to fight and make an opening to escape. You're probably right, Saiken conceded. I'll loan my chakra to you, and you may even call me forthfully if you need to. The bubbles went off, engulfing Raisin in their explosive blasts, and Utakata cast his next jutsu. He was encased in one of his own bubbles, which shimmered and turned into the same color as his surroundings. While he knew his explosive bubbles hit, he had more than doubts that that would suffice to subdue his foe, so he prioritized escape above all else. Before his bubble could float very far, Raisin practically materialized in front of him with incredible speed, his armor smoking. Hate to burst your bubble, he said, pun intended, as he launched his fist at the camouflaged Jinchuriki, causing the bubble he was hiding in to pop, and Utakata was blasted backwards. But these eyes I acquired can see chakra. That means anything you could use to try to hide from me is pretty much pointless. Damn, Utakata cursed, as he knew escape would be close to impossible because of that. But it's not just the eyes, Raisin continued. They are merely my least tedious means of flushing out foes. I have other means at my disposal. I guess I'm just going to have to beat you then, Utakata said as he tried to form his ink bubbles to completely vaporize Raisin. Before they could even get close to the gravity manipulator, they suddenly sped up, and I mean that as in they went skyward really fast. What the hell? Utakata asked before he suddenly felt so heavy he could not even stand and went down like a ton of bricks. Ugh. It's my gravity-style jutsu, Raisin said. The Kekkei Genkai of the Jinchuriki clan allows us to freely manipulate gravity to various effects, such as creating a repulsive or attractive force, or making objects heavy or so light they float, similar to what the fence sitter of IWA is capable of, only we don't have to be in physical contact with our targets to make that work. There are countless other practical applications to it as well. For example, this gauntlet here. He removed his left gauntlet, showing his skin to be rather dark, but completely black, and held it out for the helpless Jinchuriki to see. When it was forged out of titanium steel, while it was in its molten state, I used my powers to increase the pull, if you will, of certain spots in the metal and made it far denser as a result. The downside of this far stronger protection is, well, this. He dropped the gauntlet, and it blasted a 10-foot deep crater into the ground. Utakata looked in shock at the smoke coming from the crater. How can you walk around in an entire set of that? True, you would need more than intense strength to be able to casually move around in this, but that is not how I do it, though my strength is nothing to sneeze at. I simply constantly keep the armor light enough to wear with my power. It's a very basic yet effective chakra control exercise my clan used to use. Our reserves were always unnaturally high, but we practice control to a point where we are very precise in the amount we can use. I dare say that my reserves are even higher than most Jinchurikis, but my control good enough to use medical ninjutsu. Utakata growled as he struggled to rise, but he was still too heavy. Finally, red chakra bubbled forth, and he roared as there was an explosion of power, and Raisin found himself staring at the full power of a bijou as he put his gauntlet back on. Let's see your armor withstand this. Saiken bellowed as his six tails trailed in front of his mouth, and a bijou bomb began to form. You seem to be under the impression that my armor is my best defense, Raisin said as the bomb was fired right at him. Saiken could only look in shock at the sphere, and Raisin gazed right at him. This is the ultimate result of gravity manipulation, Raisin stated, as his feet left the ground, clearly him using his power to levitate. Now let me show you how it applies to create my absolute defense. Jinga no Chushin. About 20 more of the spheres appeared around Raisin, and they seemed to orbit around him. He crossed his arms and said, "Your move." Saiken desperately formed the largest bijou bomb he possibly could, and swallowed it. The resulting beam of compressed chakra went straight at Raisin, devastating the landscape, and hitting Raisin, who made no attempt to dodge, clearly confident in his defense. Sure enough, none of the chakra even touched Raisin, and all of the voids sucked in the chakra. You bijou are powerful, but your power is insufficient to even wound me. I don't even need the Sharingan I acquired to face you, so I won't use it. But I'm certainly eager to show you why only your father has ever been able to best me in single combat. Saiken was well and truly speechless. This guy had fought against the Rikudo, Sanin. Now that you've seen my absolute defense, it is time to show you my absolute offense, Raisin declared as he clasped his hands together. But don't worry, I will weaken the attack enough to allow you to survive. I do need you alive after all. A single one of the voids glowed pure white. Guasa. The surrounding area was engulfed in a blinding radiance. This is going to be the best joke Suna will ever see. Akari sniggered as she and her partner made their plans to get into the Suna council chambers without getting caught. I can't wait to see the footage of the council members' faces when they get a load of how we portray their leaders. Konohamaru laughed. As he made adjustments to the video camera, they would hide in the room to see the reactions of the victims when the prank was done. They were just agreeing on the final details of their big joke, when there was a shout of, "Hey Akari," from Daisuke, and both of the pranksters looked up to see Daisuke run up. "Just got finished training with Sasuke-sensei for the day," Daisuke said. "Do you want to go to the ramen stand with me?" "My treat." "Awesome. Let's go, Konohamaru," Akari said, and Daisuke's face fell slightly. He had been hoping for just the two of them. Meanwhile, Konohamaru noticed the way Daisuke looked at Akari, and found he did not like what he saw. "Don't tell me, he has a crush on her too," Konohamaru thought frantically. "Heck no, I gotta make sure I impress Akari at the exams by beating him, so she will like me better for sure." "Don't get me wrong, I like Konohamaru a lot. He's a funny guy," Daisuke thought. "But if he and I both like the same girl, there can be no holds barred. They do say all's fair in love and war after all." Well, when Aunt Azumi told me that, she hastily added, "Except no hitting, but does she really call that war?" "I'm totally going to kick his ass in our match." Both Daisuke and Konohamaru thought at the same time. "That was sooner than I expected," Pain said as all 8 figures appeared in the cave on the fingertips of the Geto Mizo. Raisin and Zetsu strolled into the cave with the captured Jinchuriki under Raisin's arm. Raisin shrugged before he set Utakata down and flew up to his place on the statue, while Zetsu simply did his plant-growing thing to his tip. We were lucky enough for Zetsu to locate him quickly, and I can get around fast, and I was able to subdue him without any trouble. Hopefully, we will get our first bijou with no interruptions this time. Well, we do have a good portion of the Nanobai's chakra now, Toby thought as he spied on the proceedings form a hidden hollow area in the top of a wall in the corner of the cave. If we are unable to claim the whole thing later, that part will have to suffice for my goal of bringing back the Juubi. Seems Toby is keeping an eye on things, Kabuto mused as the process to extract the bijou from Utakata began, though he gave no indication he knew Obito was around. But of course, he is the true leader of the Akatsuki. Flashback. "It seems you know that Pain is merely a figurehead in the grand scheme of things," Toby said as he approached the snake-like boy from behind. "Well, you did try to work with my former master after all," Kabuto replied as he pushed up his glasses and turned around. "I believe that you wanted to make sure you had an ally in the shadows when the time came to seize power in this organization, and also make sure you could beat that Raisin character. Is he really so threatening to someone who dares to use the name of Madara?" "What are you talking about?" Toby demanded as his single visible eye narrowed. "I am Madara, not some imposter." "Really? Then who is this I have here?" Kabuto asked as he clapped his hands together and a coffin came out of the ground, and the lid popped off. "What?" Toby demanded as he saw who was in it. "Gore, it seems as if you and that master of yours have ultimately figured even my greatest secret out. But where did you find the DNA to summon Madara?" "I have a few secrets of my own, so I certainly know how to keep yours. No one else knows. I also have Hashirama's DNA, but I am not fully confident I have the ability to control him, so I have yet to actually use him." Toby said as he thought something over. "Tell me, just whose side are you on?" "Whichever side has the best chance to win and can benefit me the most," Kabuto said with brutal honesty. "I suppose that is good enough for now. Come with me," Toby said as he grabbed Kabuto by the shoulder and teleported them to the hideout where he had the Geto Mizo usually stored when not in use by Pain or to extract bijou. They came face to face with Hashirama's living clone. "Interesting," Kabuto said as he gazed intently at said clone. "I take it that stolen cells were used to grow this, either by you or Madara while he was still alive. Correct. For what purpose is this around?" "Mainly to supply me with an army," Toby said. "I planned on using that and the chakra within Geto Mizo after a few bijou were absorbed by it to create as many clones of White Zetsu as course. Those would not be very powerful, but they have their own trump cards to play. However, if you were to put the Edo Tensei of Hashirama into the clone, we may be able to use his power to spawn more and possibly increase the power of the clones." The thought would have crossed my mind as well. How many clones do you think that will help make by the time we need them? If we do it right, we should have tens of thousands. And if we were able to claim a few full bijou before we need to use the army for anything, we should have over 100,000. And that's a low estimate. "Very well then, consider it done," Kabuto said as a coffin came out of the ground. In flashback, Toby is very well planned and has the power of both Mangekyo Sharingan and Hashirama Senju at his disposal, Kabuto thought. I wonder just what about Raisin scares him so much. I have yet to actually see him in action. Chapter 55 Return. "Hard to believe we're going to be returning in 2 weeks, huh?" Naruto asked as he turned part of his arm into some kind of machine. "Man, the Azura path just feels odd to use. I would prefer for your Rinnegan training to be complete before you return, but Itachi had a message returned," Felix said. "The Akatsuki are active enough to justify returning to your dimension despite the development with the Rinnegan. In fact, We already are later than originally planned. Well, I already have gotten Nagato's level with most of the paths, and I should have a better grasp of them by the end of the 2 weeks. Do you know what Bijou the Akatsuki have laid claim to yet? About half of the Nanabai, and we have reason to believe that the Rokubi has been captured. Kiri's ANBU had spotted a distance away, but before they could investigate, some flash of light engulfed a large area of the forest, and the leading group had been inside that area. They were not seen since, so it's safe to assume they got vaporized by whatever the light Itachi mentioned in his message was. Naruto thought about that, and said, the only Akatsuki member capable of that I can think of is Deidara, but he would have to blow himself up for that. I wonder if someone from this dimension is responsible instead. It seems likely, and if they would use that to capture a Bijou, they will be incredibly powerful. I do not look forward to fighting most of these foes, to be honest, though I will enjoy the chance to kill Caius for what he did with my father's soul. That Edo Tensei jutsu truly is cruel. Hinata looked a little scared at the thought that they would soon have to return and face the Akatsuki. She was scared for Naruto, and she wanted him to get at least a little stronger before he risked fighting against them and the new foes. But she also knew there was a good reason for her to strive and get strong enough to face them alongside Naruto. She was definitely stronger than she had been before, but she still felt she would not be strong enough to defend Naruto if she had to. Naruto noticed this and said, Hinata, don't worry. You are strong enough to fight against most of our foes, and I think you can hold your own against the strongest of them. Trust me, when we get back, your enemies won't even know what hit them. Busted! Kankuro shouted as he, Temari, Gaara, Sasuke, Shikamaru, and Sakura burst out of hiding as Akari and Konohamaru approached the Kazekage statues with pain in hand. They gave small jumps of surprise before Gaara's sand wrapped around their ankles, and they were being dangled upside down. Oh man, how did you find out it was us, Sasuke-sensei? Akari grumbled while still upside down, and the 6 apprehenders face-palmed. Like it was that hard? Sasuke grumbled. Well, Kankuro needed a little help figuring it out himself, Temari said. I did not. I was just playing along to lull them into a false sense of security. Kankuro defended. Right, all 7 others present said cynically, causing Kankuro to face fault. So what do we do with you two? Gaara asked. We could just throw you out of the exams for your jokes. Both Jin paled as they hastily began begging, no, please, anything but that. Well, I have an idea, Kankuro said as he rose, an evil grin on his face that scared Akari and Konohamaru shitless. If they are willing to accept a little poetic justice I will dish out, they can stay in the exams. Despite their misgivings about the look Kankuro was giving them, they quickly agreed to do so. The next day, there was an 8-hour show in the square of Suna. Wearing makeup that made them look like puppets, Akari and Konohamaru were actually being used as them by Kankuro, and they were made to do a slapstick comedy special. By the time the show was over, Akari had been made to kick Konohamaru's crotch 5 times. Konohamaru had retaliated with several punches to her gut. There were a few times when both were made to try to poke each other in the eyes with that 2-finger gag. And at one point, Kankuro made Akari try to strangle Konohamaru with his own scarf. Now, this is entertainment. Sasuke grinned as he filmed the entire ordeal. I bet they wish they had thought twice about messing with us. He chuckled again as Akari was guided right into a pitfall trap by Kankuro's strings. Needless to say, Akari and Konohamaru were mentally declaring war on the puppet master. Well, I hope you learned your lesson. Sasuke asked Akari sternly as he watched her do the water-walking exercise while sticking leaves to her body, and with a sponge in one hand and a stone in the other. A stick was in her mouth. She was trying to simultaneously make the sponge wet, the stone crumble, and the stick grow a few leaves while her mind was occupied on yet 2 other tasks, something which required very fine chakra control, which Sasuke had her do almost non-stop for the past 2 years. Yeah, don't get caught again, Akari mumbled through the stick, and Sasuke face-palmed. No, I mean that you should have learned not to pull such childish pranks in the first place. Oh, come on, duck-butt sensei. They make life fun, Akari said as the stone crumbled into dust, and the stick had exactly 3 leaves, the amount Sasuke had made her specifically go for. She squeezed the sponge, and water poured out. Sasuke froze, though not at the feat she had just done. You just call me duck-butt sensei. Yes, so? I call you that all the time. Oh yeah, the bet. Oops. Sasuke started to sweat as Akari came ashore and handed him his money. So far, her luck had always seemed to be exactly like Naruto's, meaning that she always won her bets unless something bad was going to happen soon. Come to think of it, Sasuke had started to have an uncomfortable feeling that was getting stronger as the days passed. Come off of it, there was no way she was going to win that bet. Sasuke thought as he tried to reassure himself. She couldn't go a week, let alone a month, without calling me that stupid nickname. It would be prudent to keep an eye out for danger, but I need to be sure not to obsess. Oh my gosh, Lady Tsunade, you are on a winning streak. Shizen gushed as Tsunade put her hand down, showing a straight flush, which beat her opponent's full house. God, how do we keep losing? One of the other players cursed. This is the legendary sucker, for Cammy's sake. Tsunade was meanwhile deep in thought, her hand on her forehead. This can't lead to anything good. Come to think of it, why do I even gamble when I either always lose or I win? And it turns out to be an omen. Take that, 4 of a kind. Naruto shouted at Matthew as they and Felix were also playing poker at the moment, along with Felix. Matthew cursed as his flush was beaten, but then Felix cleared his throat and put down a royal flush. Gah! Naruto shouted as Felix took to play chips from him. They had agreed long ago not to play for money, because that would just be giving Naruto free cash. Felix and Naruto both paused and looked at each other, the same thought running through their minds at the same time. Oh. On Mount Mayaboku, 2 men who were in meditative poses gave a small shudder, and they looked at each other, both having the same yellow eyes with a block-like pupil in them and a sort of reddish pigment around the eyes. Hey Jiraiya, did you feel that too? Minato asked his former teacher. The white-haired man nodded solemnly. Yeah, this is the same feeling that normally comes when Tsunade Haim starts winning bets that don't involve Naruto. And so far, that only happened before Orochimaru team left the village, and before the Kyuubi was set loose on the village. Shit, they both said it once. I'm going to consult my spy network again, Jiraiya declared as his sage mode wore off. Good idea. The day of the exams had finally arrived, and the seats were rather packed. There was a bit of excitement over these semi-annual exams, since a team led by one of the Kazekage sons would be participating, and 2 Kage descendants were also in said exams. The Kazekage looked up from his seat as 3 figures entered the Kage box. Ah, nice to see you made the trip, Itachi-san, the Kazekage said. Itachi gave a bow of respect and said, I wouldn't miss this for the world. He sat down in the seat prepared for him, flanked by Kushina and Azumi. Baki and a nameless Sanjonin were also present to ensure their Kage's safety. I believe we have already met once or twice, Kushina-san, the Kazekage said as he inclined his head to the redhead. But I don't believe I'm acquainted with your other guard, Itachi. I happen to be his girlfriend, Azumi said, and the Kazekage nodded. I am also the aunt of Daisuke Uchiha, one of the exam participants, Kazekage-sama. I see. It was kind of you to bring the relatives of 2 of your exam participants, the Kazekage said to Itachi, who chuckled nervously. Ah yes, they can be quite persuasive when they want to be, Itachi said as he started to sweat, with both women behind him giving him dangerous smirks. Good to be back, Naruto muttered as he, Hinata, Felix, Alex, and against their better judgment. Isaac presented the tickets that had been bought for them ahead of time to the gate guards of Suna. Isaac had decided to come to Naruto's dimension to participate in the fight against the Akatsuki, since he was not kept on very active duty by the Elder Dimension higher-ups. They had tried very hard to dissuade him, knowing his eccentric tendencies, but he just did not take no for an answer. Come on, we had better go find Sasuke and the others, Felix said. I think you guys should catch up at least a little bit before the exams start. Catch up, Isaac said as he looked around. Where? That stuff is so good on fries. Knew bringing him along was a bad idea. Naruto deadpanned, and everyone else nodded. As soon as they were out of sight of the gate guards, Naruto slapped his hand on the ground. Summoning Jutsu, a small black fox with Rinnegan eyes appeared. Oh hey, Naruto-sama, the fox said. This Rinnegan summon was the only one Naruto had decided to create a soul for. Naruto had decided that after he had the theory for the technique, he should at least attempt it once to be sure he could do so, in case he ever found that he actually needed it. After both the physical and mental drain of using the creation of all things for that purpose, Naruto had come to the conclusion that he should not do that very often. This creation was made by Naruto for scouting purposes, which he was very good for, since he had the ability to send a sort of subconscious message to Naruto to activate his Rinnegan, so their lines of sight could be linked. I need you to scout around the village for me, Zenko, Naruto said. I went into sage mode just a little bit ago to pinpoint our friends and noticed that here seems to be a group of people in the village that are suppressing their chakra somehow to avoid detection, though I was still able to get a general read on them. All right, consider it done, Zenko said, before he ran into an alleyway to look around the village. Funny you chose to try giving a mind to a fox of all things, Kurama chuckled. Hee. I hope you're wrong about any bad hunches you may have, Naruto-kun, Hinata said nervously. So do I, Hinata. Once again, congratulations for making it this far into the exams. Gaara told the 12 genin in front of him. The arena they stood in had a sandy center, though there were a few trees and cacti around the edges. Now, then, a final reminder on the rules and the matchups. He proceeded to inform them of the said things. Hey, long time no see, Naruto said as he and Hinata entered the box for participants and Jonin instructors. Sasuke turned to face his friend. I like your new outfit, by the way. Much better than what you were wearing before, Naruto continued. obviously referring to what Sasuke had worn at this point in time of the previous timeline. For those who have forgotten, Sasuke was now garbed in something similar to an ANBU uniform, but without the mask, and he had the Uchiha crest on the back of it. Yeah, well, I see you have still not abandoned your taste for weird orange jumpsuits, Sasuke replied as he looked over the fact that Naruto had the same thing he had last time. Hinata had also changed her outfit very little. What's wrong with orange? Naruto asked defensively, and Sasuke smiled. It would be easier to tell you what was right with it. Naruto face-faulted. I actually happen to like orange, you jerk. Well, that's one checked off on the longer list then. Why I oughta dash? Will both of you stop it? Sakura shouted at them, using the big head jutsu known to all Chunin instructors. This is the first time in 2 years you two have seen each other, and you're already going at it? Sorry, Sakura. Both boys said hastily, weeping anime tears of fear as they did so. Hinata giggled. So Hinata, Sakura said to her fellow kunoichi. How was the training trip you went on with Naruto Baka and Felix? Well, it was very interesting. Hinata stalled, knowing that Sakura was not to know the sensitive details, such as the fact it was an entirely different dimension they were in. Come on, details, details, Sakura demanded. Hinata was saved when a Sand Jonin entered the box. The exams are about to start. I am afraid that you two are going to have to go to your seats. Oh well, see you guys later, Naruto said as he and Hinata hurried out. I wonder just how much stronger Naruto has gotten over the past 2 years, Sasuke said. Knowing him for as long as I have, I would bet all of my Ryo that nothing would surprise me. All Genin other than the 2 current combatants, please leave the arena, Gaara said. We shall start the match soon. Once his request had been complied with, Haku and Itetsu faced one another, the latter looking extremely nervous about his foe. Remember, if I feel that the fight has gone far enough, I will step in and declare the winner, Gaara said. Begin. Itetsu wasted no time in throwing several kunai at Haku, who responded by throwing several of his own weapons at Itetsu's. Senbon? The Sand Genin, though, as his weapons were deflected. That means this guy, focuses on accuracy above all else. Wind style Gus Senbon. Haku shouted as he made seals. Wind style? Itetsu asked as near invisible Senbon, made of air, stuck him in a few spots almost instantaneously. He staggered back and recovered, charging Haku as he did so. This guy clearly uses long-range attacks, so I need to close the distance and attack fast, Itetsu thought as Haku began casting signs again. Itetsu smirked slightly as he turned one of his silver arm guards just right and flashed the sun's reflection straight into Haku's eyes, causing the Yuki to wince, but he kept at his signs. Water-style Hydro Missile. A large sphere of water bigger than a usual liquid bullet was fired from Haku's mouth at his oncoming foe, who was prepping a jutsu of his own. Earth-style Charging Earth Wall. Itetsu shouted and a barrier of stone appeared between him and Haku, taking the water blast dead on as it moved at the Yuki, pushed forward by the Sand Genin. Haku was struck by the barrier and thrown back, only to turn into water. A water clone? When did he dash? Itetsu started to ask before he felt the temperature plummet. What the dash? He said as several mirrors made of ice appeared around him. Sorry, but you are already beaten, Haku said as his image appeared in each mirror. Surrender now if you don't want to get hurt. Like I'll go down that easy, Itetsu shouted as he cast signs, having deduced the fact that Haku's jutsu was meant to attack from all sides. Earth-style Rock Dome Barrier. He was quickly encased in said defense, and Haku began his assault, only to find the dome hard to penetrate with low-power Senbon, regardless of speed. In that case, Haku said as he formed a large icicle around one of his arms. This will slow me a bit, but it won't be enough to make a difference. I-style Certain Kill Spear. He attacked again, this time his weapon penetrating the dome and stopping just short of impaling Itetsu through the head. Earth-style Exploding Rock. Itetsu shouted, causing his barrier to fly off in all directions and blasting Haku back. Several boulders impacted the mirrors, though they did no damage to the ice. Itetsu followed up with more kunai at his down target, and they hit the Yuki, only for him to dissolve into water again. What? Itetsu asked before he felt a prick in his neck and promptly lost all feeling from that point down, causing him to go down. Sorry about that, Haku said, but I did say you were already beaten. How did you switch yourself with 2 water clones? Itetsu asked from the ground. That first one was when I had hit you with my Gus Senbon. While you winced in pain, I made the clone and circled around behind you. The second one was the moment my Certain Kill Spear was forced to stop by your jutsu. But I did not even notice Itetsu protested. You would have had to move so fast to have taken those short windows. Exactly. Speed is my greatest ally. But if you were that fast, why didn't you just end it earlier? All it would have taken was one Senbon right where you just got me, and I would have been down like I am now. You're right, I could have. But that would have denied you the chance to show your own abilities to the judges and at least have a chance to make Chunin. You were helping me out? Not quite. I merely let you have a few openings to show what you were capable of, Haku said before he rose and said, you should be able to move again in a few minutes. The winner of the first match is Haku Yuki. Gaara shouted to the crowd, all of whom cheered as Haku helped Tetsu back to the Genin's box. You ready to take on Kiyoshi? Konohamaru asked Udon, who nodded nervously. Both combatants of the second match entered the arena and faced each other intently. Good luck, Kiyoshi, Akari shouted at her comrade, who gave a small smile. Begin, Gaara shouted, and Udon immediately jumped back, throwing a few kunai at Kiyoshi as he did so. Kiyoshi was able to dodge all of them before whipping out his crossbow and firing a bolt at Udon, who actually caught the deadly projectile a few inches from his chest. Nice reflexes, Kiyoshi whistled as he cast a few signs, his seemingly unloaded crossbow held between his arm and side. Lightning style, shock bullet. He fired a sphere of lightning chakra from his hand at Udon, who was able to avoid it and ran at Kiyoshi, who was trying to reload his crossbow. Udon took out a kunai as he closed in, thinking himself safe from Kiyoshi's weapon until it was reloaded, only for Kiyoshi to level the bow and fire the hidden bolt at near point-blank range. Udon was fast enough to just barely avoid the bolt, though it grazed the side of his head. Kiyoshi put his weapon away and engaged Udon in close-quarters taijutsu. It was clear that they were both skilled at it, but eventually Udon was able to kick Kiyoshi in the gut and throw him back, as well as throw an exploding kunai at his opponent. Kiyoshi recovered fast enough to regain his feet and jump to the side, though he was still caught in the blast and thrown against the wall of the arena. Udon took out a few kunai and threw them at the injured foe, though he kept one as he attempted to close in again. Kiyoshi took out one of his own kunai and deflected the thrown ones with it, discreetly casting a few signs with his other hand. Demonic illusion, hiding limb jutsu, he muttered. Udon got close enough to stab his kunai forward, but Kiyoshi rolled out of the way and got to his feet. He then tried to bring his kunai down on Udon by raising his arm and stabbing downward. Udon tried to stab Kiyoshi as well, and used his free hand to try to grab Kiyoshi's kunai arm as it came down at him. Kiyoshi also made to grab Udon's kunai wrist. Udon was not surprised when he felt his own wrist grabbed by Kiyoshi. He was surprised, however, when his hand just went through Kiyoshi's wrist, and Kiyoshi's arm seemed to disappear. Right as Udon felt the point of a kunai, he could not see at his throat. He looked down and saw Kiyoshi's arm shimmer into view, holding the kunai to his opponent's neck. What did you do? Udon asked. I used a low-power genjutsu called Hiding Limb, Kiyoshi said. In short, it creates an illusion of any of my limbs that I choose and renders my actual limb invisible. While you were occupied with my false arm, my actual arm got to you as a result. The winner is Kiyoshi, Gaara shouted, and the crowd roared their approval.